In the blink of an eye, the scenery in front of you changed drastically. The surrounding environment changed from a gorgeous hotel to a dim prison, and the things around him also changed from a few delicate bodies to filthy bodies emitting stench. Just when Sumu was wondering what happened, bang! The sound of metal sticks hitting metal sounded, startling Sumu, and his body trembled instinctively. This body was extremely afraid of this sound and had developed a conditioned reflex. After a while, several tall black men walked in from the light and handed some turbid viscous liquid into each metal prison. When it was Sumu's turn to enter the prison, a black man said, "Hey boss, this yellow-skinned monkey is still alive. It's like Xiao Chong." Among them, the bald boss with ferocious tattoos all over his body glanced at Sumu indifferently and then warned his younger brother, "Don't touch him during this period. The transaction time is coming soon, and the dead organs will no longer be fresh, and the price will be greatly reduced." "Yes, yes, I know." In response to the boss's order, the little punk quickly nodded and bowed to show his understanding. Then he glanced at Sumu ferociously, subconsciously touched the wound on his palm, and gritted his teeth and said, "Kid, you're lucky." Organ trade. After a few people left, Sumu immediately understood something from their words. After that, he felt an abnormal tingling in his brain, and a large number of broken memory fragments poured into his mind. The original owner, also named Sumu, was an ordinary college student who suddenly awakened his mutant power a month ago and used his mutant power to escape intact from the house that broke out in the fire. Although he survived the catastrophe, he had no luck. A few days later, his parents discovered his mutant ability, and they were disgusted and kicked out of the house. Later, he was hunted by a mysterious organization and was accidentally abducted by gang members in Hell's Kitchen and trapped in an unknown underground prison. The black man was his captor. When he resisted, he almost bit off a piece of meat from the black man's hand with his teeth. Because of this reason, he was later taken care of by niggas. Looking at the scarred skin under the clothes, it was already pus-filled and still bleeding slightly. It must have been because of this that the original owner died. However, this is not the most serious crisis at present. In a week, the gang will trade with other underground organizations, and their batch of supply will also be slaughtered like livestock, and their organs will be taken out. Moreover, this world is a world he is familiar with, mutants and Stark Industries. Isn't this the extremely dangerous Marvel world? Even if you escape the next crisis, how can you avoid the snap that threatens the entire universe? Sumu didn't want to bet on a half chance. And, is this a movie world or a comic book world? If it is a movie world, there is still a possibility of struggle. If it is a comic book world, Sumu shivered subconsciously. As for the original owner's superpowers, if you have powerful superpowers, you won't be kidnapped by underground gangs. His ability is energy absorption. Yes, it is exactly the same as the Black Emperor's ability. However, after the initial emotional excitement and awakening, the strength of the ability dropped significantly. Even the kinetic energy of his fists cannot be fully absorbed, let alone bullets or even bullets. Mutant abilities. What can such a weak ability do? Sumu suddenly became desperate. She didn't expect that he would die just after traveling through time. He obviously lived a good life in his previous life, so why did he suddenly travel across time? In a strong reluctance, a voice sounded from Sumu's ear. Congratulations, you have awakened the character template system of all realms. You have obtained the character template, Gojo Satoru. You have awakened the skill 6 Eyes LV1. Name, Sumu. Holding template, Gojo Satoru. Energy absorption LV1, 78/100 can absorb most of the energy, and the absorption speed and energy storage limit are low. 6 Eyes LV1, 1 out of 100 has a 360-degree long-distance viewing angle, can see the flow of energy, and has amazing dynamic vision, allowing the holder to perform fine energy operations. Template fusion degree, 1%. Improve character integration to unlock new skills. Energy points, 0. When the template fusion reaches 100%, you will get a new character template. Sumu immediately felt the difference. He could see a 360-degree view of the surroundings, and his eyesight was obviously extraordinary. Even the dust in the air could be seen clearly, and there are some blue lines intertwining in his sight, and the end of the nearby lines is the dim wall lamp behind him. It was obvious that what he saw was the current, which was also the effect of energy that the 6 eyes could see. After experiencing the ability, Sumu looked happy because the first character template he obtained turned out to be Gojo Satoru. Although after becoming 2.5 Satoru, the evaluation of Gojo Satoru has dropped slightly, but it still does not prevent him from being one of the ceilings in the world of magic return. If he acquires Gojo Satoru's ability, even part of it, he can easily escape from prison. The most important thing is that Gojo Satoru is so cool. After obtaining the system, Sumu immediately gained confidence in his future, but the most important thing now was to escape from the gang prison. Just then, he heard heavy footsteps and saw the punk walking over. He vaguely remembered that the punk's name was Jim. Jim came to the prison where Sumu was imprisoned, smiled ferociously at Sumu, and whispered, "Yellow-skinned monkey, I didn't expect you to be very strong in life, so I will let you live one more day. I will entertain you well tomorrow." After saying that, he unbuttoned his pants and poured the smelly yellow liquid on the bowl on the ground. Looking at Sumu's indifferent expression, as if looking at a dead person, he suddenly felt extremely annoyed, and the injury on his palm also ached slightly. But thinking about what the boss said, he still held back. He didn't dare to disobey the boss's order, so he could only put down a harsh word and left. Sumu quietly looked at Jim's back for a moment, and then withdrew. Looking at the yellow liquid and turbid gruel scattered on the ground in front of him, although the yellow liquid was still some distance away from him and did not splash on him, he still retreated back and decided to do the same tomorrow. Treat this punk. Although he was hungry at this time, Sumu would never drink the unknown gruel stained with yellow liquid. He began to study his newly acquired abilities. Changing his position, he used his body to block the dim wall lamp behind him, and under the cover of his coughing, he secretly used force to break the glass covering it. Sumu hid the glass in his sleeves, and then used his fingers to make contact with the wick. Success or failure depended on this. After obtaining the 6 eyes, he felt that he could control energy more precisely, and his ability to absorb energy also experienced some changes. When the finger comes into contact with the wick, under the precise energy control of the 6 eyes, electricity and heat are absorbed by it, while at the same time the energy points slowly increase. Energy point +1. Energy point +1. Energy point +1. Energy absorption experience +1. Energy absorption experience +1. Energy absorption experience +1. As time passed slowly, Sumu used his body to block the wick behind him, continuously absorbing energy, and put the obtained energy into the Gojo Satoru character panel. After waiting for a few hours, new changes occurred in the system. Template fusion degree, 5%. You have unlocked a new skill, no lower limit technique. Congratulations, your skill energy absorption has been upgraded. Readers who like Gojo Satoru in American comics can save it. Please support. No lower limit technique LV1. 1/100 interfere with atomic level matter, dominate space. The closer the object is to the user, the slower and slower it will be, and will never be able to touch the user. Energy absorption LV2. 1/300 it can absorb most of the energy, and the absorption speed is the same as the upper limit of energy storage. When the fusion degree reached 5%, the energy absorption was also promoted to level 2, and Sumu immediately felt the changes in his body. First, the energy is absorbed faster, the body can store more energy, and there is an additional technique engraved deep in the soul. No lower limit for spells. Sumu immediately understood how to use the unlimited technique, but because the fusion degree was too low at this time, he tried briefly and found that he could only maintain it for 5 minutes, and could not maintain it for a long time. It is even more different from Gojo Satoru as a passive resident. However, his purpose was just to escape from prison, and at this time, his strength made it possible to succeed. There were still a few hours before dawn. To be on the safe side, he was still prepared to continue absorbing energy, increase the level of fusion, and awaken new abilities. This is the only way to be foolproof. At this moment, a strange man's voice came from the side. Sumu turned around and saw a middle-aged man whispering to him, "Hey, boy over there, you are a mutant." Seeing him looking behind him, he found that due to the effect of energy absorption, the current was actually absorbed by his fingers, and the contact part between the two shone with a subtle light. Although it is dim, it is still very obvious as long as you pay attention. Seeing that Sumu was silent, the man immediately said arrogantly, "You disgusting mutant bastard, there must be a way to leave, right? That's right. After all, you bastards have all kinds of abilities, so it's not surprising that you have the power to leave. Boy, listen up, when you are ready to escape, take me with you. Otherwise I will tell those gangsters about your identity as a mutant. I think they will be very interested in mutants." Seeing that Sumu still remained silent, the middle-aged man was slightly impatient, but in order to escape, he still whispered to Sumu, "Damn mutant bastard, do you hear that?" Hearing the threat from the man in the cage next to him, Sumu remained unmoved. Instead, the corners of his mouth revealed a subtle arc. Because of government propaganda, ordinary people are generally hostile to mutants and believe that mutants are dirty bastards. But they forget that mutants have powers that can easily tear them apart. Sumu raised his head, lifted up his white hair with his hands, revealing his delicate blue eyes, and smiled brightly. "Sir, don't worry, I'll let you out right away." The middle-aged man smiled with satisfaction and said, "You know what's going on." Sumu stopped absorbing electricity and walked towards the middle-aged man. Then he stretched out his hand on the iron fence and said to the middle-aged man, "Sir, please reach out your hand. My ability is space jumping. I will take you out of here right away." The middle-aged man immediately showed joy. Sure enough, this mutant was just a child, and he would obey at the slightest threat. He had decided to call the police and catch this mutant bastard immediately after he escaped. After all, he could get a lot of bonuses for reporting mutants, which would be enough for him to live happily for a while. And he didn't dare to report the gangsters who caught him. They were all criminals who killed without blinking an eye. How dare he provoke them before they could escape? As for Sumu wanting to do harm to him, how could this be possible? If his mutant powers were really offensive, how could he be caught by ordinary gangsters? Thinking about it, it must be an ability that requires a long rest after using it once, which poses no threat to him at all. If Sumu had not traveled through time, then the man in front of him was right. But at this time, Sumu had awakened the system, which was completely different from before. When the palms of the two came into contact, an electric current invisible to the naked eye was immediately injected into the middle-aged man's body, and he was immediately unable to move due to the powerful stimulating current. Level 2 energy absorption can already reach this level, but Sumu's purpose is not to electrocute the man. People who often electrocute people should know that the electric current will produce a pungent burnt smell, which can be easily detected by others. So Sumu stretched out his hand, used the energy stored in his body to strengthen his body, and then used his other hand to grab the middle-aged man's neck and twist it hard. With a slight sound of bone cracking, the man's neck twisted and he died immediately. It was already late at night, and the slight sound did not attract anyone's attention. Even if they heard this sound, they thought it was the sound caused by someone moving their bones. Putting the man in a sleeping position, Sumu sat back in front of the lamp and continued to absorb energy. Everything was as normal, as if nothing had happened just now. The system prompts still continue. Energy point +1. Energy point +1. Energy point +1. Energy absorption experience +1. Energy absorption experience +1. Energy absorption experience +1. After an unknown amount of time, through the window on the side, Sumu saw that the sky had brightened slightly. At the same time, Sumu, who continued to absorb energy and put energy points into the template, heard the prompt from the system. Template fusion degree, 10%. You have unlocked a new skill, spell reversal song. Today is the day when the gangsters are making deals. They took out the keys to the prisons, opened all the prisons one by one, and pulled all the people in the cages out and escorted them to the outside world. Everyone understood what was going to happen next, and they all became desperate. Some of them wailed in pain, some knelt down and begged for mercy, and some threatened. However, in the face of all the situations, the gangsters did not react at all. As long as they cooperated, they would not be moved. If they did not cooperate, they would be beaten with electric batons. Soon the gangsters came to the prison where Sumu was, and the damn black man was among them. Seeing Sumu looking at him, the black man smiled at him fiercely and made a provocative gesture of cutting his throat. But he did not see Sumu's fearful expression, but instead gave him a sunny smile, which made him very unhappy. "Yellow monkey, get out of here. Today is your good day." Sumu also said calmly. "Yes, today is indeed a good day." Seeing that Sumu dared to talk back, the black man Jim immediately showed a gloomy look on his face, came to Sumu, and whispered to him, "You may not know, I have told Dr. John that your visceral removal surgery will not use anesthetics. You will die in pain and despair." Sumu smiled mysteriously at him. Maybe you don't have the opportunity to see this scene. Being provoked again. Although he didn't know where the yellow monkey in front of him got the courage to dare to provoke him, he was ready to give him a taste of color. Although he might be punished by the boss, as long as he didn't die, the punishment would not be too severe. Then he immediately twisted his fist and attacked Sumu's cheek fiercely. He had been unhappy with his handsome face for a long time, especially the calm expression pretended on his face at this time, which made him even more unhappy. Seeing this scene, the gang members behind Jim did not stop it. They looked at the scene in front of them with interest, ready to taste the desperate wailing of the yellow monkey. However, the next scene shocked them greatly. Jim's fist landed in front of the yellow monkey, and he could no longer get close. They initially thought that Jim was pretending to be joking, and they teased him. "Jim, stop playing. The transaction is about to start. If you delay, the boss will definitely peel your skin." "That's right. Beat this yellow monkey for me quickly. I can't wait to see his screams of pain." "No, I didn't." Jim looked at the man in front of him in fear. His originally dark brown pupils turned into a deep blue, and even his jet black hair turned pure white for some reason after one night. At this time, he was obviously smiling at himself, but the cruel arc at the corner of his mouth, as well as the ridicule and playfulness in his eyes, all represented that all this was his doing. What on earth was going on? Jim thought of something. Could it be that the man in front of him was a mutant? At this time, the gang members behind him also found something wrong from Jim's answer, and after careful observation, they noticed more details. The veins on Jim's arm bulged and his muscles kept trembling, which meant that he had used all his strength. And the closer he got to the palm of the yellow monkey, the more strange the trembling occurred, as if the space was seriously distorted, so that the light was refracted. Something was wrong. Everything that happened in front of them was wrong. They all thought of something. Could it be that the yellow monkey was actually a mutant? Inexplicable fear enveloped their hearts, especially when they saw the indifferent smile on Sumu's face. They all instinctively took a step back. Looking at the black man who kept trying to get close to him, Sumu showed an encouraging smile. Come on, you can touch me if you try harder." However, as soon as the voice fell, the smile on Sumu's face disappeared immediately, because Jim actually wanted to turn around and run away because of the fear of the unknown. How could Sumu let this black man escape? He still had a gift that he hadn't opened. The energy in his body circulated rapidly, providing a significant strengthening for his body. Then, at a speed that ordinary people could not see, he stretched out his hand to hold down the black man's head, and used his head to exert force to smash his body to the ground. Bang! The black man's head collided with the ground, making a chilling sound. Then the black man fainted because of the violent collision of his head. Sumu would not stop like this. He used his strengthened body to step hard on the black man's limbs. The huge force crushed the flesh and blood body, and the flesh and blood flowed under Sumu's feet and gradually spread. When Jim's right arm was crushed, he was awakened by the severe pain, screaming violently and struggling constantly. But how could he resist Sumu? He could only watch Sumu crush his limbs and turn him into a complete useless person. Sumu no longer looked at Jim. The gift had been delivered, which was enough, regardless of whether he was satisfied or not. Seeing the terrifying man in the prison looking at them in the blood, his cold eyes woke them up from the daze caused by the violent shock. One of them reacted immediately and shouted loudly. His ability must be very limited, otherwise how could he be caught by Jim? "Shoot him, you will definitely kill him." Everyone else reacted immediately. Yes, that's right, shoot. This gang member had obviously experienced many battles and was well trained. He immediately recovered from the panic and used the rifle in his hand to shoot at Sumu. But something happened that made them desperate. They saw a large number of bullets floating in the air, twisting strangely, but they could not get close to the terrifying man at all. It was as if the distance between the two was not a few centimeters, but the end of the world. Unlimited technique. How is it possible? Why doesn't it work? What exactly is his mutant ability? Since he has such a terrifying ability, why was he caught by Jim before? They could no longer maintain their composure and could only pull the trigger instinctively, shooting at Sumu crazily. But these bullets could not get close to Sumu at all, and he even had the leisure to help Jim block the bullets. Sumu didn't want this black man to die so easily. He wanted him to sink in despair and pain. Then Sumu looked at the gang members who kept shooting and the other gang members who came to support after hearing the noise here, then grinned, drew a mysterious arc, stretched out his hands in a relaxed manner, and clasped them slightly against each other. The technique is forward song. The energy in the body flows in a special way, and a terrifying blue vortex quickly forms in front of Sumu, and all the bullets shot are swallowed by the vortex like a black hole. When everything is charged, boom, the terrifying blue vortex blooms and flies forward at a high speed. Whether it is flesh and blood or steel and concrete, they are all sucked into it by the powerful suction and disappear. When everything calms down, all the gang members in front have disappeared. Not even a piece of flesh and blood is left. Seeing the scene in front of them, the whole place was silent, and all the people who were still alive were shocked to see this scene. What is this? Can mutants do this? Devil. He is a devil. The nearest gang member took off the limbs that fell on his face tremblingly, and then screamed and fled away. But before he could escape a few steps, he was shot in the head by the gang leader. The gang leader shouted loudly, "Why are you screaming? How could he release that move continuously? Let's shoot at him together to consume his physical strength. Jello, bring the rocket launcher. Don't forget, we must do this order well, otherwise Kingpin will not let us go." The words of the gang leader immediately calmed down all the gang members. They looked at Sumu, gritted their teeth, and started shooting crazily. It was as if the man named Kingpin was more terrifying than Sumu, who had just released the terrifying blue black hole. Facing the bullets that were shot like a rainstorm, Sumu did not dodge. The consumption of the unlimited technique is calculated in time, not the strength of the attack. He rushed towards the many gang members with a cruel smile, as if bathing in the breeze. Energy strengthens the body, and the various combat experiences from the Gojo Satoru template strengthened Sumu's spirit. Facing a battlefield he had never experienced before, he did not feel any tension or fear, but the arc of his mouth became more and more obvious. He pushed his right foot backward, and the energy was first converted into spell power, and then strengthened his body by the 6-eye micromanipulation. Boom. The flesh and blood body crushed the ground and rushed towards dozens of gang members head-on. Hands, feet, joints, and all parts of the human body, under the inheritance of Gojo Satoru's superb skills and the fine control of the 6 eyes, have become deadly killing tools. The gang members could not catch Sumu's figure at all, and the stray bullets that happened to hit Sumu were also blocked by the unlimited technique. A large number of gang members fell down like mowing the grass, unable to stand up again. Finally, Sumu came to the gang leader, smiled, put his hands in his trouser pockets, and walked slowly towards him. Looking at the mutants in front of him, the gang leader was filled with fear. The man in front of him had broken all his impressions of mutants. How could mutants be so strong? If mutants were so strong, how could they be like rats crossing the street, and everyone would shout and beat them? I don't believe it. There must be some flaw in your ability. The gang leader roared at Sumu unwillingly, trying to use his roar to dispel the fear in his heart. Just at this moment, a gangster took out the rocket launcher and handed it to the gang leader. Seeing the rocket launcher, the gang leader's eyes lit up, and all the fear just now was dispelled by the rocket launcher. He snatched the rocket launcher from the gangster's hand, and then roared at Sumu fiercely. Go to hell. Under the fierce fire, the rocket launcher rushed towards Sumu, and then exploded violently in front of his feet. The gang leader laughed loudly while shaking all over. Damn mutants, damn yellow monkeys die. But when the explosion faded, clear footsteps came out of the smoke and dust, and an arm stretched out from the smoke and dust, suddenly pinching the gang leader's neck. The deep blue light as deep as the deep sea appeared first, followed by the eye-catching white short hair, and finally the dirty clothes that were completely inconsistent with the former, and the wounds of all sizes all over the body. In the fearful eyes of the gang leader and his brothers, Sumu smiled grimly. The technique is reversed, Tutsong. The blue vortex gathered in his hand again. Amid the screams of the gang leader, he first swallowed it completely, then continued to fly forward at high speed, breaking a huge crack in the prison wall. After doing everything, Sumu ignored the people behind him, used the energy conversion spell to strengthen his body, disappeared from the spot, passed through the gap in the wall, and rushed out of the cage, leaving only the remaining gang members who had lost their combat ability and many innocent residents whose cell doors were opened. After Sumu left, the whole place was silent. After tens of seconds, huge cheers resounded through the prison, and many innocent people rushed to the gap, called freedom. A few hours later, in an extremely luxurious room in Hell's Kitchen, a dazzling crystal chandelier hung on the ceiling, illuminating the scene below. The leader sat on a chair. His face seemed to be covered by a shadow. He was 2 meters tall and burly, like a mountain sitting there. The man who reported to him at this time was a man in a strange tights. Bullseye, you said this transaction failed? If an ordinary person faced a man named Kingpin, he would have trembled all over and even couldn't stand. But Bullseye continued calmly, like a machine. Yes, almost all members are dead, and most of them don't even have bodies. This seems to be because there is a mutant in the cargo, and all this is his fault. The room fell silent again, until a minute later, Kingpin opened his eyes and said to Bullseye without emotion, "Can I kill him? As long as he is a human, I can kill him. Then I want to see his body within a week. As you wish." At the same time, in a hidden corner of Hell's Kitchen, in an underground prison, a kind-looking Mediterranean man walked into the basement, followed by several gang members who were still alive and survivors who escaped from the prison. After arriving at the prison, Coulson could no longer maintain the kindness on his face. Looking at the twisted and deformed metal cage, the broken floor, and the wall with a huge gap blasted out by an unknown attack, he couldn't help but ask, "You said this was all done by a mutant?" The people behind him nodded immediately, and one of the young innocent ladies came out with a longing look on her face and said to Phil Coulson, "Yes, that is a very handsome gentleman. He has unforgettable silver hair, deep eyes like a lake, elegant manners, and powerful strength. He is completely different from those violent mutants. He is a real gentleman." Although the nympho lady in front of him has a beautified charm, it still reveals some information about the mysterious mutant. He once again looked at the strange scene around him, especially the huge gap in the wall and the pit on the ground, and then muttered to himself, "The blue black hole vortex? An unknown powerful mutant, definitely at level 3, possibly level 4, and level 5 is not impossible." Just then, a deep voice came from the headset hanging beside his ear. "Agent Coulson, what's the situation?" "Director Fury, the mutants this time are very powerful and can definitely be part of your plan." "Well, good. Search for his whereabouts with all your strength, and try to win him over, and try to pull him into our plan. Rush out of the gangster's prison and identify the surrounding environment through the original owner's memory." As expected, the prison is in Hell's Kitchen. After confirming the location of this place, Sumu rushed in one direction. His identity as a mutant had been exposed when he awakened. He was arrested by the authorities at this time, and the gangsters who arrested him would not let him go. Before killing the gang leader, Sumu learned from the gang leader that these gang members should be Jean Bing's men, and Jean Bing was the underground emperor of New York. Jean Bing, whose business was destroyed, would never let him go. So facing the capture and pursuit of both parties, improving strength is the most important thing at present. Because of the continuous use of the unlimited technique, and the use of the technique twice to turn song, and the energy in the body is on the verge of exhaustion. If he encounters the pursuit troops at this time, then he has no power to resist. Passing a corner again, a transformer appeared in front of Sumu, and he was relieved. Electricity is the easiest source of energy he can think of, and it is also the guarantee for him to survive the early stage. The Six Eyes gave Su-Mu extremely precise energy operations. At this time, he used his energy absorption ability to slowly absorb the current on the voltage generator, just reaching the limit of his speed at this time. Energy point +1. Energy point +1. Energy point +1. Energy absorption experience +1. Energy absorption experience +1. Energy absorption experience +1. Looking at the constantly increasing energy points and sensing the body that was constantly filling up, Su-Mu showed a satisfied smile. Sensing that the energy in his body was close to overflowing, Su-Mu began to practice the skills he had acquired. The abilities given by the panel were initially only level 1, and they must be improved through uninterrupted practice. For example, the skill of the technique, Song, was far less powerful than that of Gojo Satoru. Only by continuous practice and upgrading the skills can he achieve a stronger power. Su-Mu, who has a system, can even surpass the template prototype if he upgrades his skills to a sufficient level and reach an unprecedented level. Among the abilities he possessed at this time, the Six Eyes could not directly enhance his strength. Energy absorption was a skill that would be upgraded the fastest through continuous practice and experience. The particularity of the unlimited technique meant that upgrading this skill could only reduce consumption, and only when it was upgraded to a high enough level could it undergo a transformation. So Su-Mu immediately began to practice the technique of Song, which had a powerful attack capability, but the level was too low at this time, and it could only condense a very small black hole, and the speed was very slow. If facing ordinary people, it could be easily crushed, but if facing mutants or other superpowers, it would be difficult to hit them, and they would become useless. With the help of the Six Eyes, Su-Mu condensed a blue black hole the size of a ping pong ball, and constantly controlled the black hole to move around. At the same time, the system panel gave a prompt. Experience +1 for the skill of Song. Gwen looked at the huge lizard monster angrily. Dr. Connor's son, I will defeat you this time and arrest you. Spider-Gwen attacked the lizard man. Although the lizard man's power could easily break the concrete pillars, facing the flexible Spider-Woman, she had no choice but to bear Gwen's attack. However, although Gwen's attacks kept hitting the lizard man, they were unable to cause effective damage. The lizard man has rough skin and thick flesh, and also has the ability to regenerate. Even if Gwen faced an attack that could kill an ordinary person with one punch, he still did not suffer much damage. Even if you were slightly injured, you can recover quickly with the regeneration ability. Gwen's strength was indeed enhanced in her anger, but her physical strength was also exhausted very quickly, and she was out of breath soon. As her physical strength declined, her speed and strength also began to decline, and finally, she gradually fell into a disadvantage. Suddenly, the lizard man caught a flaw in Gwen's body, immediately grabbed one of her legs, and threw her away. With a loud noise, a human-shaped depression was made in the dilapidated wall nearby. At this time, Gwen had just gained extraordinary powers. She was hit so hard, and the intense pain made it impossible for her to recover. She struggled to stand up, but the terrifying green figure had already appeared in front of her, blocking the dim lights of the street, leaving only a lightless shadow. A harsh sound broke through the air, and Gwen was kicked away again. This time she completely lost her ability to resist. The sound of heavy footsteps came, and Gwen tried hard to raise her head and struggled to get up, but to no avail. She looked desperately at the slowly approaching lizard man, and the fear of death enveloped her. Dr. Connors, who turned into a lizard man, has completely lost his humanity. She doesn't think Dr. Connors will let her go. Is it possible that I have just gained extraordinary abilities and am about to die? No, I don't want to die. But the severe pain radiating from all parts of her body and her uncontrollable body told her that she no longer had the power to resist. She was about to sink into the abyss of death just like the husband just now. At this moment, a voice suddenly came from the distance. The owner of this voice was supposed to be dead, so that Gwen thought he was hallucinating. But when she saw the lizard man stop, she realized that she had heard correctly. The gentleman just now is not dead. How can this be? But the sound that came next confirmed her guess, even though it was impossible. I said, didn't you hear me? Ugly. Seeing the lizard man turn around and look at him, Su-Mu curved the corners of his mouth in a ferocious arc. Attacking me directly. Do you think I'm easy to bully? The lizard man looked at Su-Mu with some confusion. Why did the ant suddenly become alive again? Professor Connor's son himself has extremely high intelligence, but after turning into a lizard man, he turned out to be a monster with a low IQ, and he was better at instinctive destruction than thinking. After seeing Su-Mu resurrected, he only paused for a moment, then immediately rushed towards Su-Mu, wanting to tear the ants in front of him into pieces. When Gwen saw this scene, although she didn't understand how this gentleman escaped from the attack just now, she believed that this gentleman was definitely no match for the lizard man, so she immediately reminded, run away. But what happened next made her eyes widen in disbelief. Roar. The lizard man roared angrily and rushed towards Su-Mu. The lizard man's body looks very bloated, but his speed is not slow. The reason why he looks clumsy is just compared to the nimble Spider-Woman. In fact, his speed, agility, and reflexes are comparable to Spider-Woman, but his huge body only slows down his speed. But this is not without its benefits. His huge body reduces his speed and increases his strength. At this time, he rushed towards Su-Mu, making Su-Mu feel like he was facing a truck rushing straight towards him. But it's just a truck. Su-Mu stretched forward with one hand, and the surrounding space continued to overlap, reaching an infinite level, making it impossible for any object to approach him. No lower limit for spells. Under Gwen's gaze, the giant lizard man was about to hit the poor gentleman. With that gentleman's thin body, he would definitely be smashed into a pulp. She couldn't bear to see what was about to happen next. However, the gentleman stretched out his hand and blocked it in front of him. Facing the huge lizard man, the thin arm was as easy to break as a chopstick. But just a thin arm prevents the lizard man from moving forward. In the end, what happened? What's wrong with this world? Why do I suddenly not recognize it? Gwen issued such questions continuously. Looking at the lizard man in front of him who kept attacking him but could not make an inch, Su-Mu smiled brightly at him. Come on, come on. If you work harder, maybe you can meet me. How could the lizard man endure being so provoked? He burst out with even greater strength, his muscles all over his body knitted together and collapsed into a ball, and he unleashed the strongest blow. But still no effect. The distance of just a few centimeters was like a world away, completely out of reach. After playing with the lizard man for a while, Su-Mu also lost patience, and the energy was transformed into pure spell power, filling the whole body. He wants to settle this battle. With Su-Mu's current template fusion level, even if the cursed power strengthens his body, he is no match for the lizard man. However, with the help of the Six Eyes, the lizard man is just a big sandbag. The unlimited technique has been in the open state, and the lizard man cannot touch Su-Mu at all, but Su-Mu can touch the lizard man at will. After the attack strengthened by the cursed power, the lizard man was hit. In Gwen's shocked eyes, the gentleman who looked very thin was beating the lizard man and completely suppressing him. Like a bodybuilding gymnast, every move of Su-Mu is handsome and lethal. Bang! The foot collided with the lizard man's chest, and the lizard man was kicked out, breaking through several walls, and finally fell to the ground. But immediately, it stood up again. Even though Su-Mu's attack just now caused him a lot of damage, it recovered immediately under the terrifying regeneration ability and could not have a significant effect. Gwen's pupils, which were once again filled with hope, dimmed again. That's right, she was defeated by this terrifying regeneration ability. Even if that gentleman was surprisingly strong, he would be exhausted to death by the terrifying regeneration ability if he could not cause fatal damage to the lizard man. So she said to that gentleman, this gentleman, Dr. Lizard has a very strong recovery ability. If you can't defeat him in one go, you may be exhausted to death by him. Your damage must be faster than its self-healing speed to defeat him. Su-Mu ignored Spider-Woman, but looked at the increasingly violent lizard man. After the lizard man's injuries recovered, he immediately rushed towards him. A hideous smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, and he looked at the big guy in front of him and sneered. Do you really think I can't do anything to you? He stretched out his palm, and his slender and bony fingers shrank slightly, and then his voice became indifferent. The technique is forward to Song. The azure terrifying vortex appeared again, swallowing everything around it. The moment he cast the spell to reverse song, Sumu immediately felt something different. The energy in his body was rapidly converted into spell power and consumed. The blue black hole that could only condense the size of a pineapple was now the size of a basketball. Of course, as the power increases, the consumption is much greater than before. However, it consumed a lot of energy, and the performance of the LV2 spell reversing song did not disappoint Sumu. The azure black hole swept towards the lizard man at more than twice its original speed. The lizard man instinctively sensed the danger, but because the distance was too close and the speed of the azure black hole was too fast, he could not avoid it at all. Then Gwen, who was watching the battle from a distance, saw the scene in front of him. The lizard man's body twisted violently, and a large amount of fascia and flesh moved toward the center of the body. Then a terrifying blue black hole rushed out of the lizard man's chest, continuously devouring his flesh and blood until it was completely swallowed up. And even if it completely swallowed up the lizard man's body, the terrifying azure black hole still didn't stop, constantly devouring everything around it. The air, the floor, the broken walls, and the street lights. What frightened her was that the terrifying azure black hole flew towards her at extremely high speed. She was seriously injured at this time and could not escape at all. She could only wait for death to come. Facing the lizard people, she was filled with unwillingness, but facing the terrifying blue black hole, she was about to lose her ability to think. That terrifying azure black hole was impossible to stop, swallowing everything around it, not even her thoughts. Gwen's mind went blank. However, when the azure black hole was still several meters away from her and the terrifying attraction had already acted on her body, the vortex suddenly disappeared and disappeared. She also recovered from holding her breath and gasped violently. She had never been so close to death. I have never been so helpless. Is this really a power that humans can control? After releasing the spell to reverse song, Sumu looked at the completely disappeared lizard man and smiled with satisfaction. The improvement of song in the reversal of the technique was greater than he imagined. In this way, around LV4 or LV5, you can reach the level of Gojo enlightenment. When the skill level is improved again on this basis, he will be far more powerful than Gojo Satoru. When it was all over, Sumu looked forward and saw that her good neighbor in New York, Spider-Woman, had fainted due to serious injuries. Observation through 6 eyes showed that she had multiple fractures all over her body. Her internal organs were slightly ruptured and bleeding was oozing. However, Spider-Woman has a self-healing factor that allows her to heal quickly regardless of her injuries. But the current location is Hell's Kitchen, and a battle has just occurred, so there must be a lot of eyes on this place. Although Sumu was not a good person, he still didn't want to see his favorite character die in front of him. 6 eyes experience +1. 6 eyes experience +1. 6 eyes experience +1. Following the system prompts, Sumu used her 6 eyes to check Gwen's physical condition and accurately restored her dislocated bones with her hands so that she could recover faster. At this moment, Sumu thought of something and took off Spider-Woman's hood and mask, revealing a delicate and pretty face from under the hood. With short blonde hair and a delicate face, yes, this is Gwen Stacy. But at this time, Gwen is more beautiful than the Gwen who appears in movies or animations. At this moment, Spider-Woman in Sumu's arms suddenly woke up. Looking at the handsome man hugging her, she was a little dazed at first. After waking up, she immediately jumped out of Sumu's arms and flipped upside down to a few meters away. However, her movements were slightly deformed because she was far from recovering from the injury. She suddenly fell to the ground accidentally and immediately struggled to get up. After Gwen stood firm, she suddenly noticed the white mask in the hand of the man in front of her, touched her face again, and immediately realized that her true appearance had been discovered. Oh my god, what should I do? Why was her identity immediately discovered by others when she first became Spider-Woman? Gwen was confused at this time and didn't know what to do. Unexpectedly, Gwen regained consciousness immediately, which surprised Sumu. Spider-Woman's ability to heal herself should not be underestimated. He held the mask in his hand and said to Gwen, I didn't expect that my good neighbor Spider-Woman would be so young. Are you still in school? Why did you take off my hood? Sumu tilted her head, then showed a bright smile. Can't you? I'm really sorry. If you are unhappy, then hit me. Gwen. Ever since Sumu instantly killed Dr. Lizard, she already knew how much power the seemingly thin man in front of her contained in his body, and how she was no match for the man in front of her. Why did you kill Dr. Lizard? He only became cruel and devouring because of the mutation of the medicine, but he is actually a good person. Gwen thought of something and asked. Facing Gwen's questioning, Sumu was not surprised. She was a kind-hearted girl. This was one of the reasons why he liked Gwen. But he wants the person he likes to be kind, but he is not a kind person. Because he wants to kill me, then he must be prepared to be killed by me. Gwen wanted to say something, but she didn't say anything. Because from Sumu's perspective, he was not wrong. It was self-defense. But a familiar elder suddenly died in front of her, which still made her a little overwhelmed. So she stopped talking, just left the sentence, and flew away with the spider silk. Maybe you are not wrong, but I think I should go. Looking at Gwen flying away, Sumu shouted, Your mask. Spider-Woman was slightly stunned, hesitated for a moment, and returned to the original way, snatched the mask from Sumu's hand, and then left. Although I really want to punch that hateful smiley face, considering the difference in strength, forget it. Just as Spider-Woman thought from the heart. Looking at the Spider-Woman going away, Sumu suddenly felt that traveling through time was also very good. At least she could interact with the characters she liked in her previous life. And now they were no longer heroes that could only be seen from one side of the screen. They were living people with their own joys and sorrows. Sensing the remaining energy in his body, Sumu grabbed the broken wire and continued to absorb electricity. Energy absorption experience +1. Energy absorption experience +1. Energy absorption experience +1. 6 eye experience +1. 6 eye experience +1. 6 eye experience +1. While absorbing energy, the 6 eyes are constantly activated, giving Sumu the ability to accurately control energy. So the experience value of the 6 eyes is also constantly increasing. After a few minutes, the system pops up a prompt box. 6 eye experience +1. Congratulations, the skill 6 eyes is upgraded. 6 eyes LV2, 1 of 300. It has a 360-degree long-distance viewing angle, can see the flow of energy, and has amazing dynamic vision, allowing the holder to perform fine energy operations. After the 6 eye upgrade, the 360-degree long-distance viewing angle has been doubled, from 200 meters to 500 meters. Of course, this is the range of vision that can be clearly observed, able to clearly capture small targets, observe the specific flow of energy, and have extremely strong dynamic capture capabilities. If the vision is blurry, then his vision is further away, and of course he will be the same as ordinary people, who can only see, but cannot see clearly. In addition, reaching level 2 also awakens another ability, clairvoyance. At this time, his 6 eyes can penetrate a steel plate of about 10 centimeters and observe the internal situation. Unlike the white eyes, which appear in black and white, he can see colorful things and see them extremely clearly. This is not possible. Sumu suddenly felt a little bored after getting one of the most desired superpowers in his previous life so easily. Suddenly, Sumu saw several drones flying towards here from the expanded site. Further away, a heavily armed force could be seen moving forward at great speed, following closely behind the drone. This is definitely not revenge from Gene Ben, and it is definitely not the work of gangsters. How could they have such sophisticated equipment? This is the power of the army. It should be a secret force dedicated to catching mutants. In a short moment, the drone was approaching. Sumu showed a ferocious smile to the camera on the drone, and then the blue black hole swallowed all the drones. After that, he used the magic power to strengthen his body and quickly left the place. Sumu learned from the memory of the original owner that there were mutants in this force who joined the military, and their strength should not be underestimated. Even if you have unlimited spells, you are not safe when faced with all kinds of weird skills. This is the time when he is growing at the fastest speed, so there is no need to fight with the army. What he needs now is to continuously absorb energy and improve the degree of template fusion. When he awakens to reverse the spell, he will have no worries at all. Note, the reversal technique has a powerful therapeutic effect. In a hidden military base, a large number of screens are displayed on the wall. Suddenly, several screens went out almost at the same time, which showed that at least several drones were destroyed at the same time in a very short period of time. Noticing this scene, a middle-aged man wearing the rank of colonel, with a serious face and sinister eyes asked the soldier, "What happened?" The soldier immediately stood up and reported to the middle-aged man, "Colonel Stryker, a mutation occurred when we captured number 9527. The target seems to have awakened for the second time and awakened other mutant abilities." Stryker's eyes flashed, and then he came to the screen and said to the soldier, "Retrieve images of the drone before it was destroyed." The soldiers immediately projected the images recorded before the drone was destroyed onto the largest screen. The drone was seen flying forward, and soon a tall, thin man with white hair appeared on the screen. When the drone stopped in the air and pointed towards the white-haired man, he saw the white-haired man grinning at the camera, and then a blue black hole the size of a basketball was produced in his hand, flying towards the camera at a high speed, and the screen immediately went black. Presumably the drone was destroyed. Turning on several other drone videos, the situation was the same. The unknown blue black hole was extremely fast and destroyed all the drones in the blink of an eye. Colonel Stryker's eyes were serious. He had some impressions about number 9527 because his abilities were the same as an extremely powerful mutant from decades ago, and that mutant is a terrifying existence that can absorb nuclear energy. But the energy of number 9527 was too weak, and even the kinetic energy of ordinary people's boxing could not be fully absorbed, so he did not pay much attention to him. Unexpectedly, he appeared again at this time and awakened other abilities. After watching the video several times, the picture finally stopped on the blue black hole. The attack capability of this black hole is obviously very strong, and it can easily tear apart metal and destroy drones. And 9527 also exhibits another ability, which is extremely wide perception. He was initially waiting for the drone to arrive, and had obviously already noticed its whereabouts. Moreover, number 9527's hair color turned white, and blue pupils aroused his curiosity. The video scrolled again and stopped on that ferocious smile. Colonel Stryker showed a cruel smile, and then issued an order. Go all out to capture 9527. He is of great research value. Send experimental subjects 1085 and 1086 to assist in the capture. 1080 SIXS space attack should be able to break through 9527's defense. After giving the order, he murmured to himself again, "Provocative? That's as you wish." Number 1407 Grimogen Road, Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters. In a hidden laboratory, Jean Grey handed a report to Professor X. "Professor, we discovered a strange movement in Stryker's troops. They seem to be deploying most of their forces to capture a mutant numbered 9527. 9527. For the same reason as Stryker, Professor X was equally impressed by the mutant named 9527 by Stryker. This reminded him of the most powerful enemy he had ever encountered, the Black Emperor, Sebastian Shaw. At this moment, if it weren't for good luck, he and Eric would not be able to kill him at all. But the young Chinese man named Su Mu, number 9527, has a very low upper limit of ability. He is also extremely weak among the first-level mutants, and his ability is almost non-existent. This also made him not care, and he did not immediately invite him to join Xavier's School for Gifted Youth. Unexpectedly, he saw his name in Stryker's target at this time. Professor X knew Stryker. If Su Mu had no value, he would definitely not spend a lot of energy to capture him. At this time, he concentrated on capturing him. Su Mu must have undergone some mysterious changes, so he immediately used the brainwave amplifier to find Su Mu's location, and wanted to invite him to join Xavier's School for Gifted Youth before Stryker. But why is there no Su Mu's consciousness? Obviously, I could clearly sense it before. You know, even Jean Grey, who has infinite potential, can sense the existence of her consciousness. Could it be? Professor X suddenly realized something. Could it be that the mysterious changes in Su Mu were related to this, and it can actually block the invasion of his consciousness, and even make him unable to perceive? Does Su Mu have the potential to be a level 5 mutant? Or, he has already become a level 5 mutant? Thinking of this, Professor X immediately said to Jean Grey, "Do your best to find Su Mu's traces, and make sure to contact him before Stryker and Eric, win him over, and let him join Xavier's School for Gifted Youths. Su Mu is likely to be a level 5 mutant." At the same time, a slim and graceful urban girl crossed the street, entered a narrow alley, and finally walked into a room. A man wearing a strange helmet stood at the window in the room, looking at the busy road with deep eyes. "Eric, I found a new message. Stryker and Charles are looking for a mutant named Su Mu, but his mutant ability is only the first-level energy absorption. I suspect that his mutant ability has awakened for the second time, which attracted their attention." Magneto did not look back, still observing everything in front of him, especially those ordinary people without mutant abilities. Energy absorption. Raven, contact Su Mu immediately before them. The mutant that Charles and Stryker are concerned about is definitely not ordinary. Pull him into the mutant brotherhood. Su Mu naturally didn't know that because of his second awakening ability, he had been targeted by several forces. At this time, he had left Hell's Kitchen and bought a new set of clothes with the US dollars donated by gang members, and took a shower in a hotel. Because he constantly absorbed energy and used it to strengthen his body, even though he had not yet learned the reversal technique, his injuries still recovered at a speed far beyond that of ordinary people. Even some of the scars left behind gradually faded, revealing fair skin. Putting on a pair of round-frame sunglasses, he looked brand new, and there was no trace of his embarrassment in the underground prison. He was now a 1.9 meter tall, evil handsome man. Saying goodbye to the female store manager who kept winking at him, Su Mu walked out under the regretful gaze of the female store manager. Because he was arrested by the military and threatened by Jean Bing, he did not want to stay in one place for too long. Opening the system panel, Su Mu looked at the energy point column. Energy points, 3,425. After several hours of continuous energy absorption, Su Mu's energy points reached a huge 3,000. He immediately put all his energy points into the system, and the template fusion degree increased rapidly, finally stopping at 23%. The system prompt finally sounded again. Template fusion degree, 23%. You have awakened a new skill, reversal technique. Reversal technique LV1. 1 of 100 transforms the negative energy of the cursed power into positive energy, with a strong healing effect. Finally got the reversal technique. After getting the reversal technique, Su Mu's survivability will be improved again, and he will have a stronger self-healing ability than the lizard man. When getting the reversal technique, Su Mu learned from the information in his mind that he could not use the reversal technique on others at this time, but could only heal himself. However, as the skill level increases, all of this will be solved, and he will even have the ability to revive and restore the essence of things. At this moment, through the 6 eyes, Su Mu observed a figure rushing towards him at a very fast speed. It was a strong man over 2 meters tall. He ignored the civilians around him at this time and rushed around, knocking a large number of civilians away. In a moment, there was a wailing sound around, and some civilians were even dead. Further away, drones and most of the army have already assembled and are constantly rushing here. The strong man stopped. His muscles were knotted all over his body. His skin was a deep gray, and a lot of blue veins were constantly wriggling under his skin, constantly transporting energy to his strong body. He carried a short man like a dwarf on his back. Unlike the strong man, the short man was extremely thin, and his body was not even as thick as the strong man's arm. Su Mu did not leave. Judging from the speed observed by the 6 eyes, the strong man's speed was much faster than his. Unless he mastered the advanced means of the art of song, teleportation, he would not be able to escape his pursuit. But unfortunately, the level of the art of song was still too low at this time, and he could not master it. The strong man stopped 10 meters away from Su Mu. His bare feet dug deep into the ground, completely shattering the ground and reducing his kinetic energy. A large number of scattered stones flew towards Su Mu, but before they touched him, they floated in the air and could not get close to him at all. Seeing this, the sturdy man nodded and said, "White hair, blue eyes, and this strange ability. You are number 9527, right?" 9527. Sumu is very familiar with this number. Isn't this the number in the movie? Why does this sturdy man call him 9527? Seeing Sumu's confusion, but the sturdy man didn't mean to explain. 9527. Don't resist. Come back with me. Colonel Stryker wants to see you. Don't resist in vain. You don't want to be twisted off your limbs and taken back by force. The sturdy man said as a matter of course, obviously not taking Sumu seriously at all, treating him as a prey that can be hunted at will. After that, he rushed forward to grab Sumu, but when he was still a few centimeters away from Sumu, he couldn't get close at all. Unlimited technique. Seeing this strange phenomenon, the sturdy man had a ferocious look on his face, and then said, "It seems that you have to suffer a lot, just before you join us. I will set some rules for you." Sumu slightly raised his round-frame sunglasses, revealing his delicate blue eyes. He used his little finger to pick his ear hole, put his little finger without earwax in front, and then blew it towards the sturdy man. In the eyes of the strong man, Sumu showed a bright smile, but his eyes were full of coldness. "Okay, we have to set rules. As long as you are willing to cry and apologize, I will spare your life. This is the rule." Rampant. Being underestimated by his prey, the strong man could no longer bear it and waved his fist to attack Sumu, but it did not work. Sumu put down his sunglasses and walked slowly towards the strong man. Then the strong man felt a huge force pressing on him. His huge body, which he was proud of, had no power to resist under this terrifying force. At this time, the army in the distance also arrived. They shot at Sumu frantically, but the bullets could not get close to Sumu at all. In this way, in the hail of bullets, Sumu pressed the strong man against a wall. As he continued to move forward, the wall began to gradually break. "Aren't you going to cry and beg for mercy?" Sumu said lightly. Looking at the enemy in front of him, the strong man finally realized that the target this time was not at the same level as his previous opponents. He was not an opponent at all. Fear fermented in his heart, filling his mind in a short time. So he ignored the plan and shouted, "Don't make a move." The moment the strong man opened his mouth, Sumu felt a familiar fluctuation. That was the power of space. Looking at the dwarf on the strong man's body, it was indeed the power of space he released, and an invisible space blade flew towards him at a high speed. The speed of the space blade was so fast that he couldn't dodge it at all. Sizzle. The sound of flesh and blood breaking sounded, and Sumu was almost cut in half by the space blade amid the strong man's hideous laughter. Although he knew that there was definitely a problem for a strong man to carry a dwarf on his back, the speed of the space blade was too fast, and even the dynamic vision of 6 eyes could not catch it. Although he tried his best to avoid it, Sumu was still seriously injured and almost cut in half. He immediately reached out and pressed forward, using song to create an attraction behind the strong man. The huge attraction attracted the strong man, and the originally broken wall could no longer withstand the huge pressure and shattered. The strong man was also knocked into the shop behind him, causing many customers to scream. This uncharged attack was unable to cause harm to the strong man at all. Even the dwarf lying on his body was well protected by him and was not injured at all. The strong man climbed up, dusted himself off, ignored the civilians around him, looked at Sumu, who was bleeding a lot of blood from his chest and abdomen, and said with a cruel smile, "Stupid guy, let me see how you respond to the slash from space." After that, he walked towards Sumu, preparing to fulfill his promise just now, twisting off Sumu's limbs and sending them to Colonel Stryker. As for Sumu's death, it was impossible for Colonel Stryker to blame him. Colonel Stryker hated mutants so much. How could he be angry because of Tool's death? On the rooftop nearby, 2 groups of people were confronting each other. One side is Cyclops and Storm from the X-Men, while the other side is Red Tank and Mystique from the Brotherhood of Mutants. The 2 of them met when they were looking for Sumu and had a dispute. Cyclops put his hand on his glasses, took them off at any time, and used laser rays from different latitudes to attack the 2 Red Tanks. He said coldly, "Sumu is the fresh blood of mutants and must not be brainwashed by you." Mystique stood behind the Red Tank, avoiding the rays that might strike at any time. Upon hearing what Cyclops said, she retorted, "Mutants are a better race. Humans are just ants. Excellent mutants like Sumu should join the Brotherhood. We will lead him to the right path." Is the right path to destroy like a terrorist? Just as the atmosphere was getting more and more anxious, Storm Girl suddenly broke the current situation. "Look, Sumu's condition doesn't seem to be very good." Everyone present was attracted by Storm Girl's words. The purpose of their trip was to win over Sumu. If something happened to Sumu, then the operation would end in failure. They looked down and saw Sumu being almost cut in half by the space blade. What? Unexpectedly, just when they had a dispute, their target was about to be killed by Stryker's men. Even if Sumu's performance did not meet their expectations, the mutants they wanted to win over would soon be killed, which they couldn't bear. Cyclops was ready to take off his glasses. Storm Girl's hair began to float. Her pupils gradually turned white, and the Red Tank made a charging gesture. They must first save the strong man before he kills Sumu. Although this kind of injury is serious, there are also mutants with healing abilities among mutants. Coupled with the power of technology, as long as the treatment is timely, it can still be cured. However, the scene that happened next made them stop their movements and looked at the severely injured Sumu in shock. He actually has other mutant abilities. The strong man walked towards Sumu slowly with a mocking look on his face. He prepared to break Sumu's limbs and then send them to Colonel Stryker. Colonel Stryker imprisoned a large number of mutants, many of whom had healing abilities. As long as Sumu was still breathing, he could be revived. As for dying in the middle, then just die. What Colonel Stryker wants are mutants stronger than him, and the mutants defeated by him are worthless at all. However, he only walked a few steps before he stopped, pointing his finger at Sumu in great shock. "You, how is it possible? Why is your injury recovered?" The distance was just a little far away, and the dust raised by the collapsed wall blocked the line of sight to a certain extent, so the strong man did not see Sumu's specific situation. At this time, he walked out of the smoke and came not far from Sumu. He happened to see the injury on Sumu's waist that almost cut him in half, recovering at an extremely fast speed. By the time he realized he had stopped, the last of his injuries had just healed completely. He looked at the white-haired man in front of him in disbelief. His terrifying space defense ability, fearsome attack ability like a black hole, good physical fitness, and extremely strong self-healing ability at this time. Is this really a mutant? Even Magneto and Professor X are not so powerful. Could it be he is the legendary 5th-level mutant? The situation suddenly reversed. In the excited eyes of Cyclops and many other mutants, in the fearful eyes of a large number of army soldiers, and in the fearful eyes of the strong man, Sumu grinned again. "I regretted it. Even if you cry and apologize now, I will not spare your life." "You." The strong man looked at Sumu, but for a moment he didn't dare to step forward. His trump card is the dwarf's space attack, which is the only ability that can break through 9527's defense. And once this ability fails, he will no longer be 9527's opponent. He immediately lifted one hand of the dwarf on his shoulder, put it in front of him, and yelled at him, "Release the space blade again quickly and kill him." The space blade obviously consumed a lot of energy for the dwarf. After just using it once, his whole body trembled and his face turned pale. However, under the pressure of the strong man, the dwarf still released the space blade towards Sumu again. The dwarf's space blade consumed a lot of energy, but it was also very powerful and its speed was amazing. This time, Sumu had been prepared, but he was still hit by it. One arm and shoulder were almost cut off, but with the help of the reversal technique, his injuries were recovering at a very fast speed. This time, the strong man saw the whole process of Sumu's injury recovery. Seeing Sumu recover from a fatal injury in just a dozen seconds, he no longer had the will to fight. He immediately threw the dwarf in his hand towards Sumu, fled far away, and ordered the soldiers around him, Stop him for me. The strong man no longer had any courage to face Sumu, so he chose to run away. Although he would be severely punished by Colonel Stryker if he failed the mission, there was still a chance of survival, which was better than facing the monster in front of him. Looking at the dwarf flying towards him, Sumu used his 6 eyes to observe that he could no longer release the space blade. So he stretched out his hands, and under the desperate gaze of the dwarf, the terrifying pressure completely tore his body apart, and a large amount of blood splashed and fell on the ground, and he could not even scream. But there was no blood on Sumu's body. The blood that splashed on him floated in the air, just like the bullets floating around, and could not get close to him at all. Then Sumu looked in the direction of the strong man. A large number of fully armed troops were shooting at him frantically, and the strong man had already run far away. If he ignored it, then the strong man would definitely escape. So he made a decision. He stretched out his index finger, pointed it in the direction of the strong man, and then said lightly, "Spell reversal, huh?" The forward rotation of the Tsang technique can create a strong gravitational force with a limit of negative infinity. By reversing the technique, the cursed power, which is originally negative energy, is converted into positive energy cursed power, which not only allows Sumu to use cursed power to heal himself, but also can inject positive cursed power into the previous technique to obtain the opposite effect. The forward rotation of the Tsang technique can create negative infinity attraction, so the opposite effect is positive infinity repulsion, which is the reverse technique He. After obtaining the reverse technique, Sumu can theoretically release the reverse technique He, but he is different from Gojo Satoru. He has not been trained since childhood to master the cursed power, and his mastery of the technique is limited to the experience of template transmission. With the template fusion degree of only 23%, the experience he inherited is far from the level of being able to release the reverse technique He. At this time, releasing the reverse technique He depends entirely on his own control, but with the help of the 6 eyes, he does not think he will fail. The negative cursed power in the body is multiplied to obtain positive cursed power, and then flows according to the cursed power flow method of the forward rotation of the Tsang technique. At the moment when Sumu finished speaking, a tiny black-red singularity formed in front of his slender index finger. The spell power continued to be infused, and the singularity slowly expanded under Sumu's strenuous control. When it was about to be fully formed, the structure of the singularity suddenly became unstable. Seeing that the spell Tsang was about to fail, Sumu's mouth cracked into a hideous arc, and then he used the absolute control of energy through the 6 eyes and energy absorption to forcibly control the singularity. Crack! Black-red lightning continued to burst out from the singularity in all directions. The ground was hit by lightning and immediately shattered, forming a gully several meters deep and dozens of meters long. The soldiers around were hit by lightning, and their bodies were immediately shattered under the twisted gravity, turning into a piece of bloody flesh residue. Even the caster Sumu was no exception. The terrifying black-red gravitational lightning affected his body. The body strengthened by the spell power and energy absorption immediately collapsed gradually, and then quickly recovered under the effect of the reversal spell. Just when Sumu's energy was almost exhausted and he was about to give up, the black-red singularity in front of his index finger finally stabilized and formed a black-red singularity the size of a Hmong being. The strong man who had already run 1,000 meters ahead suddenly felt an instinctive fear. He turned around and looked back. His strong eyesight allowed him to clearly see the amazing scene in the distance. Everything around the terrifying man was collapsing. Even his own body was no exception, but even so, a cold smile still appeared on the corner of his mouth. Among the stones that were suspended in the air and were constantly being annihilated, on the bodies of a large number of dead soldiers around, and when the blood left on his forehead dyed his mysterious blue eyes red, a smile from the heart bloomed on his face. Boom. The terrifying black-red singularity, accompanied by black-red lightning that splashed due to instability, flew towards him at a high speed. The speed was so fast that even his supervision could not catch it. When he reacted, the terrifying black-red singularity had already arrived in front of him. The strong man subconsciously used his palm to block it, but under the powerful repulsive force released by the reversal of the technique He, it had no effect at all. He could only watch as the black-red singularity shattered his arm, crushed his bones into powder bit by bit, and then passed through his chest and continued to fly backwards. Boom. After passing through the chest of a strong man, the black-red singularity continued to fly backwards for dozens of meters, and finally formed a gully more than 1,000 meters long, and finally stopped. The strong man's body was completely shattered and completely dead. The time of the whole scene seemed to freeze. Except for Sumu, who was panting heavily, everything else was motionless. Everyone looked at the terrifying white-haired man in shock. Is this really something that humans can do? After a short rest, Sumu walked towards the fully armed soldiers who were still alive in front. Obviously one side was fully armed, and the other side was covered in blood, but it was the fully armed side that kept retreating. So, the SHIELD agents who had just arrived around, the X-Men who were watching the battle, the Brotherhood members, and other civilians who failed to evacuate, all saw the absurd scene in front of them. The white-haired man with blood all over his body raised his head, opened his arms and laughed, and then his injuries recovered quickly. He took a step forward, and the well-trained soldiers took a step back, and so on, repeatedly. In the process, some soldiers even stepped on broken stones, tripped to the ground, and were hit on the head by stones, but he still did not dare to make a sound, for fear of attracting the attention of the man. But no one would laugh at him, because no one dared to show themselves in front of the terrifying white-haired man. Until the white-haired man slowly disappeared around the corner step by step, everyone at the scene began to breathe again, gasping for air. Even the mutants were no exception. At this time, members of all forces had only one idea: report this matter and win over Sumu to join their organization. He can already be confirmed as a newly born 5th-level mutant. No matter which force he joins, he will destroy the current balance. In a store, a middle-aged man gasped and covered the camera in his hand tightly. He took pictures of everything that just happened. Eddie Brock believed that what just happened was definitely the most explosive news this year. Whether it is a terrorist attack in Manhattan, the most prosperous district in New York, causing the death of many civilians, or a fight between mutants, or the powerful mutant ability of the terrifying White Devil, it will cause an earthquake in the news industry. Sumu turned the corner and immediately used the remaining energy to pull open the manhole cover and jump down. Entering the sewer, he moved forward quickly, and the broken wounds on his body were still bleeding during the movement. The consumption of the reversal of the technique He was more than he thought, especially when he forcibly released it. The consumption increased exponentially. Just using it once, it almost consumed all the energy in his body. If he hadn't used the remaining energy to recover some of his injuries and create the illusion that he still had some strength left, then facing many fully armed soldiers would really be dangerous. The energy absorption of level 2 could not allow him to ignore the guns when he lost the unlimited technique. Just as Sumu continued to walk forward, Luyan suddenly caught something. But because of the exhaustion of energy, he could not immediately open the unlimited technique, but he tried his best to dodge and still avoided the next attack. A dagger brushed Sumu's body and flew out, piercing the cement floor of the sewer. Sumu turned around and saw a man in a strange tights standing in front of him, with 4 daggers between his fingers. It was obvious that the daggers just now were his work. Looking at the strange tights on the man in front of him and the strange bullseye on his forehead, Sumu immediately recognized his identity. Bullseye. The dagger just now was obviously thrown by him. Sumu immediately remembered Bullseye's identity. He served Jean Bin in many versions. The reason why he sneaked into him at this time must also be because of Jean Bin's order. If it were anyone else, even other superhumans would use his superb skills to pierce the body with a dagger, but he was different. Even if the energy was almost exhausted at this time, he could still use his 6 eyes to catch the dagger's attack. However, who gave him the confidence? You actually think that he, a mortal with mastery of skills, can assassinate him? Bullseye looked at the white-haired man in front of him. He was very strong, stronger than expected. The part he was aiming at just now was the white-haired man's head, but even though he was clearly exhausted at this time, he still dodged the dagger he threw. You must know that the dagger he uses is partially filled with adamantium alloy. This alloy is extremely hard and can destroy almost anything. With the help of adamantium alloy, the dagger he throws is even close to the speed of sound. The white-haired man in front of me can be avoided. He obviously has other abilities besides spatial ability, a super physique, or other means. If the man in front of him was still in peak condition, he wouldn't even dare to get close. But now, it's completely different. It seems that the horrific attack just unleashed has severely depleted you, and even your reaction ability has been greatly weakened. If you were in your heyday, I would definitely not be your opponent, but now, haha, it is really a pleasure to kill a strong man with my own hands. Bullseye's whole body trembled with excitement. As a top killer, how could there be anything more pleasurable than killing a powerful man? But what surprised him was that the man in front of him didn't panic at all, as if the threat from him didn't exist at all. It's like, even a sickly tiger can still kill a provoking cat. Moreover, the gap between them is even greater than the gap between tigers and cats. He immediately had an ominous premonition and immediately threw the adamantium dagger in his hand, but most of them were avoided by the man in front of him. However, a dagger hit the man, which made him relax a little. At this time, he no longer looks as invincible as before. Sumu used the remaining energy to strengthen his body and avoid attacks. Through his 6 eyes, he immediately noticed the special material of the dagger and understood that it was this incredibly hard dagger that allowed Bullseye to easily break through his defense. But he still didn't panic at all. How dare a mortal dare to provoke a god? Not everyone is Iron Man. He asked calmly. You were sent by Kingpin to assassinate me, right? Bullseye didn't answer, but instead threw the dagger faster, and even took out a pistol to shoot at him. But he was caught by 6 eyes, and then easily dodged. Even if Bullseye didn't answer, Sumu still observed the details of his body through his 6 eyes, and confirmed his guess. Then he continued. If you tell me Jinbin's location, then I will spare your life. How about that? But Bullseye still didn't answer, and even attacked more quickly, and laughed. You can't protect yourself now, but you still want to spare my life. Just go to hell. After saying that, he took out a rocket launcher from nowhere and shot at Sumu. When the rocket launcher exploded in front of Sumu, and the huge flames engulfed Sumu, he breathed a sigh of relief. He should be dead. I didn't expect that the white-haired man would be so difficult to deal with even if he was seriously exhausted. Then he showed an excited smile, and it gave him great pleasure to kill the strong man. You seem happy? Think this is the end. Suddenly, the sound from the fire made the smile on his face freeze. He suddenly heard the sound of the wall breaking, and then the demon's voice sounded again. I'll give you one last chance. Tell me Jinbin's location, and I'll make your death a painless one. He looked in Sumu's direction in disbelief. The smoke dissipated, and the man appeared in front of him intact. At this time, a large amount of shrapnel was floating in front of him, and like the previous bullets, it was unable to get close to him, and he stretched one hand into the stone wall of the sewer. The dim lights around him became even dimmer. At the same time, the injuries on the white-haired man were recovering quickly. Bullseye immediately realized that he was absorbing electrical energy. You have other mutant abilities. Realizing this situation, he immediately ran away with all his strength. Damn it. He actually has other mutant abilities, and he can also absorb energy that can quickly restore energy. So who is still his opponent? Damn Kingpin, I won't take this order. Whoever wants to die will do it. However, the terrifying attraction came from behind, and even though his physical fitness far exceeded that of ordinary people, he still had no power to resist. Under Bullseye's desperate gaze, he floated in front of Sumu, and then his limbs were brutally torn apart by the terrifying gravity, leaving him no longer able to resist. The moment the rocket launcher flew in, Sumu immediately used the kinetic energy of the flying knife and the energy supplemented by sunlight to perform an unlimited technique. Then he strengthened his body, stretched out his arms to penetrate the wall, grabbed the wires and cables inside, and absorbed the electrical energy. A large amount of electric energy was absorbed. The reversal technique and the unlimited technique were reactivated, and he returned to his prime state again. The adamantium alloy dagger on his body was squeezed out by the growing flesh and blood and fell to the ground. The injuries on his body recovered in an instant. Seeing Bullseye escape, Sumu smiled brightly, then stretched out her fingers to hold them slightly, and said with a smile, all things are attracted by heaven. After attracting Bullseye and twisting his limbs into twists, Sumu asked again, how's it going? What do you think? Just tell me, and I'll let you die a happy death. Bullseye looked at the white demon in front of him, and the delicate blue eyes under the white eyelashes looked at him mockingly. For some reason, he saw a strange black scarlet color in those beautiful eyes. After completely tearing Bullseye's twisted body apart, leaving only some adamantium alloy skeletons, Sumu finally confirmed that he did not know Jinbin's location. P.S. Bullseye has some adamantium alloy bones implanted in his body. Kingpin was an extremely cautious person, his residence was different every day, and even his closest confidants did not know the specific itinerary for the next day. Sumu put his hands in his pockets and walked slowly forward. The blood and shrapnel floating behind him quickly fell to the ground. Although it is a pity that the exact location of Kingpin cannot be known, it does not matter. As the 6 eyes continue to be upgraded, the observable area and perspective capabilities will continue to increase. When his observation range covers the entire New York City, he can easily crush him to death. The cables in the sewer wall were constantly being pulled out under the control of gravity, floating around Sumu for him to absorb energy. Energy point +1. Energy point +1. Energy point +1. Energy absorption experience +1. Energy absorption experience +1. Energy absorption experience +1. Energy absorption LV2, 233/300. It can absorb most of the energy, and the absorption speed is the same as the upper limit of energy storage. Energy absorption is about to reach LV3, and this is also his first skill to reach LV3. What changes will happen to the skills after level 3? Will there be an unknown transformation? In addition to energy absorption, Luyan is also gaining experience at an extremely fast rate. These 2 skills are permanent, consume the least, and are also the easiest to upgrade. While Sumu continued to absorb energy, practice skills, and strengthen herself, the outside world also underwent earth-shaking changes. First, Stark, who had been missing for 2 months, returned and immediately announced the closure of the weapons development department, causing Stark Industries shares to shrink significantly and causing an uproar. Secondly, a terrifying greenskin monster appeared at Culver University. The military went to arrest it, but it was no match for the greenskin monster. After being wantonly destroyed by the greenskin monster, it left in style. But these 2 pieces of news should have attracted attention. Even if they should have been the headlines in any newspaper issue, they were squeezed out by another piece of news. Because this news has refreshed people's understanding of mutants. On this day, they thought about the fear of being dominated by mutants. This news was completed alone by a reporter named Eddie Brock of Global Daily. According to him, he was at the scene and witnessed the battle between 2 powerful mutants and saw the white devil almost unresolvable mutant abilities and a strong sense of oppression. The mutant who has the ability to strengthen his body is already strong enough. I believe he is not much inferior to the greenskin monster. However, he has no power to fight back against the white devil. So writes Mr. Eddie Brock, who explained the concept of mutant levels in detail in the news and stated that the white devil is definitely a level 5 mutant. At the end of the news, Eddie Brock wrote, that terrifying black singularity, even if it splashes around, is enough to tear everything apart, and if it hits it head-on, nothing can resist it. It can be clearly seen that the white devil is not proficient in that ability, but this also means that he has more room for growth. If he fully adapts, then he will be a more terrifying existence than Magneto. After this report was published, it immediately spread rapidly in society. Some people said, didn't the government say that mutants are not a threat? Why do such powerful mutants exist? Some people are filled with fear. If he continues to be strong, he can easily kill all humans. The government must arrest him as soon as possible. There are even worshippers of the white devil. He is God. He is an angel who came to the world, and we should worship him as our Lord. There are also voices that are different from these mainstream voices. They are oppressed mutants. They use various hidden IPs to speak on major social platforms. He is the savior of mutants and the leader of mutants. The government has been oppressing mutants indiscriminately and using mutants to conduct inhumane experiments. The leader will lead us to resist. Yes, we will always follow him. In a hidden luxurious room in Hell's Kitchen, Jinbin looked at the newspaper in front of him with an ugly expression, focusing on the terrifying black singularity and the kilometer-long terrifying ravine it left behind. Don't you mean he's just an ordinary mutant? Why is it so strong? As time passed, he became increasingly uneasy because Bullseye never returned. Kingpin didn't rest for a whole day, sitting in a chair and waiting until dawn broke and the sky turned white. He was finally sure that Bullseye had completely failed and was even dead. After sitting on the throne of the Underground Emperor for decades, Jean had not experienced this feeling for an unknown amount of time. This feeling of powerlessness and fear. Even if he is the Emperor, he is still just a mortal. How can he resist the gods? Tens of thousands of meters above the ground, inside a huge aircraft carrier, Nick Fury stared at the information in front of him, motionless. Coulson stood aside carefully. The boss had maintained this posture for a long time. Suddenly, Nick Fury closed the document, raised his head, and looked at Coulson with sharp eyes. Agent Coulson, use all means to find him and win him over. He will be the most important pillar of the Avengers plan. Yes, sir. A simulated breeze blew through the cabin, lifting a corner of the file to reveal several high-definition photos. The azure black hole, the black-red singularity, the mysterious space defense, and finally the white devil that laughs wildly. After Coulson left, Nick Fury's voice sounded in the room again. Such a dangerous mutant must be monitored by S.H.I.E.L.D. In the hidden office, you can occasionally hear faint screams coming from the outside world. They are the miserable and painful wails of the mutants who were experimented on in the laboratory. Colonel Stryker looked at the information in his hand, and his face turned livid. Damn. Gather more power and catch this damn mutant bastard. In a remote location in New York, the two most powerful mutant forces currently gather. If the government knows about the secret meeting between the X-Men and the Brotherhood of Mutants, it will definitely increase the threat level of the X-Men by several levels. Magneto, wearing a strange helmet, and Professor X in a wheelchair looked at each other across the conference table. Magneto was the first to say, Charles, if we can master his power, then in time we will definitely be able to kill all humans, and then we will create a peaceful world where only we mutants exist. After hearing what Magneto said, Professor X shook his head and said to Magneto with a serious face, Eric, you are too radical. Humans and mutants can definitely coexist peacefully. Peace. Are you talking about the damn government's crazy persecution of mutants and the cruel experiments that are being carried out all the time? I will make them change. Hearing the words of his former friend, Magneto looked at him disappointedly. You are too naive. Blood must be repaid with more blood. The members of the Brotherhood of Mutants behind him looked at Magneto with admiration, the leader who led them to resist. Your idea is wrong. That's just a small number of people. You can't deny all of humanity because of a part of the sin. Many X-Men members, like Professor X, looked at Magneto seriously. Only the kind Professor X can help mutants achieve a better future. With no luck, Magneto stood up angrily and walked towards the door. Seeing this, many members of the Brotherhood of Mutants behind him followed. I will find him and take him to the right path. Eric, I will stop you. Charles, you will regret it. Sumu didn't know what happened in the outside world. He was currently planning his future. Unlocking the template requires energy, and using skills requires energy. In the final analysis, the energy is too little. If you only rely on absorbing electrical energy, it will not last long, and it may be discovered by the authorities. So the most important thing at present is to find a stable source of energy. Regarding the Infinity Stones, he is too weak at this time, and the risk of obtaining the Infinity Stones is too great. So there is only one choice at present. Arc reactor. At the same time, after absorbing electrical energy through energy absorption for a long time, the system prompts again. Congratulations, energy absorption upgrade. Energy absorption experience +1. Energy absorption experience +1. Energy absorption experience +1. Congratulations, energy absorption has been upgraded. Energy absorption LV3 1/1000 can absorb most of the energy, with a high absorption speed and energy storage limit. After the energy absorption was upgraded, Sumu immediately felt a huge change in energy absorption. First, the types of energy that can be absorbed have increased. Nuclear energy that could not be absorbed before, and even magic energy, can now be absorbed. In addition, the speed of energy absorption has also become faster, at least 3 times faster than before, and the energy storage limit has also increased 3 times more than before. At this time, he can at least maintain the unlimited spell for half an hour, using more than 6 full-strength spell forward, song, or 3 times the lowest power spell reversal he. From the information obtained from the character template, it is known that the minimum power of the spell reversal he is at least twice the maximum power of the spell forward, song. This not only represents more terrifying consumption, but also more amazing lethality. However, Sumu knew that he was lucky to successfully perform the reversal technique he before, and he might not be able to perform it successfully again. Moreover, the previous reversal technique he was not complete, and a large amount of energy was dissipated. If the reversal technique he of that type was used, the energy would probably be exhausted after 2 times. Therefore, it is best not to use the reversal technique he before gaining experience and usage of the reversal technique he through the character template. Consumption is secondary. If the uncontrolled dissipated energy hits the brain, it will be bad. The current reversal technique has not yet reached the level of regeneration after losing the brain. In addition to the increase in energy reserves, the acceleration of energy absorption speed is also of great help to Sumu. If it goes as expected, he can now withstand the shooting of small caliber rifles and completely absorb the kinetic energy of bullets. In this way, Sumu is not afraid of sneak attacks when the unlimited technique is not activated. Unfortunately, the level of the unlimited technique and the reversal technique is too low, and it is unknown to what level to reach the level of Gojo Satoru. That is, when the reversal technique is constantly repairing the brain, the unlimited technique can be maintained for a long time, and it can automatically select threatening targets. And if the skill level is improved again on this basis, then even the poison attacks that Gojo Satoru cannot select can be selected by itself, and even space attacks can be resisted. With the continuous improvement of skills, he will surpass Gojo Satoru and reach a realm that Gojo Satoru has never reached. Imagining the future, Sumu was excited and even looked forward to activating the character template with the ability to jump to the plane in the future and go to the world of Jujutsu Kaisen. At that time, using the same moves to defeat the invincible Gojo Satoru would be a very interesting thing. Continue to absorb electrical energy, replenish the energy in the body, and push the template fusion degree to 27%, and then leave from the sewer. The exit of the sewer is located in a remote alley. Just when Sumu was about to go to buy a new set of clothes, he suddenly saw a girl who was looking at him in shock. The girl had green hair and looked dirty, weak, and helpless. Of course, this is through the naked eye observation. If you observe from the perspective of 6 eyes, you can find the huge green energy hidden in her body and the iron objects around her that are ready to move. Sumu immediately recognized the identity of the girl, Polaris. Polaris is the daughter of Magneto, whose real name is Lorna Dane. She has the power to control magnetism. At her peak, she can even control the Earth's magnetic field. She is a powerful mutant who is not inferior to Magneto. I didn't expect to meet her here. Sumu was a little surprised about this, but when he thought that this universe was not any universe he knew, but an unknown parallel universe, he immediately felt that it was not surprising. Marvel's various universes have too many versions. No matter what happens, it is not strange. Sumu didn't intend to pay attention to Polaris, but Polaris obviously would not let him go. She recognized the man in front of her, who was called the most powerful mutant in the world by the media, the biggest threat to the world, and the white-haired devil. He was also called the savior and leader by mutants. No matter what the name is, it means that the man in front of him is extremely powerful, even more powerful than his father, Magneto. Seeing Sumu leaving, she subconsciously wanted to use her ability to stop him. She used her ability to unscrew the metal pipe fixed on the wall and flew towards Sumu, trying to block him in front of him. But Polaris looked at the scene in front of her in great shock. She saw that the metal she controlled could no longer be manipulated when approaching the man in front of her. It just stopped behind the man and could not move forward at all. But she was not disappointed, but even happier. The stronger Sumu was, the more likely he would lead the mutants to be liberated from human oppression. She just smiled and wanted to say something to Sumu, but the smile on her face froze immediately. Sumu turned his head slowly, and there was no emotion in his azure eyes. Being stared at by the azure eyes like the god of death, Polaris immediately felt a huge pressure, as if the god of death had placed the sickle of harvesting souls on her neck, ready to harvest her soul at any time. Then she heard a cold voice coming from the front. "Live well, isn't it good?" After hearing this death-like whisper, Polaris shuddered violently, came back to his senses from his trance, and immediately said, "I have no ill will towards you. I just want to follow you and fight against the human government with you." But Sumu did not respond, and walked slowly towards Polaris. The slow steps gave Polaris extremely strong pressure, as if the irresistible force was pushing her into the abyss of death. Under the fatal threat, she subconsciously used her ability to control a large amount of metal to attack Sumu. But all these metals fell in front of Sumu and could not move forward at all. It was not until this time that she understood the weight of the white-haired demon. The white-haired demon was completely different from the mutants she had known before. It was a terrifying force of another dimension. Even if Polaris used all her strength to stop Sumu from approaching and wanted to stop the approach of death, it did not work. Then, she was forced into a corner by Sumu, and the strong pressure pressed her against the wall, unable to move. Sumu used energy to strengthen his body, ignored Polaris in front of him, clenched his fingers deeply into the largest metal pipe, and then threw it forward. The metal pipe was given huge kinetic energy by the seemingly thin arm, and it sank deeply into the hard wall, right next to Polaris's ear. "Beautiful lady, this is a warning. Your luck will not be so good next time." Then he gently slid his index finger, and the floating metal around ignored Polaris's manipulation, sank into the wall around her, and wrapped her in it. Looking at the white-haired man who yawned and walked away slowly with long legs as when he came, Polaris mustered up the courage, and then shouted loudly, "You are so strong. You can do a lot of things. You can save mutants. Why don't you do it?" After a while, just when she thought she was ignored, she heard a nonchalant voice. "What does their suffering have to do with me?" The white-haired demon in front turned around, revealing a charming profile and deep blue eyes, and smiled. "Don't kidnap me, because I have no morals." Ignoring Polaris anymore, Sumu put on her sunglasses and walked out of the street. As soon as he walked onto the street, he found himself being pointed at by others and heard the discussions of passersby around him. He has white hair and wears sunglasses. He can't be a white-haired devil, right? The fellow passerby shook his head and said, "It's probably an imitator. How could a random passerby be the white-haired devil?" Sumu was a little confused. What was the white-haired devil? Then he saw the big screen on the side of the street. After watching it for a while, he immediately understood something. Is he famous? On the big screen, a man in his 30s was talking. "At that time, I was hiding in a nearby store, only 10 meters away from the white-haired demon, and witnessed his battle with another mutant. I'm sure he is definitely more powerful than Magneto, and is the most powerful mutant in the world today." Several black lines immediately appeared on Sumu's forehead. What happened to this damn reporter? Although he will definitely become the strongest mutant in the future, it is still in the preliminary stage, and he is not the most powerful mutant now. Not to mention that the unlimited spells cannot withstand mental attacks at this time. The Dark Phoenix alone is far stronger than him. At this time, he is described as the strongest mutant. How can he be allowed to develop silently? Looking at the name tag below the man, it read the following letters, Eddie Brock. Sumu felt that the name was somewhat familiar. After thinking about it carefully, she finally remembered. Isn't this Venom? Okay, cute little thing. I will love you very much when we meet again in the future. Then Sumu ignored Eddie Brock and looked towards the tallest building in Manhattan. That is one of the most famous buildings in the Marvel world, Stark Tower. If you want to get the arc reactor, you must contact Tony Stark, so going directly to Stark Tower is definitely the fastest option. It just so happens that Tony Stark has just returned and is about to have a conflict with Obadiah Stane. Saving his life during the conflict should be worth an arc reactor, right? Of course, if Tony Stark still refuses to hand over the arc reactor, then he already has it. Sumu thought so. Sumu put on the hood of her white sweatshirt and walked slowly towards Stark building. Around him, the light was slightly dim, and all kinds of energy that could not be observed by ordinary people were continuously poured into his body under the precise control of the second level 6 eyes and the third level energy absorption. Although absorption is slower than direct contact with energy, it is better than lasting. This not only greatly improves his combat endurance, but also increases the efficiency of energy collection. The system beeps continuously. Energy point +1. Energy point +1. 6 eyes experience +1. 6 eyes experience +1. Energy absorption experience +1. Energy absorption experience +1. Stark Tower is located on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. It is the tallest building in the neighborhood. Its duckbill-like top is very eye-catching and fits Tony Stark's flamboyant character. Arriving under the Stark building, it was getting late. Sumu walked towards the Stark gate, but was stopped by several security guards. These security guards stopped him and asked, "Hello, sir, please show me your ID." Sumu naturally did not have a certificate. Although he knew that the security guards would not let him pass, he still said honestly, "I have something important to discuss with Tony Stark, and I asked you to go and notify him." Sure enough, after hearing Sumu's words, several security guards were stunned, and then looked at each other in confusion. They wanted to laugh, but the top professionalism in the industry did not make them laugh out loud. Several security guards suppressed their laughter and said, "Sir, today is not April Fool's Day. It's not funny." Knowing that this would happen a long time ago, Sumu was a little irritated, rubbed her silky white hair, and then continued, "Everyone, this is not a joke." Seeing that Sumu did not leave, but continued to entangle him, the faces of many security guards gradually became serious, obviously treating him as a bad element who came to cause trouble. Just when Sumu was about to show some special abilities and persuade these security guards, several cars stopped, and then a beautiful figure walked out first, followed by several men in black with cold temperaments. They saw the two parties confronting each other in front of the building, but they didn't pay attention. Instead, they walked directly into the building and walked in a hurry. Clearly they have more important things to do. Sumu recognized the leading woman immediately. She had long blonde hair and was wearing a black skirt. Who was it if it wasn't Little Pepper? Looks like it's time for my hero to save the hero soon. Sumu stretched out 2 fingers, rubbed his chin, and thought. Then he looked at the security guards who were slowly approaching him, and slowly took off the round sunglasses on the high bridge of his nose. Many security guards immediately stopped. They looked at the delicate eyes that emitted azure aura before them, and the most popular news recently slowly emerged in their minds. White-haired devil. The moment before they became unconscious, they saw the man in front of them slightly hooking up the corners of his mouth, and saying softly, "I'm sorry everyone, please take a rest for a while." Pepper led many agents and walked quickly towards the interior of the building. After Agent Coulson used a mini-bomb to destroy the door lock, several people continued to move toward the interior of Area 16. The light inside Area 16 was very dim, filled with a large number of mechanical equipment, multiple iron chains hanging from the ceiling, and a huge rough metal armor placed in a corner. Looking at the steel armor, Coulson said to Pepper next to him, "It seems that you are right. He is making armor." The few people continued to go deeper, and Pepper was attracted by the screens full of complex data around her, and then stopped in front of dozens of chains. Just when she wanted to move forward, suddenly, 2 huge eyes emitting pale light lit up from the darkness. Ah! The shrill scream destroyed the peace of the night. Pepper fled outside, and the huge steel armor several meters high behind her was chasing her madly. Seeing this situation, several agents subconsciously shot at Iron Overlord with guns, but were immediately flattened by the terrifying steel fist. In the blink of an eye, only Coulson and Pepper survived among the few people who came to capture Obadiah Stane. Pepper passed through a narrow door, and the huge Iron Overlord was stuck by the solid concrete wall, so she escaped. Just as she was passing through the circular arc reactor and trying to escape from Stark Tower, she suddenly saw something out of the corner of her eye. Countless terrifying white currents flowed out of the arc reactor, emitting the piercing sound of thousands of birds, and enveloped a handsome white-haired man. Wrapped in such a terrifying current, the white-haired man was not hurt at all, but opened his arms. His delicate blue eyes were full of joy. More. Seeing the incredible scene in front of her, Pepper subconsciously stopped, and even forgot to escape temporarily. After getting rid of several dedicated security guards, Sumu slowly walked towards the interior of Stark Tower, preparing to go and see the birth of the supervillain Iron Overlord. Just then, a huge arc caught his attention. From the perspective of Liu Yan, terrifying energy jumped in front of him, like a beautiful cake, waiting for him to taste. He immediately put the Iron Overlord behind him. The Iron Overlord was not as important as energy. Through the meticulous manipulation of the 6 eyes, a large amount of electrical energy escaped from the giant arc reactor and was gradually absorbed by Sumu. Energy point +1. Energy point +1. Energy point +1. Since the energy absorption was increased to LV3, it was overloaded for the first time, absorbing electric energy like crazy. Put all the energy points into the character template, and the fusion level will jump almost every few minutes. Template integration, 28%. Template integration, 29%. Template fusion, 30%. When the fusion degree reached 30%, many memories immediately emerged in Sumu's mind. It was an advanced manipulation method of curse power, Black Flash. In the world of spell return, when physical strikes and spell impacts hit almost simultaneously, and the error is within 0.000001 seconds, space distortion will occur. At that time, the power of the attack will be the normal 2.5 power. This is a scalable skill that increases in power as your strength increases. Due to the difficult conditions of Black Flash, no warlock can use Black Flash 100%. Therefore, this amazingly powerful technique can only be performed through luck. However, Sumu is different. He has 6 eyes and energy absorption, 2 extraordinary abilities that belong to different worlds. As his skill level increases, his control over energy will be much higher than Gojo Satoru. It is very likely that he will be able to play Black Flash 100% in the future. At that time, by strengthening his body through energy absorption and mantra manipulation, Sumu could even fight the Hulk hand-to-hand. While Sumu was continuously absorbing energy, he suddenly heard a cry of surprise from behind him. When he saw it again, it turned out to be little Pepper who had escaped. However, for some reason, when he turned to look at Pepper, Pepper let out a piercing scream. Her legs were shaking, and she rolled out of the door of Stark Tower. Sumu stood there, a little confused, and slowly suppressed the crazy but joyful smile on his face, and stopped absorbing electric energy, allowing the surrounding room that was ravaged by electric energy to rest for a while. He had deep self-doubt and said, "Do I look scary?" Pepper escaped from the Stark building and immediately looked back. She was relieved to see that the terrifying white-haired demon was not chasing her. She originally thought that most of the news reports were exaggerated news, but after meeting the white-haired demon, she realized that those reports were not true, and the reality was even more perverted than the news. The white-haired devil is so scary. Thinking of the crazy smile just now and the white-haired figure in the terrifying current, little Pepper shuddered again. Pepper. At this moment, Tony's voice came to Pepper's ears. When Tony wanted to say something else, she immediately said, "Tony, the white-haired devil. The white-haired devil is here too." Tony Stark is full of doubts, isn't it, Obadiah? Why did he suddenly turn into a white-haired demon? But there was no time for him to think about it, because there was a scream from Pepper, and it was obvious that she was in danger. Tony Stark once again increased his propulsion, his speed increased again, and finally, in a few seconds, he saw Iron Overlord who was targeting Pepper with a weapon. Without any hesitation, he withstood the hail of gunfire and directly knocked the Iron Overlord away, crashing through numerous walls until he fell into a road. The two continued to fight on the road, and Tony Stark was completely at a disadvantage. Even if he later led Iron Overlord to a high altitude and used the icing phenomenon at high altitude to make him fall, he could not kill Iron Overlord. At the end, when Tony Stark was about to ask Pepper to open all the circuits and detonate the arc reactor, he heard crisp footsteps from the side. Yeah, it would be a shame if such a powerful energy source was destroyed. The sudden sound caused Tony Stark and Iron Overlord to look in the direction of the source of the sound. Before the visitor made a sound, their investigation system didn't notice anything. They first saw a streak of white hair, followed by bright blue eyes that shone in the night sky, and a handsome face with a cynical smile. Then, they heard the mysterious white-haired man say to Tony Stark, "I killed Obadiah for you. How about you give me an arc reactor?" Tony Stark immediately ordered Jarvis. "Jarvis, check his profile." Jarvis responded immediately. He should be the 5th-level mutant Sumu who appeared in Manhattan a few days ago and fought with another mutant. At the same time, Jarvis called up Sumu's detailed information and photos of various abilities on the projection in front of Tony Stark's eyes. Looking at the terrifying blue black hole and the strange red-black starting point, Tony Stark fell into confusion. Did the outside world change so drastically when he transformed the Mark II? After reading the information, Tony Stark did not hesitate and said directly to Sumu, "Make a deal." Obadiah witnessed the entire transaction between Sumu and Tony Stark. Although he did not believe that a human could have such amazing power, he did not want to cause any more trouble, so he said to Sumu, "White-haired demon, help me kill Tony. I will give you $100 million as a reward and give you 3 arc reactors." He looked at Sumu confidently, waiting for the white-haired demon in front of him to surrender to money. But something he did not expect happened. The white-haired demon showed a mocking smile on his face and grinned. "You? Can you make an arc reactor?" Obadiah immediately stopped talking. He really could not make an arc reactor. He had only done it to deceive the mutant in front of him. He would kill him after the matter was over, and he would not even give the $100 million. Seeing that his plan was exposed, Obadiah sighed, and then said indifferently, "Young man, it is better not to be too smart." Suddenly, Obadiah immediately controlled Iron Overlord and used all his energy to attack Sumu quickly. He planned to kill the mutant who suddenly appeared directly. As for the information revealed in the video, how could humans have such powerful power? The dense ammunition and the huge steel fist came almost at the same time. Just when Tony Stark and Obadiah thought Sumu was dead, they saw a scene that shocked them. Whether it was the dense ammunition or the huge fist of Iron Overlord, they all stopped in front of Sumu and could not move forward. Then, they immediately saw that the mysterious mutant named Sumu waved his seemingly slender arm at the Iron Overlord who was much bigger than him. Boom. The terrifying black lightning broke out at the junction of the fist and the Iron Overlord. The huge Iron Overlord was hit by a mortal body, smashed through layers of walls, smashed large metal ornaments, and finally flew to the distant highway again and fell into the wall on one side of the road. Seeing this scene, Tony Stark swallowed subconsciously. The pictures in the report turned out to be not artificial intelligence synthesis, nor was it a fictitious report. The information recorded above turned out to be true, and compared with the facts, it is actually weakened. At least the content in the report did not say that the White Devil's power was so amazing that he could knock the Iron Overlord away with one punch. As the designer of steel armor, Tony can naturally judge the weight of Iron Overlord from its size. He can knock Iron Overlord away with one punch. Even the Mark III cannot do this. This is not a power that humans can possess. Looking at the seemingly slender arms of the White Devil, Tony Stark felt his ignorance for the first time. After knocking the Iron Overlord away with one punch, Sumu moved his palms and unexpectedly successfully used Black Flash in his first attack. This also proves his guess. He has more energy absorption ability than Gojo Satoru, and he has stronger control over energy. It is very likely that he will be able to release Black Flash 100% in the future. This also means that his attack will always be 2.5 times the original power. This is undoubtedly an extremely terrifying improvement. Ignoring Tony Stark, who was dazed at the side, Sumu walked slowly towards the road, passed through the gap in the wall, walked through the road opened by the Iron Overlord's body, and slowly came to the road. As he slowly approached, Iron Overlord was obviously aware of his approach, and dense ammunition and missiles were fired at him, but they were all blocked by the unlimited technique, preventing him from advancing even an inch. When he came to the side of the road, the passersby had already reacted and stopped approaching. The road was now deserted except for Sumu, who was walking slowly, and Iron Overlord, who was shooting continuously. Passersby who were not afraid of death hid in the distance and watched the battle curiously, and some even took out their mobile phones to take pictures. When they saw Sumu slowly appearing, someone immediately recognized his identity. White Devil. Why does he appear here? Is he fighting the steel giant? The steel monster was knocked away by him just now. How did he do it? Passersby immediately became noisy and asked a series of questions. Coincidentally, in a Chevrolet in the distance, the excitement on the face of a middle-aged man was almost overflowing. He immediately took out professional camera equipment and shot in the direction of Sumu. Yes, this man is none other than the future Venom, Eddie Brock. At this time, he was extremely excited and kept praising the goddess of luck in his heart. He unexpectedly encountered the White Devil again. Previous news has made him a hot topic in the global daily news. Now if the scene of the White Devil fighting can be filmed again, then he will most likely be promoted and raised and reach the peak of his life. In his camera, the White Devil slowly walked up to the steel giant, and the show finally began. Obadiah looked at the screen in front of him in shock. The system kept alerting. Alarm, alarm, the body's damage level is 36%. The body's damage level is 36%. Just that punch almost completely destroyed Iron Overlord's chest armor. How is this possible? The metal used to assemble the Iron Overlord is 10 centimeters thick titanium alloy. Such a thick titanium alloy can even withstand large yield missiles without being penetrated. But now it was almost destroyed by a punch from a human. He is really a human. Obadiah regretted it so much at this time. The global daily report turned out to be true. If he had known this, he would never have a conflict with the White Devil, even if he promised $1 billion or $2 billion. But it was too late. At this time, we could only try our best to kill the White Devil. It is absolutely impossible to possess the weird defensive ability of the White Demon. Keeping the distance and constantly using up ammunition will definitely kill him. When Obadiah was about to put his idea into action, he suddenly discovered that the White Devil in front of him had disappeared without knowing it. When the system reminded him again, he saw the White Demon appearing in front of him, staring at him with cold eyes, clenching his right hand, and the blue unknown energy escaped. It was the attack that just knocked him away. He tried his best to dodge, but the distance was too close, and the Iron Overlord was too bulky to avoid the White Devil's next attack. And if he is hit by this attack, the Iron Overlord's chest armor will be shattered immediately, and he in the cockpit will never survive. No, don't want. He watched the fist approach in despair, as if he was seeing his own death. Under his gaze with splitting eyes, the fist bursting with azure energy still came into contact with Iron Overlord, and then Iron Overlord was knocked away again. However, unlike last time, there was no black lightning burst this time, and the Iron Overlord was only knocked back a few meters before stopping. Obadiah immediately controlled the Iron Overlord to stand up and looked at the damage to the machine body. Alarm, alarm, the body's damage level is 38%. The body's damage level is 38%. The punch just caused only an additional 2% damage to the body. Obadiah immediately realized what he was talking about and burst into laughter. Haha, you can't just release the terrifying black lightning just now, right? Could it be that the initial attack has greatly consumed your physical strength, and you are no longer able to use it a second time? Knowing that the White Demon was not as powerful as he thought, the fear in Obadiah's heart disappeared instantly, and he continued to shoot at Sumu crazily. Come on, let me see how long you can hold out in this hail of bullets. On the side of the road, Tony Stark also walked over from the gap, and he also took in the whole scene. Not good. The black lightning attack can't be released continuously. In this way, as long as Obadiah keeps consuming the White Demon, he may really win. Tony immediately had a bad premonition. At this time, the energy of the arc reactor in his chest was only 2%, which could not support Mark III to continue fighting. If Obadiah won, he would have no reaction power at all and could only die in despair. Damn it. The passersby in the distance also saw the scene in front of them and saw that the White Demon only knocked the Iron Giant away with one punch, and the Iron Giant seemed to be unharmed and immediately stood up and shot wildly at the White Demon. They immediately made a guess. The White Devil's strength can still fight against humans, but it is no match for the power of technology. That's right. The Iron Giant must be the work of the military. The military attacked the White Devil, and he will be killed by the Iron Giant soon. In the crowd, a very small number of mutants who hid their identities saw this scene and couldn't help showing despair. Are mutants really no match for the government? Can mutants only suffer oppression and can't stand up? Everyone thought that the White Devil was about to lose, but then something unexpected happened. Sumu, who was watched by everyone, didn't care about other people's thoughts. He shook his palm, moved his fingers, and said with some regret, "Sure enough, the skill level is too low to be able to release Black Flash 100%, and even the probability of successfully releasing Black Flash is extremely low." However, he had expected it, so Sumu didn't pay attention. He moved his eyes away from his palms and placed them on the Iron Overlord in front of him. He picked his ears and said casually, "It's been so long. It's time to end the fight. What if Tony Stark isn't satisfied with my service?" Then Sumu stretched out his hand forward with a look of pleasure and cruelty. The technique is reversed to Tsang, maximum power. Obadiah immediately sensed something was wrong when Sumu reached out his hand and fired all the weapons in his body in an instant. The explosions produced by these weapons can even destroy an entire street, but they are absorbed by a blue black hole without any reaction. The missiles that Obadiah had high hopes for were defused so easily. No, that's impossible. Under Obadiah's disbelieving gaze, Sumu grinned and pushed the azure black hole in front of him towards him. After the missile lost its effect, Obadiah immediately ran away toward the rear. The jet device all over his body was operating at full strength, and he immediately arrived 10 meters away. Just when he was breathing a sigh of relief, he suddenly found that Iron Overlord had stopped. Even if he adjusted the power of the propulsion device to the highest level, it was still flying slowly behind him. And behind him is the terrifying azure black hole that seems to swallow everything. No, Obadiah forcibly overclocked the power of the jet device, pushing it beyond the limit. However, even if the propulsion device had exceeded the limit and even started to turn red and melt, it still could not stop him from moving towards the azure black hole, and even the speed of movement was getting faster and faster. Quick! Finally, under the complicated eyes of Tony Stark, the solemn gaze of Agent Coulson, who also arrived, and the crowds of all other civilians, the Iron Overlord, who was arrogant one moment, was horrified by the next moment. Devoured by azure black hole, the 10-centimeter thick titanium alloy was completely unable to resist the terrifying gravity. First, the feet, then the chest and abdomen, and finally the head, twisted in turn, submerged into the azure black hole, and disappeared. And the creator of everything, the person they originally disliked, just yawned and walked out of the dust raised by the explosion. The white sweater he was wearing was not even stained by dust, but his hairstyle looked a little messy. The white-haired devil once again used his terrifying sense of oppression and absolute dominance to tell the world that he is the strongest. After dealing with Iron Overlord, Sumu slowly walked towards Tony Stark, holding his palm slightly behind him. A strange luminous object emitting white light was attracted by gravity and flew into his hand. It was the energy of Iron Overlord. Source: arc reactor. When Sumu held the reactor, he immediately felt the huge energy contained in it, and his 6 eyes for precise manipulation and energy absorption were at full capacity. After replenishing the energy in the body to the upper limit of energy storage, the remaining energy is absorbed by the system and then put into the Gojo Enlightenment template. Even after the template fusion is increased to 30%, the difficulty of further improvement also increases, and the fusion is still improving in an orderly manner, not much slower than before. According to the previous rules, when the fusion degree reaches 40%, he will obtain a new skill. He is looking forward to this very much. What exactly is the new skill? Could it be that the spell reverses H? Its minimum power is twice as powerful as the maximum power of the spell reversal Aang. When Sumu came to Tony Stark's side, the system simultaneously sent a prompt. Template integration, 31%. At this time, Tony Stark was in a panic. The steel helmet had long been missing, and even a steel gauntlet had disappeared. The arc reactor kept flashing on his chest. Obviously, the energy was on the verge of being exhausted. Seeing Sumu approaching, Phil Coulson subconsciously took a step back. This is a subconscious reaction of humans facing powerful predators. What's more, Sumu is more terrifying than a powerful predator. But Tony Stark showed no signs of fear. He came to Sumu and looked at him curiously, his eyes full of curiosity. How did you just do that? Some kind of mysterious future technology. Is that strange defense some kind of space technology? Coulson on the side also looked curious, hoping to get more information about the white-haired demon. Hearing Tony Stark's question, Sumu smiled and explained. This is my ability. After hearing Sumu's answer, Tony Stark murmured to himself, are you a mutant? It's incredible. Sumu was non-committal. Except for energy absorption, all other abilities were given by the panel and had nothing to do with mutants. However, Sumu did not deny that there are many abilities against mutants in the Marvel world. If someone wants to use this ability to deal with him in the future, then he will definitely give that person a surprise. Tony Stark suddenly felt a pain in his chest, and when he saw that the arc reactor on his chest had been completely exhausted, he immediately looked at the arc reactor in Sumu's hand and said, can you return the arc reactor to me? I need him to help me attract the scattered shrapnel in my chest. Sumu naturally didn't want his favorite hero in his previous life to die like this, so he threw the arc reactor in his hand to Tony Stark. You owe me 2 arc reactors now. What? This arc reactor was originally mine, but it belongs to me now. Well, okay. Thinking that the man in front of him had saved him, it was nothing to give him 1 more arc reactor. It was definitely not that the white-haired demon was too strong. That's right, it was definitely not. Seeing this, Agent Cole then on the side silently wrote down the fact that the white-haired demon needed an arc reactor. This might be related to his ability. Then he took out his ID and said to Sumu, hello sir, I am Agent Coulson of the Strategic Homeland Defense Attack and Logistics Support Agency. I have some questions to discuss with you. Looking at the sparse hair of Agent Coulson in front of him, Coulson felt deeply offended and then retracted his gaze. Well, it seems that your usual work is very tiring. Oh yes, Coulson answered subconsciously, and then immediately realized his main purpose, so he continued. I wonder if you can join us and become an Avenger. Faced with Coulson's invitation, Sumu was not surprised. At this time, Nick Fury was preparing the Avengers Alliance plan. Seeing his strength, it was normal to want to invite him. Sumu was about to refuse, and then thought of the space gem placed in the shield base and the mind gem that would be delivered to the account soon, and immediately smiled and said, of course, I am willing to. Looking at the unremarkable and frivolous smile of the white-haired man in front of him, Coulson didn't know why, and had a sense of foreboding. Sure enough, he heard Sumu continue. However, my relationship with you is not a superior-subordinate relationship, but a cooperative relationship. You need to pay me a certain amount of remuneration, and I will help you perform tasks. Sumu reread the letter, reward, and made up her mind to go to S.H.I.E.L.D. to get the space stone when the energy absorption increased enough to carry the energy of the Infinity Stones. After all, it's payment, isn't it? Of course, it would be better if Loki happened to come to deliver the takeaway at that time. As for whether S.H.I.E.L.D. would be dissatisfied, Sumu had no such considerations at all and believed they would be happy to hand over the reward to him. They are not stupid. When Coulson heard Sumu's words, he was silent for a moment, then stretched out his hand to the transmitter next to his ear and said, this is not something I can decide. I need to ask my superiors for instructions. Sumu nodded. Coulson immediately contacted Nick Fury, and after saying something, he said to Sumu, if you are willing to join us completely, we can help you get rid of the military's wanted order. Sumu was stunned and immediately understood that this was a deal. He showed a bright smile, then approached Coulson and said slowly, Agent Coulson, or Director Nico Fury, do you think I care about the so-called wanted person? Coulson continued to communicate with Nick Fury, then took off the transmitter from his ear and turned the sound to the highest level. Then a deep voice came from the transmitter. Mr. Sumu, I admit that you are very capable, even more powerful than Magneto and Professor X, but there are too many mutants under Colonel Stryker, and many of them can erase mutants' abilities. Presumably even if you encounter this situation, there is nothing you can do. How about joining us, and we will help you negotiate with Colonel Stryker and erase your wanted status. Nick Fury was sitting in the office, with a look of confidence on his face. He told Colonel Stryker's secret weapon against mutants, and Sumu would definitely not refuse. After all, no matter how powerful he is still a mutant, and mutants without mutant abilities are just ordinary people who can be killed by any bullet. However, after he waited for a moment, he suddenly heard a laugh from the transmitter, and the sound continued to grow louder until it became an undisguised sarcasm. Ha 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 ha, Nico Fry. Do you really think I care about this? As I said just now, we are just equal partners. If you don't want to forget it. After all, even if you take it by force, you can still get the infinite gems. Cooperating with S.H.I.E.L.D. is just more convenient. Nick Fury was silent. The development of the matter was beyond his expectation. He did not expect that Sumu really didn't mind the method that could erase the mutant ability. Could it be that he has a way to deal with this method? No, it's impossible. He doesn't even know the specifics of this method. How can he have a way to deal with it? Nick Fury immediately breathed a sigh of relief and prepared to rescue Sumu when he was about to be captured by Colonel Stryker, and then let him completely join S.H.I.E.L.D. Presumably by then, he will have thought it through. So he said directly, okay, I agree. Now you and we have a cooperative relationship. If you regret it later, we will still welcome you to join, but the conditions may change at that time. Sumu naturally understood what Nick Fury meant, and then grinned and said, don't worry, Director Nico, that day won't happen. What effect do mutant abilities have on him? Moreover, how can we just negotiate with Stryker and cancel the wanted order? He's going to kill Stryker. Afterwards, Agent Coulson said goodbye to Sumu and Stark. His mission had been completed, and he had even won over the 5th level mutant white-haired demon. There was no reason to stay here at this time. After Coulson left, Tony reunited with Pepper Potts and led Sumu to the top floor of Stark Tower. He picked up 2 brand new arc reactors from the table and handed them to Sumu. This is your reward, white-haired boy. Sumu looked at Stark, but she didn't expect that Stark would give him a nickname just after they met. But he didn't mind. Instead, he found it interesting. Before he traveled through time, Stark had already died. Although he planned to return, would Stark still be the same Iron Man after his return? This has also become his regret. Seeing the living Iron Man now, it feels like fantasy has come into reality. Sumu randomly picked up a satchel from the table, placed an arc reactor in it, and then held another arc reactor with one hand to absorb energy at full power. When Tony Stark saw Sumu pick up the satchel, obviously wanting to keep it for himself, he couldn't help but complain. You're so rude. Sumu responded. After all, I saved your life, didn't I? Mr. Big Shit. Big shit. What the hell is this? Tony Stark asked immediately, but with the flick of Sumu's fingers, he felt his whole body being pulled backwards by a huge attraction, and then he found that he fell into Pepper's arms. There was already a chair in the office in the distance. Sumu didn't have any consciousness of being a guest. She lay down and said to Tony Stark, I just escaped death. What am I doing here if I don't kiss your girlfriend? Tony Stark was speechless. He looked at Pepper, who was looking at him tenderly. In this crisis, they finally understood each other's feelings. The scene in front of him made Sumu quite dissatisfied. He didn't want to eat dog food, so he used song to drive the two away and stayed alone on the top floor to absorb energy. Energy point +1. Energy point +1. Energy point +1. As the template fusion degree continues to increase, the difficulty of continuing to increase the fusion degree also increases. When it increases to 35%, the energy points required to increase 1% continue to increase, but with the continuous supply of energy from the arc reactor, after more than 10 hours, the template fusion degree finally reached 39%. At this time, Sumu suddenly took off the black eye mask in front of him and looked into the distance. After a moment, he grinned, took off the eye mask, and then threw it aside, and said to Jarvis, "Jarvis, tell Tony that I will be away for a while. When I come back, I will have something important to tell him." I guess he has also noticed that there is something wrong with his body. After saying that, he came to the French window without waiting for Jarvis to reply. With a slight force of 5 fingers, the extremely solid glass immediately shattered. Sumu opened his arms, leaned forward, and naturally fell downwards. When he was close to the ground, he used Song to absorb himself to the wall, and with a slight force, stepped on the wall to create many cracks, and then rushed towards a direction where the flames were rising into the sky. There happened to be a hard enough target there, which was very suitable for experimenting with the new skills that would be acquired next. In the laboratory of the seaside villa, Tony Stark saw through the camera that Sumu easily shattered the special bulletproof glass, and then jumped down, and couldn't help but curse in a low voice. What a monster, you know, that is a special glass that can withstand RPG rocket launchers. He only used 5 fingers to easily shatter it, and didn't even use other abilities. But what is he doing outside at this time? Jarvis, explore the direction he left to see if there is anything worth noting. Jarvis immediately hacked into a large number of surveillance cameras, and after a while, he projected part of the picture in front of Tony Stark. Seeing the picture in front of him, Tony Stark subconsciously cursed. What kind of monster is this? Is Sumu just going to find these monsters? Jarvis, assemble Mark IV. I can't miss this kind of thing. But sir, Mark IV has not been debugged yet. Jarvis was interrupted by Tony Stark before he finished speaking. No need to debug. There will be no problem with my design. New York, Northern Manhattan, Harlem. A terrifying green monster appeared at some point, rampaging through Harlem, killing all creatures in sight. This bustling urban area has now become a ruin. The dense shooting and screaming have turned this urban area into a hell on earth, filled with wailing and despair. The fully armed elite troops wandered around Harlem, shooting wildly at the terrifying monster, but neither guns nor missiles could hurt the monster at all. The elite troops were like civilians at this time, and had no power to resist the green monster. On the high-rise building nearby, Sumu sat on the edge, his legs hanging naturally, his chin resting on his hands, and watching the tragic drama in front of him with a smile. He was quietly waiting for the protagonist to appear. Boom. The sound of breaking air came from far away. Sumu did not look back, and the 6 eyes had already captured the figure of Tony Stark. Tony Stark looked at the hellish scene in front of him. His expression under the helmet was full of seriousness. What is this? Sumu responded lightly. Well, a weak mortal suddenly got the power he dreamed of, and then lost himself in a crazy revenge drama. Then what are you doing here? Tony Stark knew that the young man in front of him had the power to stop all this, but he was unmoved, just like an audience, observing everything in front of him indifferently. I heard that there was already some anger in Tony Stark's tone, but Sumu was still unmoved, just changed to a more comfortable posture, waiting for the protagonist to appear. But you, why are you here if you are not preparing for tomorrow's press conference? Tony Stark did not answer, but asked in a deep voice. Are you staying here and doing nothing, just watching that monster destroy and kill people everywhere? Otherwise, even if I don't stop it, it's not wrong, right? Tony Stark was silent. Sumu was right. He had no obligation to save others. So he stopped talking, drove the Mark IV towards the abomination, and used the energy cannon in his palm to shoot at him crazily, but it had no effect at all. Look here, green fat man. I want to give you a gift. Jarvis, charge 100%. A shining white light lit up in the center of the steel armor, and then a thick energy ray hit the abomination. Tony Stark breathed a sigh of relief. This should be able to deal with him. Suddenly, a huge building stone hit Tony Stark, and he was directly smashed out, and the chest of the steel armor was immediately severely deformed. However, the abomination, who was hit by the thick energy ray, did not suffer any damage. He glanced at the direction where Tony Stark was smashed and flew out, spinning to one side, and continued to shout loudly. Hulk, get out and face me. On the top of the tall building, Sumu attracted Tony, who was flying far away, to prevent him from being hurt again, and then teased. Tony, why are you flying back again? Tony Stark did not respond. He took off his helmet with difficulty and took a deep breath. Just now, he almost thought he saw the god of death. Only then did he understand why Sumu did not go to stop him. With such a terrifying power and such a terrifying defense, even the white-haired demon would be helpless. At this moment, a heavy sound of a heavy object falling to the ground came from a distance, and then Tony Stark saw Sumu stand up, stretched, and said, "The protagonist is here, so the villain, will also appear." After that, Sumu immediately jumped off the building and disappeared from Tony's sight. Tony was puzzled. Why did Sumu say that he was a villain? Isn't the villain that green monster? Banner jumped off the plane and smashed a deep pit in the ground. Then a huge green hand stretched out, and a green giant with green skin but a higher appearance came out. Hulk is online. Hulk tore a car in half and rushed towards the abomination as a weapon. The two fought fiercely, almost destroying the entire Harlem district. But because Banner had injected the inhibitor before, Hulk could not exert his full strength and gradually fell into a disadvantage. Just when the abomination was pressing the Hulk under him and beating him, he suddenly heard a gloating voice from the side. No, abomination, you should have hit the Hulk's eyes directly with that punch just now. Hulk, you have to attack the weak spot of the hatred, do you understand? The two men subconsciously stopped, and then saw a white-haired young man sitting on the only intact street lamp beside him, eating potato chips that he got from somewhere and pointing fingers at them. Seeing that the two men in front of him stopped fighting, Sumu said impatiently, "What are you doing? Keep fighting. You haven't finished eating the potato chips yet." Abomination looked at the white-haired man in front of him and immediately recognized that this was the white-haired demon that appeared some time ago, a level 5 mutant. However, he had just gained tremendous power and did not take the so-called white-haired demon seriously at all. No matter how strong he was, could he be stronger than him? It is estimated that he can be defeated at will just like the Iron Man just now. Abomination picked up a huge stone and threw it hard at the white-haired demon on the street lamp. The huge force acted on the stone, and the terrifying speed formed a sonic boom, which directly hit the white-haired demon. He turned his head directly, without looking at the result of the attack, and wanted to hit Hulk again. But at this moment, he suddenly heard a sigh from behind him. "Hey, bad boy, how can you hit the referee for no reason? You said so, Abomination." Then, Hate felt a terrifying force coming from his back, and black and red lightning filled all the space around him. He was blown away uncontrollably, breaking through layers of solid walls, and finally on the concrete floor. After finally stopping, he immediately felt a warm liquid flowing down his back. When he wiped it back, the skin behind him, which was harder than titanium alloy, was broken, and a lot of green blood continued to flow from a fist mark. Since he gained power, he was injured for the first time. In the distance, through the channel he knocked out, a pair of eyes emitting azure spiritual light looked at him, looking down at him, as if looking at an ant. At the same time, Sumu in the distance heard the system's prompt. Energy point, +1. Template fusion degree, 40%. You have unlocked a new skill, spell reversal He. Spell reversal He, 1/100. A repulsive force is generated with He as the center. The minimum power is twice that of Song, and the maximum output is positive infinity, similar to a small supernova. A large amount of information about the reversal of the H technique flooded out of his mind, and Sumu instantly mastered the method of using the H reversal technique. At this time, he could perfectly perform the spell to reverse H without incurring a lot of unnecessary consumption like the last time, and no more risk of being killed by your own powers. Thinking of this, the smile on Sumu's face became even more joyful. He looked at the hatred that stood up from the spot and rushed towards him, but he did not immediately use the magic to reverse H. After all, the purpose of his coming was not only to experiment with the magic reversal H, but also to practice Black Flash and enhance the success rate of Black Flash. Sumu directly released the unlimited spell and used all his strength to absorb energy and manipulate magic power to strengthen his body. Then, facing the hatred that rushed towards him, all his muscles worked together. Boom. The familiar black lightning burst out again, and the hatred that rushed towards Sumu flew backwards at a faster speed. Sumu looked at his right hand. Even with energy absorption and mantra manipulation to double strengthen his body, his physical quality at this time was still lower than Abomination. If he hadn't used the Black Flash this time, he might have been knocked away. Reversal spell experience +1. When the reversal technique is activated, the slightly broken bones and scratches on the right hand are restored at a speed visible to the naked eye. It seems that the recovery speed is faster than that of Abomination. On the top floor of the high-rise building, Tony Stark looked at the scene in front of him, watching the white-haired demon completely crushing the green-skinned monster, and swallowed again. Fake. Who is the monster? However, his expression suddenly changed, and he shouted to Sumu, "Careful!" At the same time, Sumu heard a harsh sound breaking through the air, and then felt that he was enveloped by a huge shadow. A huge fist hit Sumu's head. When Hulk was about to take action, Sumu used his 6 eyes to notice it. However, he did not panic or even pay attention. Instead, he rubbed his chin with his fingers and thought quietly. After using Black Flash, it will enter a special state that allows the user to exert 120% of their strength. So is this the zone state? After using the Black Flash last time, Sumu noticed that the effect of using the Black Flash twice in a row this time was even more profound. All the cells in the body are beating, and the mind is concentrated like never before. You can detect details that you couldn't detect in the past. Boom. Hulk's fist broke through the sound barrier, forming a sonic boom visible to the naked eye, and struck Sumu's head. However, even with such a terrifying punch, after approaching a distance of 10 centimeters around Sumu, he could no longer move forward. Hulk then swung his fist out of the afterimage and attacked Sumu continuously, but it still had no effect. Even if you just look at the surface, Hulk's power completely crushes Sumu, but for some reason, everyone watching the battle feels that Hulk is just a child, acting coquettishly towards Sumu, who is an adult. No matter how much he cries, he is still vulnerable to Sumu as an adult. If the Hulk's attack had no effect, it wasn't. The dust raised by the sonic boom attracted Sumu's attention. Only then did he come back from his thoughts and look at the Hulk behind him, who kept attacking him. With a look of extreme joy on his face, he took a step forward. Hulk was immediately bounced away and kept retreating, and his continuous offensive was interrupted. As soon as Hulk stabilized his body, Azure Eyes appeared in front of him and looked at him. Then, a hand that was extremely small for him was printed on his forehead, and along with the terrifying black lightning, he was deeply touched. Pressed deeply into the cement floor. After temporarily suppressing the Hulk, the smile on Sumu's face became even wider, and then he quickly kicked back. The terrifying black lightning erupted again. The abominable body crushed a tank and a wall before finally stopping. Without looking back, ignoring the hatred of being kicked away again, Sumu continued to hit Hulk, who was trying to get up. Boom, boom, boom. The black lightning contains huge power. Each attack can make the ground sink several meters. By the time 3 punches pass, a deep pit with a diameter of tens of meters has been formed around it. 3 consecutive Black Flash blows hit Hulk. At this time, Hulk's head was bleeding and his consciousness was blurred. If Sumu punched him again, he could directly suppress him and release Banner. But when the 4th punch fell, the terrifying black lightning had not yet appeared. This time it was an ordinary punch. Hulk originally used his arms to block Sumu's crazy attack, but he felt a little aggrieved at this time. In the previous confrontations of strength, he always won with an absolute advantage. Even when faced with the big guy who was also green just now, he was not without the slightest resistance. But who is the person who appears at this time? He looks very weak, and why does he have such amazing power? Originally, the poor Hulk baby was ready to go back and let Banner face the terrifying white-haired demon in front of him, but suddenly he found that the fist that was terrifying just now fell on him, but it did not cause any harm. Hulk reacted immediately, jumped out of the pit, and roared loudly at the white-haired demon in front of him again. Judging by intuition, the white-haired demon in front of him can no longer easily use the terrifying black lightning just now, and the Hulk's turn is coming. Hulk is full of confidence, and behind Sumu, Abomination also arrived, and he saw the whole scene. The white-haired demon's black attack just now could not be used continuously. In the news just released by the Global Times, the white-haired demon could only use black lightning once at that time. This time, it was beyond his expectation that he could use it 7 times in a row. But even if it was the white-haired demon, using black lightning 7 times in a row should be close to exhaustion. As long as he and Hulk continued to attack the white-haired demon together, they would definitely be able to penetrate the dam space defense and kill the white-haired demon. The next moment, Abomination and Hulk punched Sumu at the same time. When facing the white-haired demon, the 2 original enemies were shocked by the unparalleled sense of oppression and even joined forces for a short time. Tony Stark, who saw this scene, immediately ordered Jarvis to speed up and transfer all the steel armors over, ready to rescue Sumu at any time. Tony Stark believed that even if Sumu was extremely powerful, he was still no match for the joint attack of 2 monsters. In the distance, Nick Fury, who was watching the battle via satellite, also had a serious expression on his face. He also did not think highly of Sumu. The terrifying black lightning just now represented an astonishing consumption. Using it 7 times in a row would definitely consume a lot of Sumu's energy. Hulk and Abomination both had extremely strong recovery abilities and almost endless physical strength. The damage Sumu had caused to them before was also healing rapidly. In this way, as long as they continued to attack Sumu and consume his physical strength, they would eventually be able to break Sumu's defense. Damn, how can Sumu be saved? Nick Fury did not want to lose an important member of the future Avengers, but he desperately discovered that he had no means to save Sumu in this situation. Could it be that the white-haired devil was really going to perish? But the one who was most worried about the death of the white-haired demon was not Tony Stark or Nick Fury, but Eddie Brock, who was hiding in another tall building and using a camera to shoot downwards. He saw the white-haired demon in crisis. If his strength did not allow it, he would even want to jump down and save the white-haired demon. Damn it. How could the white-haired demon fall like this? All of Eddie Brock's current achievements are based on the white-haired demon. If the white-haired demon falls from the altar and falls like this, then his reports will also lose their corresponding value, and promotion and salary increase may no longer exist, and even his current status will be lost. No, white-haired demon, come on, you are the strongest. So the future Venom, Mr. Eddie Brock, became the #1 fan of the white-haired demon. In the center of the battlefield, Hulk and Abomination punched Sumu at the same time. The aftermath of the continuous punching alone broke the cement floor of a large area around. But in the center of the battle, Sumu, who was worried by everyone, did not feel the slightest bit of tension. He rubbed his chin with his fingers again and looked up at the sky. 7 consecutive black flashes should also break the record of consecutive black flashes in the Jujutsu Kaisen world. Then he stretched his body and looked to both sides. Looking at the 2 hideous green skins, he smiled brightly. It's time to end. Hearing Sumu's words, the hatred laughed loudly. Yes, it's time to end. When I break your shell, I will definitely break all your bones one by one. Really? Sumu smiled kindly at the hatred. That's good. Then the hatred saw the white-haired demon in front of him stretched out his index finger and stretched it towards him. He immediately had a bad premonition, and the content of the first report slowly emerged in his mind. When he thought of the terrifying black and red singularity attack, the hatred immediately wanted to escape and avoid this attack. Judging from previous reports, this black and red singularity needs to be charged and stabilized for a period of time before it can be successfully released. In this way, with his speed, he can definitely avoid the terrifying singularity attack. However, under his extremely horrified gaze, the terrifying black-red singularity formed in the blink of an eye, quietly staying at the fingertips of the white-haired demon, ready to go. Why is it so fast? He was extremely angry and puzzled. The mantra in the body was transformed into positive mantra after the reversal of the spell, and then circulated regularly in the body, and finally gathered at the fingertips to form a black-red singularity. After the template fusion degree reached 40% and the spell reversal was obtained, the black-red singularity that was previously extremely difficult to use was now easy to use. The smile on Sumu's face gradually became cold, and then he said lightly, "Spell reversal The black-red singularity exploded and infinitely repelled the outside world. At this time, the spell reversal had no extra energy consumption, and all of it was integrated into the repulsive force that could be infinitely improved. Boom. The abomination tried his best to dodge, but still could not escape the lock of the 6 eyes. The terrifying black-red singularity fell on his chest. Facing the black-red singularity comparable to a small supernova, he had no power to resist and flew straight back. Wherever the abomination passed, it was like a hurricane passing through, destroying all the intercepting objects with a devastating force, turning everything into dust. In the distance, a mark armor just flew over and was in the middle of the abomination's flight. When the two collided, the armor made of titanium alloy immediately fell apart and split apart in the blink of an eye. Until the end, it fell on a wall again. The abomination's extremely hard body could no longer support it, and was broken out of the chest by the terrifying black and red singularity, and green blood was madly spilled. The black and red singularity that broke through the abomination's hard body still carried amazing power, constantly destroying everything in front of it, until it left a huge gully several kilometers long, leaving a deep scar for the prosperous New York. Hulk looked at everything in front of him dully, looking at the powerful enemy who fell to the ground several kilometers away, groaning constantly, and was almost dying. The opponent who just suppressed him, just lost like this? Then Hulk saw the terrifying white-haired demon, turned around and smiled at him, and stretched out his slender, seemingly harmless index finger towards him, just like he had just stretched it towards Abomination. No, Hulk tasted the fear of being dominated for the first time. He roared in despair, and then his body immediately shrank. The green color of his skin gradually faded, and finally turned into a middle-aged man in a coma. Sumu looked at this scene and snorted. Boring. Then he took out the high-tech mobile phone that Tony helped him buy, walked towards the Abomination in the distance, and called Nick Fury. Nico Fury, do you want to collect mutant monsters? Well, they are quite strong, and should be worth studying. Through satellite monitoring, Nick Fury saw the entire battle. He saw that the Abomination, who was unscathed in the face of gunfire and artillery rain, and the fully armed modern troops, was defeated by the white-haired demon with one blow, and was almost dying. Seeing the Hulk, who made the military helpless, was scared back by the white-haired demon's brilliant smile. I saw the white-haired demon who was nonchalant about what he had just done. Is this a level 5 mutant? Or is it just a white-haired demon? He subconsciously took the call, and then heard Sumu's words. After Sumu repeated it several times, until he was slightly impatient, he came back to his senses from the shock, and immediately said, Take it. How much do you want? $100 million each. I think they are worth this money. Deal. On the high-rise building, Tony Stark stared at the mark armor that was destroyed by the Abomination, dumbfounded. As the support of Iron Man, he invested too much effort in the mark armor, but it was destroyed so easily? Is the gap between him and Sumu really that big? He looked towards the center of the battle area, and saw that in the middle of the huge gully several kilometers long, the young man was dragging the body of the monster that made him helpless, walking leisurely, and in the direction he was walking, another equally terrifying huge monster had degenerated into the appearance of a middle-aged human man and fell into a deep sleep. And the white-haired young man seemed to notice his gaze, looked at him through the long distance, and smiled brightly. On top of another tall building, about 2,000 meters away from Sumu, Eddie Brock used his newly purchased camera to completely capture the scene that just happened. Thinking of the white-haired demon who just defeated 2 terrifying green monsters with a crushing attitude, he was extremely excited. This is the attitude that the white-haired demon should have. Sure enough, the white-haired demon is the most powerful. At the same time, Sumu, who has maintained the unlimited technique for a long time, heard the prompt from the system. Unlimited technique experience +1. Congratulations, unlimited technique upgrade. No lower limit spell LV2, 1/300 interfering with atomic level matter, dominating space. Objects that are closer to the user will become slower and slower, and will never be able to touch the user. A large amount of information continued to pour into his mind, and Sumu's proficiency in unlimited spells increased rapidly. If the maximum range of the original no lower limit spell is about 5 centimeters from the body surface, the LV2 no lower limit spell doubles this distance. At this time, the maximum range of action is 10 centimeters from the body surface. Moreover, because the unlimited technique is the foundation of the technique reverse song and the technique reverse haku, the power of these two techniques has also been strengthened to a certain extent. Not only is the release speed faster, but the power is also fully improved. If you use the technique to reverse the he attack at this time, it will definitely pierce his chest and abdomen directly, instead of knocking him thousands of meters away before piercing his chest and abdomen. After negotiating the price of Abomination and Hulk with Nick Fury, Sumu waited there. During the half hour he waited, all armed members did not dare to approach and only dared to monitor from a distance. Even General Ross, who was fearless. From the process of capturing Hulk, he has understood the gap between himself and Hulk. At this time, facing Sumu, who was even more powerful than Hulk, even if he had no brains, he would not waste his troops in vain. The mutants hiding around were extremely excited and stared at the white-haired figure in the center of the ruins of the battlefield. That was their god, the god of mutants. For how long? Mutants have been oppressed and subjected to various horrific experiments in secret. Now they finally stand up. Just standing there, hundreds of heavily armed troops did not dare to move forward at all, and they did not even dare to launch missiles, because they know that these attacks are completely ineffective and can only anger the white devil and kill them all. Shield speed was very fast, and not long after, a Quinjet flew in from a distance. The leader of several agents was an old acquaintance, Agent Coulson. Behind him stood a man holding a bow and arrow. Judging from his appearance, he should be Eagle-Eye. At this time, Eagle-Eye looked curiously at the white-haired man in front of him, then looked around, and finally stopped at a huge ravine that was thousands of meters long. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he would never have imagined that the seemingly thin white-haired man in front of him actually contained such terrifying and huge energy. Sumu ignored Hawkeye and said directly to Coulson, That's Hulk and Abomination over there. Take over. Remember to use adamantium or vibranium to imprison them, otherwise it will be almost impossible to imprison them. Cole then couldn't help but smile bitterly as he watched Sumu talk eloquently, as if he was selling Hulk and Abomination as 2 ordinary commodities. The white devil is so scary. His appearance has undoubtedly destroyed the balance between mutants and ordinary humans. If we only think from the inside of the Earth, then he and the Nick Bureau will definitely not want an overly powerful mutant like Sumu to exist. But if we judge from the entire universe, then Sumu's existence is essential. After all, they know that there are more glorious civilizations in the universe, and the Earth is just a remote corner of the universe and may be destroyed at any time. After Sumu finished speaking, he said to Coulson, Agent Coulson, remember to deposit $200 million into my account, and I'll leave first. Then, without waiting for Coulson to answer, the Azure spell covered Su-Mu's body, and with a sudden force on his feet, he jumped to a tall building nearby, and then used his strength on the wall of the tall building to disappear in an instant. Su-Mu is not worried that S.H.I.E.L.D. will default on the money he owes him. These agents are smart people, and Nick Fury, the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., is even smarter. They will not make such a stupid choice. Seeing Su-Mu go away, Coulson pressed the headset in his ear and reported his work to Nick Fury. After a moment, he looked at Hawkeye beside him. Agent Patton, what do you think of him? Hawkeye was still staring at the direction Su-Mu left. The wall where Su-Mu relied on strength was full of dense and ferocious cracks. Hearing Coulson's question, he was silent for a moment, and then said, "It's hard to imagine that this is a power that humans can have. His power is so terrifying that it makes me feel unreal. I don't understand what the effect of my decades of hard training is. If I fought against him, I would probably be killed instantly, without the ability to resist at all. My attack method mainly relies on special arrows, and the speed of the White Devil is even beyond my eyesight, and it is extremely difficult for the arrows to hit him. Even if it can hit, the terrifying defense." Hawkeye paused here, but Coulson understood what Agent Barton wanted to say. That terrifying defense has no solution at all. Only attacks from space can break through. With today's technology, apart from mutants who also have mutant abilities, how can they launch space attacks? Coulson patted Agent Patton on the shoulder and comforted. "Agent Patton, you are already very strong. After all, there is only one White Devil in the world. Yes, there is only one White Devil." Arriving at the top of the high-rise building, Tony was already waiting here. When he saw Su-Mu return, he curiously circled Su-Mu several times, and lasers shot out from his steel eyes to scan him continuously. "How did you do it? Face those two monsters, and still win easily? Are you really human?" Tony Stark finally couldn't help but ask this question. Su-Mu smiled and said to Tony Stark, "Tony, the world is big and exciting. Even if I am not the strongest now, there are many people on Earth who are stronger than me. Dark Phoenix, Supreme Sorcerer, etc. You need to have a long-term vision." "Really?" Tony Stark questioned, but when he saw the smile on Su-Mu's face, his expression gradually became serious. He finally realized that this world is not as simple as he imagined. Even Su-Mu is not the strongest, so what kind of power do other strong people have? Dark Phoenix, Supreme Sorcerer. What are the identities of these strong people, and how powerful are they? Wait, mage? Are you saying that there are mages on Earth, the kind of extraordinary people who can cast spells? Of course, Tony Stark was shocked again, and then thought of what Su-Mu had just said. "You said that you are not their opponent now, so will you win in the future?" "Yes." Same words as Gojo Satoru. Same confidence as Gojo Satoru, but Su-Mu with the system is destined to have a different ending from Gojo Satoru. Su-Mu, don't want to be cut in half. At the same time, Coulson, who was transporting Dr. Banner and Hate back to the space carrier, heard a new order from Nick Fury through the headset. A strange crater appeared in New Mexico, and a hammer was placed in the center of the crater. It can't be picked up anyway. "Agent Coulson, you are responsible for exploring the hammer. After this mission, you will definitely be given a vacation." Corvin stroked his increasingly sparse hair, hung up the call, and sighed. "Hey, Director Nick, you have said this many times. Two major events have happened recently. The first major event is that the Iron Armor incident has been unveiled some time ago. The truth follows Tony Stark's words, 'I am Iron Man. I'm Iron Man,' and that's the end. From then on, the world entered the superhero era. This is an epic-making event, but another event is no less important than this one, and is even slightly more important. This big event is still about the white-haired demon, that terrifying level 5 mutant." Reporter Eddie Brock, a suddenly rising star in journalism, wrote this in his latest report. "An unprecedented terrorist attack occurred in Harlem some time ago. Two terrifying green-skinned monsters wreaked havoc in Harlem, ignoring the attacks of heavily armed troops and killing civilians crazily. At this critical moment, the white-haired demon stood up and easily defeated two terrifying green-skinned monsters using the terrifying black-red singularity. But the white-haired devil is not a kind person. He deserves the title of devil. The black-red singularity attack he released instantly defeated a green-skinned monster, destroyed a large number of buildings, killed hundreds of civilians, destroyed the ground in the aftermath of the attack, and finally formed a huge ravine thousands of meters long. He is far more harmful than the two green-skinned monsters combined. Moreover, according to the analysis of the video footage I took before, the strength of the white-haired devil is steadily and rapidly improving. When he used the black-red singularity for the first time, it was obvious that the black-red singularity was not stable, and according to subsequent analysis by experts, he was probably severely exhausted at that time, and then he let go of the army that surrounded him. But now he releases the black-red singularity again, and the release speed is significantly improved. The black-red singularity is also obviously more stable than before, and the attack power is far more powerful than the first time. As you know, level 5 mutants are mutants with unlimited potential, and the existence of the white-haired demon shows us the terrifying potential of level 5 mutants. I can't help but boldly guess that the white-haired devil's strength at this time is still far from reaching his limit. As time goes by, he will become stronger and stronger, and in the end he will even be able to ignore nuclear bombs. I again ask the military and the government, how are you going to deal with the white-haired devil? Taxpayers' money cannot support incompetent waste. Please ask the military and government to come up with a reasonable response plan. In the hidden base, Magneto put down the newspaper in his hand, with a heartfelt smile on his face. Mystique on the side saw this, and was very curious about it. Ever since he formulated the plan to destroy mankind and suffered repeated setbacks in subsequent actions, Eric hadn't smiled from the bottom of his heart for who knows how long. So she looked at the newspaper on the table, and she must have found a reason. After roughly reading the newspaper, she could not control the look of shock on her face. Even though he is a 5th level mutant, the white-haired demon is growing too fast. Magneto on the side saw the shock on Mystique's face, straightened the psychic helmet on his head, smiled, and said to Mystique, "Rowan, it seems that without our guidance, the new power is still moving forward on the right path, and our power is getting stronger." At the same time, in a hidden laboratory at Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters, Professor X put down the newspaper and raised his eyebrows gently. After a while, he said to the Phoenix girl beside him, "Jean, we have to try to contact him. He is gradually falling into darkness. If he is ignored, his power will definitely cause irreparable damage." Jean nodded in agreement. But what Professor X didn't see was that there was a touch of red in her eyes that could not go away for a long time. In a mansion in Los Angeles, the two protagonists who have attracted the attention of the world are sitting on the balcony and sunbathing. Each of them is served by a beautiful woman. If any fans come here, they will definitely see that these two beauties are two of the most popular Hollywood actresses recently. But the two usual protagonists were reduced to supporting roles at this time, without even a single line. "By the way, Su-Mu, before you go to Harlem, don't you have something important to tell me? So what is this thing about?" Tony Stark suddenly asked Su-Mu. Su-Mu was wearing big flower pants, drinking expensive red wine, and enjoying the service of the blonde. When he heard Tony Stark's question, he remembered, then stretched, and said, "Is there something wrong with your health now?" Tony Stark's expression froze, and he immediately forced a smile and said, "No way, my health is fine." Su-Mu smiled mysteriously and said to Tony Stark without refuting, "As long as you provide an unlimited supply of arc reactor when I need it, I will solve your body problems." Tony Stark was stunned. "Is it that simple?" Seeing Su-Mu nod, he immediately said, "Okay, I agree." Su-Mu swallowed the cherry placed by the blonde's mouth and moaned softly. "Your current dilemma is probably palladium metal poisoning, so you keep drinking chlorophyll to relieve the symptoms of poisoning. If you continue to use the arc reactor made of palladium metal, you will definitely die in the near future." The two slim blondes subconsciously stopped serving and looked at Tony Stark in shock. The world's richest man, the playboy Tony Stark, was about to die. Seeing Tony subconsciously put the chlorophyll in his hand on the table and covering his chest to hide it, Su-Mu immediately laughed and said, "Don't be nervous. The new elements are hidden in your home, in the architectural sandbox your father left for you. Search carefully, and you will definitely find it with your wisdom. Goodbye. Next time we meet, I will give you another piece of news while picking up the arc reactor. Of course, it's also important." Then, under the shocked gazes of Tony Stark and the two blondes, Sumu disappeared from the spot in the blink of an eye, without a trace. Tony was stunned for a moment, then smiled helplessly and said, "This guy has become stronger again." At the same time, a burst of footsteps came from outside the door. Under Tony Stark's displeased gaze, Nick Fury walked in, with several agents in black behind him carrying a silver box. A moment later, under the shocked gaze of Nick Fury, Tony Stark lay on the sun lounger and sneered, "Are you talking about a new element? I found it." High in the distance, Sumu stood out of thin air, with blood oozing from the corners of his mouth. The injuries in his body recovered quickly under the action of the reversal technique. He said helplessly, "Even with the LV3 spell reversal song, can I use teleport continuously? Even with level 3 energy absorption, you will still be injured if you continue to withstand the pressure caused by teleportation. It seems that we have to wait until the magic reversal song is raised to LV4, or the energy absorption is raised to LV4, before we can use the magic reversal blue to teleport infinitely." Just yesterday, by minimizing energy output and constantly practicing the technique of reversing song, the technique of reversing song was finally raised to LV3. Congratulations, the spell reversal song has been upgraded. Spell reversal song LV3 1/1000 create powerful suction. Change the distance between multiple objects to negative infinity and create a small black hole. At the moment of upgrading, Sumu's mind came up with the advanced method of using the spelled song. Through strong gravity, the distance between the starting point and the end point is compressed, achieving an effect similar to teleportation. So, just now, he took one step and was dozens of kilometers away in an instant. After the injuries in his body were completely healed, Sumu flew towards New York. For him at this moment, this distance was nothing. 2 arc reactors floated around Sumu under the effect of the unlimited spell. The huge energy released from them constantly helped him replenish his energy. There was even enough energy for the system to absorb and improve the template fusion degree. His main purpose of going to New York at this time was to kill Kingpin, the underground king who had caused him a lot of trouble at the beginning of his journey. The main reason for not looking for Kingpin at first was that he could not confirm his actions. Now that Six Eyes is about to be upgraded to level 3, and he has obtained teleportation and his mobility is extremely fast, he can explore the entire Hell's Kitchen in a short time. Kingpin has nowhere to hide in front of him. On the way to New York, Sumu kept urging Six Eyes with all his strength to observe the surrounding scenery, and Six Eyes' experience value was constantly increasing. Six Eyes experience +1. Six Eyes experience +1. Six Eyes experience +1. After arriving above New York, accompanied by the continuous prompts of the system, Six Eyes was upgraded to level 3. Six Eyes experience +1. Congratulations, your Six Eyes skill has been upgraded. Six Eyes LV3 1/1000 with a 360-degree long distance perspective, you can see the flow of energy. The amazing dynamic vision allows the holder to perform delicate energy operations, maximize the energy, and reduce unnecessary energy loss. A warm current flows out of the mind and then pours into the eyes. The already amazing visual range is rapidly improved, from the initial 500 meters to 2,000 meters, which is 4 times higher than when it was LV2. Within a range of 2,000 meters, everything is clearly visible. Even the perspective ability is greatly enhanced, and you can pass through several hard walls and see the specific scenery behind them. In addition, after upgrading to LV3, the Six Eyes has a new effect, reducing unnecessary energy consumption. In this way, Sumu's already long-lasting fighting time has been greatly improved again. After consuming all the information in his mind, Sumu grinned, took another step, and came to the sky above Hell's Kitchen. The game of hide-and-seek is about to begin. In a hidden military base, the satellite radar suddenly sounded an alarm. In the office of the Supreme Commander, a well-trained soldier reported in a panic. Report to the general. The satellite radar detected an unknown flying object flying towards New York at a high speed, with a maximum speed of Mach 5. What? The general was shocked. You know, the current maximum speed of a flying fighter is only about Mach 3. How could the speed of this unknown flying object reach Mach 5? Call up the satellite monitoring and lock the unknown flying object. I want to see what it is. As Tony Stark announced that he was Iron Man, more and more strange events have occurred recently, and all kinds of strange masked people are everywhere. Even if an unknown flying object with a speed of Mach 5 appears, the general will be too surprised. The soldier immediately controlled the satellite, focused the camera, and aimed it at the unknown flying object over Hell's Kitchen. When the scene on the screen was completely clear, they stared at everything in front of them in a daze. Even the general who had encountered countless emergencies in his life was stunned by the scene in front of him. A white-haired figure stood above Hell's Kitchen, his hands in his pockets, looking down at everything in front of him. This figure was very familiar to everyone present, because since the 3 reports were published, the military and the government have been under great pressure. In the past few days, all senior military officials have been studying the intelligence about the White Devil, trying to find his weaknesses. However, after several days of sleepless research, all senior military officials desperately discovered that the White Devil had no weaknesses at all. Extraordinary physique, energy absorption, azure black holes, black and red singularities, terrifying space defense. This is an absolutely perfect mutant. In the end, many senior officials who worked hard to study finally found that the White Devil seemed to have no ability to resist mental attacks, and immediately sent messengers to negotiate with Professor X, trying to use the students in Xavier's School for Gifted Youth to force him to kill Sumu. However, they later heard Professor X say, "The consciousness of the White Demon is like a chaos. I can't detect it at all, so naturally I can't attack it." Everyone didn't believe it until another mutant with psychic abilities who had defected to the military and had contacted the White Demon said the same thing. Only then did they completely believe that even Professor X couldn't do anything to the consciousness of the White Demon. This fact made the entire military at a loss. If even mental attacks can be perfectly resisted, then the White Demon has no weaknesses? How can there be such a perfect mutant? Because of this incident, the senior military officials held an emergency meeting the day before yesterday. In the meeting, Colonel Stryker emphasized the danger of the White Demon and talked about his growing ability and the possibility of ignoring nuclear bombs in the future. If it really comes to that time, facing the White Demon like a god, the government and the military will no longer have any power to resist, and the White Demon will establish a new government. It is precisely because of this sentence that the military and government officials are determined to use large-yield nuclear weapons to kill the White Demon and strangle the crisis in the cradle. But what is the situation now? Why did the speed of the White Devil suddenly increase so much? Now it is close to the maximum speed of Mach 5, which is faster than the fastest fighter jet. How could it be hit by a nuclear weapon? What should we do now? Isn't the careful layout of the military leaders a joke? At this moment, they suddenly saw that the White Devil in the picture suddenly looked up, as if he saw the surveillance satellite in outer space through a distance of tens of thousands of meters, and smiled grimly. They subconsciously stepped back several steps, and the general almost stumbled, because the White Devil in front of them seemed to be looking at them through the camera, and his appearance was right in front of them. The next moment, the White Devil ignored them, took another step, and disappeared from the spot. The general's forehead was covered with countless cold sweat, and he kept muttering to himself, "No, no, the plan cannot be terminated. We must invest a larger nuclear bomb and launch a devastating attack on the White Devil, even if it destroys a city." In just a few days, the White Devil has become so terrifying. How far can it grow? Is it really necessary to make him a god on Earth? Above Hell's Kitchen, Sumu looked up at the sky. He felt that he was being spied on. This was the instinctive intuition given to him by the Six Eyes that were promoted to level 3. But Sumu didn't care. It should be that the military discovered his whereabouts and used surveillance satellites to monitor him. He smiled kindly at the direction of the peeping that he intuitively sensed, and then took a step forward and disappeared from the spot. Jin Bing is still waiting for him. Teleportation is an advanced means of reversing the spell Song. Its basic principle is to use strong gravity to move instantaneously, but its essence is not a space jump, but the illusion of a space jump caused by extremely fast speed. During the action, Sumu's body will move quickly until it reaches the marked endpoint. It is precisely because of this that the powerful acceleration will injure him, who uses both mantra manipulation and energy absorption to strengthen his body. If an ordinary person moved in the same way, he would probably be crushed into a pulp immediately by the huge pressure. At this time, Sumu was standing 500 meters above the ground. There was no object at this height. At the same time, he could use his 6 eyes to clearly see the scene on the ground, even in the basement. So Sumu chose to teleport here to search Gene Bin's location. The control technique reversed the repulsive force of he, and he made a running start in the air. Sumu grinned, and the azure power of the spell enveloped him. His body disappeared from the place in an instant, and appeared thousands of meters away. He drove away and disappeared again 30 seconds later. Inside Hell's kitchen, in a dark alley, Spider-Woman solved a robbery incident, and then flew out of the alley on a spider silk to continue looking for traces of crime. Suddenly, when she was being pulled by the spider thread and swinging upward, she suddenly noticed something from the corner of her eye. White hair, standing in the air, and vaguely visible blue pupils. White-haired devil. Why is he in Hell's kitchen? Just when Gwen was about to go to confirm whether this was the white-haired devil, she suddenly discovered that the white-haired devil standing high in the sky had suddenly disappeared. Gwen immediately used the spider thread to reach the top of the tallest building nearby, looking for traces of the white-haired devil. With Spider-Woman's eyesight, she immediately spotted the white-haired demon that flashed every 30 seconds. Has he awakened a new ability? Gwen realized something immediately and couldn't help but sit in shock. She was shocked and deeply envious at the same time. After becoming Spider-Woman, Gwen was very happy. She gained extraordinary abilities that ordinary people did not have. But just after she became Spider-Woman, she met the white-haired demon. The white-haired demon was not very strong at first, but it became stronger at an unimaginable speed in the following time, and she was still the original step forward. The most important thing is that her abilities are simple and violent, and except for the spider sense, she is not cool at all. And the white-haired demon's abilities, the azure black hole, and the black-red singularity, are much more powerful than hers in terms of power and performance. This made Gwen very frustrated, and she became curious about the white-haired demon, the first person to know Spider-Woman's true appearance. Why is he so strong? What is he doing at this time? Use teleport continuously, with an interval of 30 seconds each time. This time is enough for him to recover from the injuries caused by the teleport, and to fully explore the surrounding environment without missing anything. As time passed, Sumu searched most areas of Hell's kitchen. Having gained nothing, he gradually developed a bad feeling. Could it be that the Kingpin wasn't in Hell's kitchen? But after teleporting again, a few seconds later, a bright smile appeared on Sumu's face, and then he took another step forward and arrived in front of a luxurious private club. This private club store is extremely luxurious and is built in the best area of Hell's kitchen. This area is located on the edge of Hell's kitchen. Compared with deeper locations, the streets are cleaner and the security is better, so that rich people who cherish their lives dare to come here and have fun. The door of the club is spacious and grand, and all the people coming in and out are gentlemen in leather and leather shoes, which is incompatible with Sumu, who wears spacious casual clothes. When Sumu wanted to get closer, 2 security guards in suits at the gate came forward and stretched out their hands to signal Sumu to stop. Sir, this store is a high-end private club. You need to present an invitation letter and formal attire to enter. After finishing speaking, the security guard approached Sumu and whispered in front of him. Yellow skin monkey, get back here. This is not where you should be. Sumu stopped and clearly caught the undisguised sarcasm in the security guard's eyes. He couldn't help but be a little curious. His photo had been in the most prominent places in major newspapers and news for a long time. Could it be that the security guard in front of him didn't recognize him and instead dared to mock him? However, he had no intention of explaining. Instead, he smiled brightly at the security guard who offended him and then said slowly, "Please let me know. I'm looking for Kingpin." The security guard was stunned and finally couldn't help laughing. Haha, who do you think you are? Dye your hair white and then wear matching sunglasses. Do you really think you are a white-haired demon? Another security guard also mocked. It seems we have to give this guy some color and make him sober up. A woman in gorgeous clothes who was just about to enter the club had her arm around an old man who was at least 70 years old. When she saw this scene, she laughed at Sumu. Husband, look, this yellow-skinned monkey actually wants to enter a private club. Doesn't he know that only a big shot like you can enter? Hey, throw him out quickly. Don't taint our eyes. The old man on the side looked at Sumu with disgust, and then said sternly to the 2 security guards, "Get rid of him quickly." The 2 security guards who were angry with Sumu immediately lowered their heads and said in a low voice, "Don't worry, guest, we will deal with him right now." Sumu looked at this scene and smiled slightly. Under the gaze of 6 eyes, Gene was locked by him. There was no possibility of escape, so he had the leisure to play with the few people in front of him at this time. Seeing several security guards punching him and hitting his face, Sumu remained unmoved and watched the funny scene in front of him with a smile. Suddenly, the whole place fell silent. When the fists of the 2 security guards landed 10 centimeters in front of the white-haired man, they immediately stopped and could not move forward, as if they were blocked by an invisible barrier. The faces of the 2 security guards who punched Sumu turned pale to the naked eye. The gorgeous woman and old man on the side also realized what the scene in front of them represented. He is really a white-haired devil, and not just an imitator. The gorgeous girl screamed in fear. Thinking of the offense she had just committed against the white-haired demon, she quickly ran away, leaving the trembling old man beside her. The old man who was left on the spot lost his legs and lay on the ground. The turbid liquid slowly flowed out from his crotch, giving off a smell. He saw the white-haired demon in front of him stretched out his palm towards the fleeing woman, and then shook it slightly. The woman who had fled dozens of meters was crushed to the ground by the huge gravity. With the crackling sound of bones and the piercing wail of pain, she was slowly eased. Slowly press it into a meat paste. Sumu retracted her hand, smiled kindly at the 2 security guards who were stunned in front of her, and repeated, "I'm looking for Kingpin." Then I saw 2 security guards running towards the hall immediately and yelled, "I will inform you right now. Please wait for a moment." Just when they were about to walk through the door and thought they had escaped, they suddenly heard the devil's whisper from behind them. "Forget it. I'd better go by myself." A terrifying repulsive force came from behind, and the 2 security guards were immediately knocked away by the huge force. They were like 2 cannonballs smashing into the private club, hitting several unlucky people, splashing scarlet blood mist, and died. Then Sumu walked into the clinic door and suddenly poked her head out from behind the door. "I'm sorry, I almost forgot about you." The aristocratic old man outside the door had no time to stop the smile on his face that had survived the disaster, and was twisted into twists by the terrifying gravity. Bloodstains flowed from his body and continued to spread. After doing the last thing, Sumu finally walked into the club and smiled brightly at the many gun-wielding gang members waiting in front. "Hello, I'm looking for Kingpin." Seeing the white-haired devil breaking into the club, many gang members with guns hesitated to shoot, as if it was not them who were armed at this time, but the young man with a bright smile in front of him. They naturally knew the terror of the white-haired devil, whether it was from the 3 news articles that shocked the world before, or from the 2 security guards who had just flown into the club at high speed and killed several unlucky people, and now only the broken bodies of the 2 security guards were left. Show the power of the white-haired devil with absolute facts. Seeing no response from the many gang members in front of him, Sumu sighed and lowered his head slightly. His face was covered by the shadow of the light, and he could only see the corners of his mouth gradually showing a cold smile. "Then I'll find him myself." Hearing this, one of the gang members could no longer bear the pressure, pressed the trigger, and started shooting wildly. Others heard the sudden piercing sound of gunfire and were so stimulated in their tense state that they subconsciously shot at Sumu as well. Countless ammunition flew towards Sumu like a curtain of rain, but stopped within 10 centimeters of him, unable to get any closer to him. After this strange phenomenon appeared, a gang member immediately recognized this as the white-haired devil's signature ability. No lower limit technique. No, the white-haired demon cannot be defeated at all. I don't want to die. He could no longer face the white-haired devil. Faced with the fear of death, he dropped his rifle and tried to escape. Since the first gang member threw his gun and ran away, other gang members immediately followed. They knew to some extent the terror of the white-haired devil from the news, and naturally knew that in the eyes of the white-haired devil, they were no different from ants. Regardless of the quantity, it can be easily crushed to death. Seeing the many gang members fleeing in all directions, Sumu grinned. A huge repulsive force suddenly erupted from around his body, and the yellow bullets floating around returned faster than when they came. Countless bullets exceeded the speed of sound, hitting each body with a harsh sound of breaking through the air. In just an instant, most of the gang members were killed by random bullets, while the remaining gang members lay on the bright, glowing floor and kept howling. Sumu couldn't hear these screams, so she held her hand forward slightly. The technique reverses song. A blue black hole emerged out of thin air, attracting everything nearby. The black hole created by Song at level 3 was once again enlarged several times compared to the one at level 2. At this time, the size of the black hole seemed to have grown from the size of a basketball to the size of 1 meter, and the attraction it exuded was also several times stronger than before, sucking in all the surrounding gang members who were dead or incapacitated. The screams all around stopped immediately. Sumu also couldn't bear to see the tragic scene full of blood in front of him, so a 1-meter-sized blue black hole quickly rotated around him, attracting everything nearby. The luxurious club that originally stood there disappeared in an instant, and was replaced by a huge circular pit. On the luminous floor that was still intact in the center of the circular pit, the white-haired demon straightened his back, put his right hand in his pocket, and held his smooth white hair with his left hand, and moved it upward, revealing his exquisite blue eyes. But at this time, those eyes were full of coldness, and the customers who had luckily escaped in the distance could not stop trembling all over. They heard the white-haired devil in the ruins say with satisfaction, "It's still so comfortable. Sure enough, I'm still too kind and don't want to see the tragedy in the world." Surviving customers. "Do you want to listen to what you were saying?" Sumu continued to move forward. According to the detection of 6 eyes, Jin Bing had already escaped for some distance, but it was not difficult to catch up with his current speed. Taking one step forward, the figure disappeared from the spot and walked through hundreds of meters of ruins to the street. He used the magic technique to reverse H to create a repulsive force equal to gravity and walked in the void in the sky. Every step he took appeared dozens of meters away. After a moment, he saw a speeding armored car in the distance. The 6 eyes emitted a bright aura, which could be seen clearly even in the dazzling sunlight. Then he stretched out his palm to make a pistol gesture, pointed his index finger in the direction of the armored car, and whispered softly with a flash of black and red singularities. Thumping. Kingpin was sitting behind an armored car. Even an armored car made of special materials that could withstand rocket attacks could not give him any sense of security. Facing an opponent who was like a god, if it weren't for his iron will that had been tempered for many years, he might have collapsed by now. But he is not immortal after all. Even if he knows it is almost impossible to escape, he will definitely try. Moreover, they are not absolutely powerless to resist. Jinbin looked behind him with deep eyes. "I just hope that the device that I spent billions of dollars on can work, otherwise." The armored car speeds up, with 2 rows of propellers extending from the rear of the car, driving forward at a faster speed. Just when Sumu was about to deal with Jinbin directly, he suddenly heard the harsh sound of electricity coming from his ears, and then found that the energy in his body suddenly lost control and became chaotic, and he fell from a height of tens of meters. What happened? However, on the way down, with the exquisite control of the 6 eyes, he immediately regained control of the energy in his body. When he was about to stand in the void again, he suddenly found 2 figures rushing towards him from 2 different directions. "Ha ha, white-haired devil, you are just an ordinary person after losing your mutant abilities. I, the Prowler, won the achievement of killing the white-haired demon." On the other side, a beautiful shadow flew over with spider silk and shouted loudly, "Careful." Seeing this scene, Sumu immediately realized what had happened, and then showed a smile full of evil. He did not continue to use repulsion to stand in the air, but allowed his body to fall naturally. And at the same time, he discovered that the armored car in the distance stopped at the same time, and looked at its appearance and wanted to return. Then give them a surprise. After Spider-Woman saw the white-haired demon, she quickly rushed in his direction. Just when she was about to get close, she suddenly found the Prowler in a black tights, and suddenly pressed a button behind the white-haired demon. The sound of electric current immediately resounded throughout the surrounding area. The body of the white-haired demon who looked like a god in the sky suddenly stopped, and the black-red singularity that was about to be launched also disappeared and fell rapidly downwards. It was obvious that the harsh sound of electricity just did something to the white-haired demon to cause this situation. Then she discovered that the Prowler used sharp claws to rush towards the white-haired demon, who had no resistance at this time, and his tone was full of cruelty. So she sped up and stepped forward, kicking the Prowler away when he was about to kill the white-haired demon. Then she held Sumu in her arms while panting violently. Only then did she relax and say, "Fortunately, I almost missed it." At the same time, Sumu, who felt the 2 softballs, also breathed a sigh of relief in her heart. Fortunately, the fun almost ended. When carefully placed Sumu on the ground and asked with concern, "What happened to you? Why did you suddenly fall from the sky?" Sumu showed off her exquisite acting skills, controlling her body with the exquisite control of her 6 eyes, and her expression and body details were flawless. No, why did my mutant powers suddenly disappear?" The wanderer in the distance laughed loudly when he heard Sumu's helpless words. "Ha ha, you didn't expect that we purchased a mutant suppression device secretly developed by the military. At this time, your mutant abilities will be suppressed for at least an hour. In this hour, you are no different from ordinary people. 1 bullet can kill you, and I, the Prowler, am the one who kills the demon." As soon as he finished speaking, the Prowler turned into an afterimage and rushed towards Sumu at high speed, but was stopped by Gwen. Seeing Spider-Woman blocking him, Prowler said with a cold expression, "It's you, Spider-Woman, again. This time I'll kill you and the white-haired demon at the same time." The next moment, the 2 of them were fighting together. There was no winner for a short period of time, but it was only temporary. Several figures in the distance were rushing towards the place at high speed. They should also be Jinbin's men. Sumu saw several familiar figures among them. The supervillain Tombstone has invulnerability and the ability to heat up his body. The supervillain Scorpion, who wears high-tech armor like the Prowler, and the female Dr. Octopus who wields 4 high-tech mechanical tentacles behind her. Gwen also saw the 3 supervillains coming. She kicked the Prowler away, used spider silk to wrap him around a street lamp, then hugged Sumu and fled away from him while swinging the spider silk. "How long do you have to recover?" Spider-Woman tried to get rid of the supervillain behind her, but she needed to avoid the shooting of a large number of gang members who suddenly appeared, so she could not keep the distance, but got closer and closer. Hearing Gwen's words, Sumu smiled nonchalantly. "I don't know. It will probably take a while, but it may be restored in the next moment." Hearing Sumu's unreasonable words, Gwen was so angry that she had the idea of leaving the white-haired demon behind. However, thinking that the white-haired demon had saved her, the kind-hearted Gwen still did not do so. She said angrily, "Can you be serious? If they catch up, you will be dead." Sumu was a little innocent. "What I said is true. The mutant suppression device can only suppress Sumu's abilities as a mutant. Except for energy absorption, other abilities have not disappeared and can still be used. And the energy absorption is also recovering at an extremely fast speed, and it can be fully recovered in about 5 minutes, far less than the hour the Prowler said." So what he and Gwen said was not wrong. He can use his abilities at any time. Doesn't this mean that he can recover at any time? Of course, the kind-hearted Gwen didn't know that she was being teased by the hateful white-haired man. At this time, she had no extra energy to communicate with Sumu because all the villains were chasing her. Laugh. The Prowler broke free from the shackles of the spider silk with the help of his companions. At this time, he, who was the fastest, caught up and used a flying knife to cut off Spider-Woman's spider silk so that Sumu fell to the ground and were killed, surrounded by many supervillains. Seeing so many supervillains, Gwen suddenly felt a lot of pressure, but she was still optimistic. Oh, the situation is very bad. I don't know what to do. Sumu, who was held in Gwen's arms, cheered. Believe in yourself. You can do it. If it doesn't work, I still have everything. Before Gwen could say anything, Prowler mocked. White-haired devil, it's hard for you to protect yourself when you lose your mutant ability, and you still want to protect others. You can't protect anything. Scorpion, who was wrapped in exoskeleton armor, looked at Sumu with a mocking look on his face. Is he the white-haired devil? Nothing more than that. Little spider, white-haired boy, it's time to die? Several mechanical limbs of Scorpion's lower body stretched out at the same time, and then rushed towards Sumu. The tail needle behind him raised up and stabbed Gwen suddenly, trying to kill her and Sumu together. Just as Gwen escaped the attack of the Scorpion's tail needle, she was hit by Dr. Octopus's mechanical tentacles and was knocked away. Sumu, who she had been hugging, was also knocked away and separated from her. Sumu used the physical strength of an ordinary person to land smoothly, then immediately stood up and looked at the distant sky. In the sight of Liu Yan, a helicopter had been hovering 10 kilometers away from here. At that distance, even with LV-36I vision, he could only see blurry shadows. If Sumu hadn't intuitively told him that he was being monitored by a distant aircraft at this time, he might not have been able to detect it at all. Sumu gradually became impatient. The helicopter had been staying there for a long time, and there was a high probability that it would not come closer. Gwen, who was attacked by several supervillains from a distance, was at an absolute disadvantage and was unable to take care of Sumu. The Prowler came to Sumu and smiled ferociously at him. The arrogant white-haired devil is going to die here. I think today will be the fourth news that shocks the world. Seeing that Sumu didn't even take him seriously at this moment, but looked far away, this feeling of being ignored made the Prowler extremely angry. How arrogant, but it's better this way. Your screams will make me more happy later. The Wanderer rushed towards Sumu, but before he could get close, Gwen appeared again and stood in front of Sumu. Maybe you don't have a chance to kill him. Looking at the injuries on Gwen's body, the Wanderer showed a cruel smile. No, you will all die here. A purple light flashed under the Wanderer's feet, and his already amazing speed increased again, rushing towards Sumu and the others. Gwen wanted to pull Sumu to dodge, but the previous injuries suddenly flared up, and her body froze for a moment. In this moment of delay, the Wanderer appeared in front of her and stabbed her abdomen with his sharp claws. Go to hell. The claws were too close to Gwen, and even with Spider-Woman's agility, it was impossible to dodge. Gwen could only watch the claws approach, about to pierce her abdomen, and then kill her and the white-haired demon together. But at this moment, Gwen suddenly felt her eyes blurred, and she found a tall figure blocking her, and then she heard an impatient magnetic voice from the front. It seems that it will not get closer. It's boring, wasting my time. Then Gwen saw the white-haired man who suddenly appeared and stretched his hand forward, and the body of the Wanderer immediately stopped in front of him. The white-haired man gently waved his arms, and a strong repulsive force burst out. Everything in front of him, including the body of the Wanderer, was blown away by the huge force. Gwen stared blankly at the Wanderer who was crushed into meat paste by the huge force, and looked at the fan-shaped ruins dozens of meters long in front of him. She swallowed unconsciously, and finally heard the man in front of her muttering, TSK, are Kingpin and the helicopter starting to escape? This won't do. It seems that we have to speed up to deal with these people. The Scorpion, the female Dr. Octopus, and the Tombstone in the distance were stunned, wondering what was going on. Wasn't the white-haired devil's mutant ability temporarily suppressed? Why did he recover in less than an hour? Among them was a Tombstone with invulnerability, and his whole body couldn't stop trembling. He looked at the huge fan-shaped ruins in front of him, at the body of the Prowler that had no human form in it, and at his right arm that disappeared just because of the aftermath of the attack. After realizing it, he immediately screamed in pain, and a large amount of blood spurted out from his broken arm. His previously indestructible body could not give him any sense of security. He instinctively wanted to escape from here, but after taking a step, he found that one of his legs had also disappeared. The next moment, his body lost balance and fell to the ground. The female Dr. Octopus and Scorpion who were farther away did not suffer much damage, but were scratched by scattered stone fragments. But they seemed to be seriously injured and did not dare to move at all. They stared blankly at the scene in front of them, looking at the Tombstone whose body was crippled only by the aftermath of the attack. As supervillains who work for Kingpin together, even if their relationship is not friendly, they still recognize Tombstone's strength. His invulnerable body and the superpower of high temperature on the body allow him to exert extremely strong fighting ability. Even they can't do anything to him. However, how could it become such a tragic situation after just being hit by the aftermath? What about your superpower? What about that indestructible body that makes you proud? As smart people, they immediately understood the current situation. Facing the white-haired demon with mutant abilities, they were no match at all. Escape. Run away quickly. It's too late if you don't escape. However, just when the female Dr. Octopus and Scorpion turned around, they stopped again and did not dare to move at all. Gwen looked at the scene in front of her. Even though she had seen it in the Global Daily Report, after being there, she could feel the majesty of this power even more. Is this the true strength of the white-haired devil? What exactly has he experienced during this time? And why has he grown so quickly? Just when she wanted to ask the white-haired devil a question, she suddenly found that the white-haired devil came in front of him, put his hand on her head, and the magnetic voice came from him at the same time. Thank you, little spider. Leave the rest to me. As soon as she finished speaking, Gwen saw the white-haired demon step forward, disappear from the place, and instantly appeared in front of the female Dr. Octopus and Scorpion, who were trying to escape, showing them a bright smile. You too. You haven't returned the gift yet. Don't leave in a hurry. Before he finished speaking, Sumu stretched out his palm towards Scorpion, and powerful attraction radiated from his palm, attracting Scorpion. The Scorpion looked desperate, then showed determination, using its sharp joints and sharp tail needles to attack the white-haired demon at the same time. Even if he is destined to die, he will make the white-haired devil pay the price. Now that the white-haired demon has just recovered, he may not be able to perfectly control his mutant abilities. This is his chance, and his tail needle and arthropods are highly poisonous. As long as he hits the white-haired demon, there may be a glimmer of hope. However, he only felt a blue stream of light flashing past his eyes, and then he discovered that the white-haired demon was holding a huge tail needle and stabbing towards his head rapidly. Looking at the body again, the tail needle and 6 thick jointed limbs at the tail disappeared from the armor, appearing scattered around, piercing into the surrounding ground. The largest tail needle among them appeared in the hands of the white-haired demon, and the needle with a cold light was aimed at his head. Just as he was about to say something, his head was penetrated, and a large amount of blood spurted out, floating in the air. 10 centimeters in front of Sumu stood still. After dealing with the Scorpion, Sumu looked at the female Dr. Octopus and found that while he was dealing with the Scorpion, she had arrived several hundred meters away. This distance is extremely difficult even for a sniper rifle to hit, but for him with 6 eyes, it couldn't be easier. A coin was thrown out by him, and then floated in front of his index finger. Black and red lightning burst out from the fingertips, giving the coin an initial speed several times the speed of sound. Before the coin melted due to air friction, it instantly hit the female Dr. Octopus on the back. The coin with powerful kinetic energy enveloped her with a sonic boom, cutting her body off at the waist. After continuing to fly for hundreds of meters, she completely melted in the air. Then Sumu took another step forward and appeared in front of the Tombstone crawling on the ground. When the tombstone looked up tremblingly, he saw a shadow falling from the sky, and his consciousness immediately turned into nothingness. After crushing the head on the tombstone, Sumu turned around and smiled brightly at Gwen, stepped out and appeared dozens of meters in the air, and walked toward the armored car in the distance in the void. On top of the armored car, Jinbin sat there with a gloomy expression. The mutant suppression device that cost billions of dollars to purchase can only suppress the white-haired demon for a few minutes. Is the white-haired demon too powerful? Or was he deceived? Damn. Suddenly, he saw a young man with white hair appearing in the armored car in front, smiling brightly at him. It's the white-haired devil. The next moment, the expensive armored car hit the white-haired demon that suddenly appeared and stopped immediately. Under the pressure of the huge kinetic energy, the front half of the car quickly shriveled up. The driver only had time to scream before he was crushed and a large amount of blood spattered on Kingpin's face. Then he heard a sharp sound of metal tearing. Crack. The white-haired man used his hands to tear the entire armored train in half, and his body was exposed to the devil. Jinbing immediately picked up his pistol and shot at the white-haired devil, but the bullet and the driver's blood splattered all stayed in front of the white-haired devil and could not move forward. Seeing this scene, he calmed down completely and said in a low voice, "I was wrong about what happened before. I am willing to use all my assets in exchange for my life." But the white-haired devil did not respond and still slowly approached. Every footstep seemed to step on Jinbing's heart, causing his heart to stop. Jinbing was obviously more anxious and immediately continued, "If I die, all those assets will be frozen, and you can't get them at all. That's tens of billions of dollars in assets." But the footsteps didn't stop until they came to him. Then he saw a white palm stopped in front of him. Before he wanted to say anything else, a terrifying pressure came from it, directly plunging him into eternal darkness. A large amount of unknown flesh and blood floated around Sumu's body, and then was pushed around by the huge repulsive force, dyeing a large area nearby red. Sumu grinned. "If you have the obelisk, infinity gems, frost box, eternal spear, eternal flame, or eye of Agamotto, I can torture you and let you live longer. But no matter how much money a mortal has, it is useless to me." Then he took another step forward, disappeared on the spot, and flew towards the helicopter in the distance at high speed. On a helicopter in the distance, several scientific researchers wearing white research uniforms continued to record the precious data they had just observed. These data are important weapons against the white-haired devil in the future, so they must not be lost. The leading researcher dialed the communication, and the communication was immediately connected. An impatient, hoarse voice came from the other side. "How about it?" The researcher's tone revealed excitement that could not be concealed. "Colonel Stryker, it worked. The mutant suppression device is also effective against the white-haired demon, although it can only suppress him for a few minutes. As long as it is improved, this time will be greatly increased. At that time, as long as the mutant suppression device is used on the white-haired devil, he will become an ordinary mortal for a long time." Okay. Upon hearing the news, Stryker was overjoyed, and even a stiff smile appeared on his face that had not changed for thousands of years. It seems that the nuclear bomb plan does not need to be implemented. To deal with a mere white-haired devil, the mutant suppression device is enough. Transfer all the data and start developing a device to suppress the white-haired devil from now on. Yes. At this moment, Stryker suddenly heard a loud noise coming from the other side. What happened? Then he heard the researcher's trembling voice. Quick, turn on the mutant suppression device and give us time to escape. Colonel Stryker, the white-haired devil is coming after him. What? Upon hearing the news, Stryker looked stunned and couldn't believe what he heard. The white-haired devil can actually spot a helicopter 10 kilometers away. What does this mean? This means that the white-haired devil's perception is more terrifying than he imagined, and he can observe things at least 10 kilometers away. This also means that the nuclear bomb plan has almost completely failed, because at the speed of the white-haired devil, as long as a nuclear bomb is discovered 10 kilometers away, it can be easily avoided. Nuclear bombs will no longer threaten him. Damn it, when did the white-haired demon awaken his senses again? Is there no limit to his abilities? Don't worry, just send the data over. You have a mutant suppression device. It's not difficult to escape. Stryker comforted the researchers and wanted them to quickly send information about the white-haired demon. His main purpose is still for those data. After the data is obtained, these researchers lose their value. But what he said was what he was thinking. Researchers with mutant suppression devices can easily escape as long as they can temporarily suppress the white-haired demon's mutant abilities. However, a desperate shout came from the headset. He stopped 5 kilometers away. At such a long distance, today's version of the mutant suppression device cannot affect him at all. No, he's attacking us. That weird black-red singularity. Oh, after a scream, the communication was immediately cut off. Stryker was silent. It seemed that the white-haired demon had discovered the existence of the mutant suppression device, and then used black and red magic points to kill the researchers from a distance. This also means that the white-haired demon will be prepared for the suppression device in the future. But this also means another thing. That is, the white-haired demon is still affected by the suppression device. As long as his ability is successfully suppressed, the white-haired demon will no longer be a threat. Looking at the transmission completed letters on the screen in front of him, Stryker showed a ferocious smile. Continuously using the magic technique to teleport Song, he approached the helicopter at high speed. Not long after, the helicopter appeared in Sumu's field of vision again. He did not get close to the helicopter because he guessed that there should also be a mutant suppression device on the helicopter. Although after his ability was suppressed, he with 6 eyes remembered the energy flow in his body when he was suppressed, and could remanipulate the energy in his body at the moment when his mutant ability was suppressed and get rid of the suppression. But he still did not intend to approach the helicopter. Create a weakness for yourself, and then wait for the enemy to take advantage of this weakness to attack you. The enemy's reaction will be very pleasant. Sumu stopped in the air. At this time, this position was still about 5 kilometers away from the helicopter. It was also the farthest range of the suppression device that he could observe using his 6 eyes. Stretching out his palm, he put his index and middle fingers together and pointed at the helicopter. The magic power started to work, and a black and red singularity quickly formed in front of him. As the finger was slightly raised, the terrifying black-red singularity flew out at high speed, forming a black-red ray visible to the naked eye in the air. The technique reverses H. Terrifying black-red rays pierced the sky, leaving a strange-colored meteor trail in the sky, followed by a loud noise that broke the sound barrier and enveloped the entire New York. Almost everyone looked towards the sky at the same time, and they saw a gorgeous black meteor carrying death, flying straight towards a poor and helpless helicopter. Boom. Under the gaze of everyone who could see this scene, the helicopter was instantly shattered by the terrifying black meteor and turned into an inconspicuous fire. And the black meteor continued to fly forward, piercing the air, splitting the clouds, and sinking into the countryside outside the city, splashing huge amounts of dust. Finally, the dust slowly dispersed, leaving a huge circular depression. It's the white-haired devil. It's the white-haired devil. People immediately recognized the strongest mutant who had dominated the news recently, and the whole city fell into chaos. The white-haired demon can actually fly. Is there really no limit for a level 5 mutant? His strength seems to have become stronger again. Where's the government? Where's the military? Didn't they say they have formulated a perfect plan to deal with the white-haired demon? In an empty warehouse in New York, you can see the black meteor and the white-haired demon standing in the air. North Star stared at the scene in front of her blankly, and immediately recalled the scene when she met the white-haired demon before. The extremely cold eyes released an unparalleled sense of oppression. Even though her ability was already powerful among mutants, she still had no power to resist the white-haired demon. In particular, his ruthless words made her remember deeply, and let her know from that time that if she wanted to make mutants rise, she could not rely on others, but only on herself. At this moment, the companions around Polaris exclaimed, "Look, that's the mutant ability of the white-haired demon. Wow, so cool. Is this the strongest mutant at present?" We must also work hard to help the great white-haired demon in the future battle with humans. Under his leadership, mutants will eventually gain freedom. Polaris hesitated, not knowing whether to tell the cruel facts to the companions around him, in front of the white-haired demon, even if they're all mutants and the same kind, but they're just ants like ordinary humans. That man, he stood in the sky, looking down on everything. At the same time, Sumu, who was standing in the void high in the sky, heard the system prompt. Spell reversal, he experienced +1. Congratulations, your skill spell reversal, he has been upgraded. Spell reversal, he, LV2, 1/300. The repulsive force is generated with he as the center. The minimum power is twice that of Song, and the maximum output is positive infinity, which is similar to a small supernova. A large amount of information poured into Sumu's mind, and his experience in using the reversal technique, he, increased rapidly. Sumu once again used the spell to reverse he, and a black-red singularity formed above the index finger. The size grew from the size of a mung bean to the size of a table tennis ball, and the repulsive force it emitted also increased several times. Looking at the black-red singularity on his fingertips, Sumu couldn't help but miss the Hulk and hate him before. Of all the fights he's been through, they have the best feel. That solid feeling of endurance is something he can never forget. Wait a minute, I overheard the conversation between Coulson and Nico Fury. A strange crater appeared in New Mexico, and a hammer that no one can pick up is located in the center of the crater. Doesn't this mean that the hammer god has been exiled by Odin and has come to Earth at this time? Presumably the hammer god who has regained his power should be more resistant to being fucked, while the destroyer armor controlled by Loki is even more resistant. They will be good targets. The corner of Sumu's mouth curved into a subtle arc. New fun is here. Find Spider-Woman again. She is no longer where she was, but on a tall building. Although Spider-Woman didn't help him, he would never be in danger, but he was still very grateful to Spider-Woman Sumu for helping him. Without her help, the fact that he was immune to the mutant suppression device would have been impossible to hide, which would undoubtedly have taken a lot of the fun out of him. Thank you for your help. I will give you a gift next time we meet to express my gratitude. Gwen's curiosity was aroused by Sumu's words. She was curious about what the gift of the powerful white-haired demon would be. Then she heard the charming Mr. Devil smile mysteriously. Keep looking forward to it. I believe you will really like it. Gwen wanted to say something more, but then she saw the white-haired devil step out and disappear in front of her, disappearing without a trace. It wasn't until the white-haired devil disappeared from her front that she remembered that she had just forgotten to ask the white-haired devil why he became stronger so fast. Then we'll wait until the next time we meet. I'm really looking forward to it. Gwen hummed a song, jumped down from the tall building, and left in the same way while hanging on spider silk. Sumu was not in a hurry to go to New Mexico immediately, but came to a high-end restaurant to taste the food. At level 3, he can't use energy to replace food, but he should be able to do it at level 4. However, even if he can use energy to maintain life functions, he will not refuse to eat. Eating is undoubtedly a great enjoyment. With Sumu's current appetite, it would cost tens of thousands of dollars to eat in a high-end restaurant. However, this money was just a drop in the bucket to him now, and he didn't take it seriously. As his strength gradually becomes stronger, it becomes easier and easier for him to obtain money. After walking out of the restaurant, Sumu was about to head to New Mexico to find the hammer god for fun, when he suddenly found several familiar figures in front of him. There is a slight difference in the appearance of these people compared with those in the movie. If their features were not obvious and they were gathered together, Sumu might not be able to recognize them. Yes, the people standing in front of Sumu and blocking his path were none other than members of the X-Men. Among them was Professor X, a kindly old man in a wheelchair who had extremely strong telepathic abilities. Behind him, helping him push the wheelchair was Cyclops wearing special sunglasses, and beside him were the red-haired Phoenix and the white-haired Storm. X-Men, what do you want from me? Sumu asked in confusion. Apart from having the same enemy, Stryker, he had no interaction with the X-Men. Professor, he couldn't sense the consciousness of the young man in front of him at all, just like an ant standing on an elephant and unable to see the elephant, because it is an endless land to it. The moment he saw the white-haired demon, Professor X understood that the young man in front of him was a more terrifying existence than Sheen. Even when facing Sheen, he could sense the existence of Sheen's spirit, but when facing the white-haired demon, his ability completely failed. Upon hearing Sumu's question, Professor X showed a kind expression and then said slowly, "Child, I would like to invite you to join Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters. The children in this school are mutants just like you. If you join the school, you will never be alone again. And you are now in a very dangerous situation. The government and the military have formulated a plan against you. Even if your mutant ability is very strong, you are still no match for them. Join us, and the X-Men will negotiate with the government and the military to help you cancel your wanted order." The three Cyclops people around looked at Sumu confidently. They were all sure that if the white-haired demon was not a fool, he would definitely agree to join Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters. First, they are all mutants. They know what it feels like to be disgusted by others around you after becoming a mutant, and they know the loneliness of being abandoned by the whole world. Mutants crave their own kind. Second, the white-haired demon was wanted by the government and the military. Although he was very powerful, he was definitely not an opponent in the face of the full pursuit of the military and the government and the attacks of a large number of mutants of different types. When facing the pursuit team sent by Stryker before, the white-haired demon was almost killed. He must have understood this matter. As long as the white-haired demon is brought to Xavier's School for Gifted Youth, the professor will educate him and change his current violent character. By then, the X-Men will have a very powerful fighting force. Cyclops and others are looking forward to that day. However, the response of the white-haired demon shattered their self-righteous fantasy and made them realize that they had never understood the white-haired demon. Sorry, I don't feel lonely, and I'm not interested in joining Xavier's School for Gifted Youth. Cyclops looked at the white-haired demon in disbelief. He didn't expect him to say such a thing. This was completely incomprehensible to him, who was called a monster by his classmates after awakening his mutant ability. If you don't stay with mutants, won't you be called a monster by others? Won't you be hated by others? And what about the arrest from the military? Even you can't face the attack of so many mutants whose specific abilities are unknown. Then he saw the corner of the white-haired demon's mouth gradually raised an arc, and this arc became bigger and bigger until it became unbridled. Hurrah! They insult me, kill. They chase me, kill. They condemn me, still kill. I believe that as the death toll increases, they will gradually realize their mistakes, change their minds, and finally draw such a conclusion the white-haired demon is an upright and kind legal citizen. You. Cyclops looked at Sumu in shock. He didn't expect the white devil to say such a thing. You are such a devil. Phoenix Girl and Storm Girl were equally shocked as they looked at the white demon in front of them, the unbridled smile on his face, and the cold blue eyes, and unknowingly, goosebumps had already spread all over their bodies. This time, they finally understood what the professor said. If the white devil is left alone, it will eventually cause irreparable consequences. Even though he knew that the white devil had gradually fallen to the wrong path, Professor, we cannot let him go on. Otherwise he will be a walking natural disaster in the near future. Thinking of what is very likely to happen in the future, Professor X suddenly looked serious and said in a deep voice, Sumu, you have entered the wrong path and cannot continue to fall. You have the power to overturn the world. This power should be used on the right path, not just killing. Killing cannot solve the problem. It will only make it more complicated and more anxious, leading to an even more irreversible situation. Cyclops, Storm, and Phoenix all nodded deeply. They very much recognized Professor X's ideas. Peace that can only be maintained by violence is unstable. Only by using peaceful means to make mutants and ordinary people live in peace can such peace last. They have been fighting for this concept, constantly stopping the evil plans of the Brotherhood of Mutants, and establishing the X-Men to fight crime and change ordinary people's stereotypes of mutants. Of course, saving the white devil from the wrong path is also included, and it has even become the most important goal of the X-Men in the near future. After hearing Professor X's words, Sumu looked thoughtful. Yes, you are right. Peace maintained by violence cannot last long. After hearing Sumu's words, the expressions of Professor. Now that I heard the professor's advice, I immediately woke up. But, suddenly, the white demon in front of him once again showed his familiar ferocious smile, which gave Professor X and the others a bad premonition. Is there another possibility? That is not violent enough or brutal enough. That means strength is far from enough. As long as I am strong enough, just by existing, I can subdue all dissatisfied voices. As long as I stand there, no one dares to say a word no. Then that will be enough. Then there will be true peace. Professor. Among them, the one Sumu paid the most attention to was the Phoenix Girl. There was a flash of scarlet in her eyes. However, the Black Phoenix was still sealed by Professor X, and the Phoenix Girl at this time was far from Sumu's opponent. When the ordinary people around saw this scene, they immediately screamed and fled away. In a short time, only Sumu and the X-Men who were confronting him were left on the street. Facing 2 level 5 mutants, a level 4 mutant, and an accompanying level 3 little Karami, Sumu smiled slightly and took a step forward. His blue pupils flashed with aura, and huge repulsive force emanated from him, spreading to the surroundings at extremely high speeds, destroying everything around him. Terrifying dense cracks spread from Sumu's feet, covering dozens of meters around the area. Only a small area in front where the X-Men were located survived. Storm Girl immediately created strong winds and cooperated with Phoenix Girl's telekinesis to resist the huge repulsive force. However, facing such a powerful repulsive force, she could only keep retreating. Seeing this scene, Cyclops immediately took off his special glasses, and 2 thick laser rays shot out from his pupils, rushing straight towards the arrogant white demon in front. However, the laser beam, which can easily cut steel, suddenly slowed down when it was 10 centimeters away from the white devil, and could only spread towards the white devil at an extremely slow speed. Sumu curiously looked at the laser that was slowly spreading towards her. Sure enough, the unlimited spell could not completely resist the laser attack, at least not the LV2 unlimited spell. However, as the level increases, the unlimited spells will surely be able to easily withstand laser attacks, poison attacks, and even space attacks. But at this time, the laser attack still needs to be dealt with. Under the shocked gaze of Cyclops, Sumu used a palm to cover the path of the laser. After the laser beam spread with difficulty and hit the flesh and blood body, it was unable to penetrate the flesh and blood body. Instead, it moved at a speed visible to the naked eye. Dim it down. What? Cyclops looked at everything in front of him in shock, and even suspected that there was something wrong with his mutant ability. Why can he block my laser with his flesh and blood? The knowledgeable Professor X immediately discovered the problem and, no, he is not forcibly blocking your laser, but absorbing the energy contained in your laser. What? After hearing Professor X's explanation, Phoenix Girl and Storm Girl were even more shocked. Professor, doesn't the white devil's energy-absorbing mutant ability only absorb a small part of the energy? Why can even Scott's laser be absorbed at this time? Professor X, who was questioned by them, looked extremely serious. Now there was only one explanation. The mutant ability of the white devil can become stronger over time, and he will also gain new mutant abilities over time, and his tendency to become stronger seems to have no limit, and the speed is getting faster and faster. Hearing Professor X's analysis, Phoenix Girl and the other 2 couldn't believe it, but if this explanation was given, everything about the white devil could be effectively explained. Looking at Sumu, the tough X-Men actually showed a hint of fear. Is there really such a terrifying mutant ability? Even a level 5 mutant can't do this. At this time, their thoughts gradually unified. That is, no matter how expensive the price is, they must stop the white devil and pull him into the right path. Because they finally discovered that when the white devil is completely out of control, the result will not only be a huge disaster, but it is very likely to be the destruction of the world. In a red sea of consciousness, a figure with red hair and red eyes observed the outside world through the eyes of the Phoenix Girl. She stared blankly at the white-haired figure in front of her and listened to Professor X's shocking analysis. The Black Phoenix looked at the white devil in disbelief. Under Professor X's constant persuasion, she also had the idea of whether she was too extreme, and she also hated her own overly powerful power. But at this moment, she just wanted to say, what am I? That guy is the real devil. He is too extreme. The power of the spell strengthens the body. The energy absorption absorbs the energy in the laser beam, and the reversal of the spell repairs the constantly damaged palm. With a series of strengthening, Sumu can use only his flesh and blood to resist the laser beam that can easily penetrate steel. The system prompts kept coming to his ears. Energy point +1. Energy absorption experience +1. Unlimited spell experience +1. Compared to reaching LV3, it is more difficult to gain experience with energy absorption, and the experience of the unlimited spell of level 2 is only LV2. It is rapidly increasing and has reached the edge of upgrading in a short time. Sumu used his palm to resist the laser, and then took another step forward. The terrifying pressure suddenly surged, and the powerful repulsive force from the reversal of the spell he spread to hundreds of meters around, and a large number of buildings along the way were crushed and collapsed by the powerful repulsive force. Everything disappeared with the devil's step. Faced with the sudden surge of repulsive force, even Storm and Phoenix could not resist this huge repulsive force together. The X-Men were immediately knocked out. Even with Phoenix's telekinesis as a buffer, they were still scratched by the scattered stones. Snap! The sound of shoes landing on the ground was still ringing, and the terrifying white-haired demon still did not stop. Even if the defense was rearranged immediately, the huge pressure around them immediately reached the critical point that Phoenix and Storm could hardly resist. Faced with such a huge pressure, it seemed that the defense they had worked hard to arrange would be destroyed by the terrifying repulsion in the next moment, and they would be crushed into powder under the irresistible force. The fallen Cyclops immediately struggled to get up, endured the pain from all over his body, and used all his strength to release laser beams from his eyes, attacking the white-haired demon in front of him. The Storm Girl on the side did the same. She flew in the air with the help of wind power, constantly summoning powerful thunder to strike the white-haired demon. However, facing an attack more powerful than just now, the white-haired demon, who would have used his hands to block the laser, stopped resisting and grinned at them. Because just now, Sumu heard the system's prompt. Unlimited spell experience +1. Congratulations, unlimited spell upgraded. Unlimited spell LV3, 1/1000 interfere with atomic level matter, dominate space. The closer the object is to the user, the slower it will be, and it will never touch the user. The dazzling thunder and the scorching laser beam suddenly stopped when they were about to hit Sumu. The scorching laser that was able to move forward slowly just now could no longer move forward, but was expelled at a faster speed. At the moment when the unlimited spell was upgraded, a large amount of information poured into Sumu's mind, and the range of the unlimited spell expanded rapidly, from the original 10 centimeters outside the body, to 20 centimeters, 30 centimeters, until it stopped when it was 50 centimeters outside the body. Compared to LV2, the range of the unlimited spell was directly increased by 5 times, and the laser attack that could not be completely resisted before could also be easily resisted. At this time, the X-Men could no longer threaten him in the slightest. Seeing this scene, Cyclops said in disbelief, "What just happened? Why did my laser suddenly stop working?" Just now, his laser could still threaten the white-haired demon, but a few seconds later, it could no longer threaten him at all. Professor X on the side answered his doubts for him. The white-haired demon's defense ability suddenly improved qualitatively, and he has completely ignored your laser attack. Sure enough, my guess was right. His strength is constantly improving with the passage of time. Thinking of this, Professor X immediately realized that they were far from being the opponent of the white-haired demon. If they wanted to bring the white-haired demon back on track, they had to make longer-term plans. So he immediately said, "Child, stop. We have no ill will towards you." But the white-haired demon's footsteps continued, with no intention of stopping at all. Facing huge pressure, the Phoenix Girl, who was mainly maintaining defense, was trembling all over, and the wounds of all sizes on her body were bleeding, as if she would no longer be able to resist the attack in front of her in the next moment. And the red color in her pupils, like the fire, became more and more obvious, as if it would burst at any time. Seeing this, Professor X became even more anxious. If Jean lost control at this time, then her battle with the white-haired demon might destroy the whole New York. While comforting Jean, Professor X anxiously said to the white-haired demon in front of him again, "Child, we have no ill intentions. If it makes you unhappy, we will leave immediately." But the white-haired demon's footsteps continued. At this time, even Storm and Cyclops discovered the problem of Phoenix. They looked at the white-haired demon who was constantly oppressing, and saw that the professor was almost unable to suppress Jean, and suddenly showed despair. "I don't know who will win between Jean and the white-haired demon, but they are dead, and the whole New York will no longer exist. I didn't expect that just wanting to win over the white-haired demon to join Xavier's school for gifted youth would cause such a huge disaster." At this time, all of them regretted it, but the disaster was about to happen and could not be stopped at all. They didn't think that with the white-haired demon's previous unscrupulous style of behavior, he would suddenly stop and let them go. However, when they looked desperate, waiting for the Phoenix Girl to completely lose control and fight with the white-haired demon, they suddenly discovered that at the moment when the Phoenix Girl was completely on the verge of her limit, the white-haired demon actually stopped. The terrifying pressure disappeared instantly, and the white-haired demon stopped attacking at some point and was looking at them coldly. The fear of death enveloped them deeply, making them unable to breathe. Days passed like years in a depressing atmosphere, and there was silence all around. This silence lasted for several minutes. Suddenly, the X-Men saw the white-haired demon in action and immediately went on full alert to prevent a terrorist attack that might come at any time. However, the scene in front of them shocked them. They saw the white-haired demon who had just looked like he wanted to kill them, took one step and disappeared from the place without a trace. The terrifying crisis was suddenly lifted, which left him a little confused. After all, the white-haired demon had just wanted to kill them, but now he suddenly wanted to consider their invitation. Storm said unconfidently, "Could it be that he was really influenced by the professor? Professor, it is indeed possible, but the chance is too small. I prefer the second possibility, that the white-haired demon has some kind of crisis-sensing ability, or even the ability to predict the future. He used this power to predict Jean's loss of control, and then left." After hearing the professor's words, except for Phoenix Girl who fell into a coma due to excessive use of her powers, Storm Girl and Cyclops carefully recalled the details just now, and suddenly found that the professor's guess was more likely. Has he awakened another mutant ability, or did he have it before and only showed it now? Cyclops has never seen mutants exist with so many abilities. The Storm Girl on the side even said, "It's really scary. With the speed of the White Devil, if there really is no upper limit, wouldn't it be true that no one can stop him in the near future?" After hearing Storm Girl's question, Professor X fell into silence for a long time. He didn't know how to answer Storm Girl's question, so he could only say slowly, "Because of this, we should pull him onto the right path." Cyclops on the side suddenly asked, "So how do we get him on the right path?" When this question was asked, everyone fell completely silent. Above the sky, Sumu was pacing in the air, covering a distance of several hundred meters with one step. In the confrontation with the X-Men just now, there were two reasons why he stopped attacking and chose to leave instead. First, the Phoenix Girl possesses the Phoenix Power. The Phoenix Power is one of the most formidable existences in the Marvel multiverse. It is the embodiment of all life and emotions. As the most ancient power, the complete Phoenix Power can decompose, transform, reorganize, create, and destroy all things at will, and can also distort cause and effect and timeline at will. He can travel to any latitude, dimension, and universe at will without any restrictions. The complete Phoenix Force is a great existence that transcends the almighty universe. Even if the Phoenix Power in Phoenix Girl's body is only a tiny fragment, it is definitely an extremely terrifying power. It can easily make Phoenix Girl a 5th-level mutant, and she is also an extremely powerful existence among 5th-level mutants. Since it was uncertain whether the unlimited spell could block the Black Phoenix's ability to decompose matter, and whether the regeneration rate of the reversal spell was faster than the Phoenix Woman's ability to decompose matter, Sumu still did not take the risk. Second, there will definitely be a conflict between the X-Men and Colonel Stryker. He had asked Tony Stark to find Stryker's whereabouts before, but he may have known that he would be targeted by the White Devil, so Stryker deliberately hid his whereabouts, so that even Tony Stark could not find him. Traces. Later, Sumu asked S.H.I.E.L.D. again, and the result was the same. So he plans to rely on the X-Men to lead out Stryker's traces. Stryker, who hates mutants extremely, will definitely take action against the X-Men. The hook has been left. All you have to do is wait for the fish to take the bait. In a remote town in New Mexico, in a restaurant, all the customers looked at a table of strange customers, just because one of the customers at the table suddenly broke a cup. Although the other companions of that companion immediately apologized, they still attracted the attention of many customers. However, the next moment, the doorbell of the restaurant rang, and a slender figure walked in, diverting all the customers' attention from the rude man to him. "Hey man, are you cosplaying the White Devil?" One of the chubby guys who was close to the store was attracted by the doorbell. He turned his head and looked behind him. He immediately saw the handsome man with white hair and sunglasses who came in. He was very familiar with this outfit. He was a level 5 mutant. White Devil costume. Because the White Devil's mutant abilities and decorations are extremely cool, and he is extremely well known around the world, many young people continue to try to cosplay with him for various reasons. This little chubby guy was no exception, but he was short in stature and fat in stature, so he couldn't cosplay even a trace of the White Devil's temperament, so he had to give up the attempt. When he saw the handsome man who had just walked into the restaurant, he was extremely envious. This guy's height, figure, and even appearance were very similar to the White Devil. If he hadn't known that the White Devil was in New York at this time, he might have thought that this guy was dude is literally the White Devil. As soon as Sumu entered the door, he saw a little fat man with white hair casting envious eyes at him. Then he heard the little fat man ask him if he was cosplaying the White Devil, and kept praising him for his extremely high level of restoration. Sumu was slightly stunned at first, and then he understood what little fatty meant. Then he didn't know what he thought of, and said to little fatty with a malicious look, "Thanks man, your hair is cool too." After receiving the approval from the cosplay boss in front of him, Xiao Pangun looked excited and looked at the mirror on the side of the glass. He looked at himself reflected in the glass. He looked so handsome no matter how he looked. I knew that Tom and the others must be jealous of my handsomeness and deliberately mock me. Sumu. Passing by the narcissistic little fat man, Sumu walked to the strange table where the cup had just been thrown, and then sat down under the strange looks of Soul and others. Through the description of the plot of Thor 1 and a little help from S.H.I.E.L.D., Sumu immediately found this town. After resting in a hotel for a day, Sumu discovered that Soul and others had arrived at the restaurant that had appeared in the plot, and decided to come to look for Soul. After sitting down and seeing Soul and others looking at her in confusion, Sumu grinned and showed a bright smile. "Hi everyone. Hello, my name is Sumu. Of course, others prefer to call me the White Devil. Can I get to know you?" Hearing Sumu's self-introduction, everyone except Thor, the god of thunder, laughed out loud. Among them, Jane Foster, the future girlfriend of the god of thunder, laughed and said, "Are you the White Devil? What a coincidence. We also have a thunder god from Norse mythology here. You think so, Thor?" Facing Jane Foster's teasing, Sumu did not try to prove anything, but looked at Thor in shock. "Oh my god, you are Thor, the legendary son of Odin, and the future king of Asgard." Since landing in the atrium, he has been frustrated repeatedly after losing the power of the god of thunder. No one believed that he was Thor, the god of thunder. At this time, he was suddenly recognized, and Thor suddenly felt that the weak, human being in front of him was extremely amiable. "Yes, I am Thor, the god of thunder, the son of Odin. You are very discerning. After I find Mjolnir and return to Asgard, I will definitely reward you heavily." The smile on Sumu's face became even more joyful. "Thank you so much, your highness Thor." Seeing the stranger who called himself the White Devil chatting happily with Thor, who called himself the god of thunder, the other three people couldn't laugh or cry. A Thor is already troublesome, but here comes another madman. At this moment, Soul recalled Sumu's self-introduction just now, and thought of the reactions of others around him, so he curiously asked Sumu, "Are you famous? Why are other people in the Midgard looking at you?" Before Sumu could respond, Jane Foster answered on his behalf. He's playing a very famous person. After Jane Foster's explanation, Soul finally understood the concept of cosplay, so he smiled boldly at Sumu and said, "That white demon is too weak. You should cosplay with me, the great god of thunder, Thor. That would be cooler." Sumu, who was repeatedly patted on the shoulder by the god of thunder, did not say anything, but the smile at the corner of his mouth became deeper. At this moment, a fat middle-aged man at the counter of the restaurant said to his companion, "You missed a good show. I heard that a satellite landed in the desert. We were enjoying watching it, and the spies from the investigation bureau came." Jane Foster curiously asked the middle-aged obese man, "Excuse me, are you saying that a satellite fell in the desert?" "Yes," the middle-aged obese man replied. Professor Eric on the other side of the table also looked curious. "What do satellites look like?" The obese middle-aged man continued to answer, "I don't understand satellites, but I know they are very heavy and no one can pick them up." Upon hearing this, Soul immediately stood up, came to the middle-aged man's side, took his shoulder and asked, "Where is it?" The middle-aged man looked at the impolite Soul behind him and was startled, but he still replied, "Go west 50 miles from here." Seeing Soul leaving, he kindly reminded, "Don't waste time. The army has already arrived." But Soul ignored him completely and walked straight out of the restaurant. Jane Foster and others also followed, leaving only Sumu alone. But he didn't follow in a hurry. Instead, he ordered an egg tart and ate it slowly. When he slowly walked out of the restaurant, he happened to see Jane Foster saying to Saul, who wanted to buy a horse at the pet store, "Do you want to ride?" Just when Soul was sitting in the passenger seat, the two of them suddenly heard a familiar magnetic voice coming from the side. "Then can I take a ride?" Jane Foster and Saul looked out the window and saw the white-haired young man who was in the restaurant just now using his index finger knuckle to lightly press the window and showing them a bright smile. "Oh, of course, but we want to do something extremely dangerous. Are you sure you want to go together?" Jane Foster replied, "Yes." A mysterious smile appeared on Sumu's face. "I finally met the legendary Thor, god of thunder, and I am not willing to leave just like that." On the way to their destination, Jane Foster said to Saul, "I have never done such a thing, have you?" Saul said with a mysterious smile, "Many times." When he was still about to say something, the white-haired man behind him also replied, "Yeah, I've done it many times, it's nothing." Saul asked Sumu curiously, "Oh, Sumu, what have you done?" "I destroyed a gang stronghold alone, and I also faced the encirclement and suppression of the army and mutants and left calmly. I destroyed a huge mechanical armor, and I also fought two terrifying monsters. Some time ago, I had a confrontation with the X-Men on the streets of New York and almost destroyed the entire New York." Thor was stunned for a moment after hearing this. He didn't expect Sumu's life to be so exciting, but he remembered that Sumu was cosplaying the white-haired devil at this time. Couldn't these be all the deeds of the white-haired devil? At this time, Jane Foster smiled and said, "You two are really interesting. One thinks he is a white-haired devil, and the other thinks he is the god of thunder." Before she could finish speaking, Soul immediately interrupted her. "I'm the god of thunder. Not that I think I am the god of thunder. When I get back the power of the god of thunder, you will know everything." Seeing the serious expression on Thor's face, Jane Foster recalled the scene where she met Thor for the first time. He fell from the sky. If he was really the god of thunder who was deprived of his divine power by Odin and exiled to the atrium, well, it's all explained effectively. But just as she was gradually convinced by Soul, Sumu in the back seat also smiled and nodded. "Yes, yes, I believe Thor is the god of thunder, and I am also a white-haired devil. Jane, you have to believe us." Jane, who had just begun to believe in Soul, immediately shook her head after hearing Sumu's words. "I'm really crazy that I would accompany you to do such a thing, but they stole my lifelong research results, and I will get them all back." Hearing what the girl from the atrium in front of him said that he liked, Soul immediately smiled and said to her, "Don't worry, when I get Mjolnir back, I will definitely ask them to return all the materials." Sumu also nodded deeply. "Yes, when we get there, we will ask them to hand over everything." Jane Foster smiled slightly, non-committal. Obviously, she didn't believe it at all. Before they were completely close to their destination, the three of them parked the vehicle in a hidden location, then walked to a hillside and used binoculars on the hillside to observe the temporary military base below. At this time, the sky was completely dark and the surroundings were dark, with only the lights in the base ahead for illumination. After a moment of observation, Soul handed Jane Foster his coat to keep her warm from the cold, and then planned to rush down, but was stopped by Jane Foster, who said with a serious face, "You think you can just walk over and take our things and leave?" Soul smiled confidently. "No, I want to fly out." After saying that, he rushed straight to the military base without waiting for Jane Foster to say anything else. Boom. Suddenly there was a burst of thunder in the sky, accompanied by dazzling lightning that instantly illuminated the whole world. Under the light of lightning, he broke into the military base and defeated one agent after another. Thor finally looked like a god of thunder at this time. Seeing Thor fighting with many agents, Jane Foster was very worried. Suddenly, a cynical and magnetic laugh came from her side. "Don't worry, even if Thor really can't get back the power of Thor, I'm here, I will solve all the problems." The worried look on Jane Foster's face froze immediately. Because of the previous preparations, she might still have the fantasy that Thor is the legendary Thor, but she never expected that Sumu is really the white-haired devil. Not only because the white-haired devil is in New York at this time, it is impossible to appear in New Mexico, but also because the white-haired devil in her impression will not be Sumu's unreliable appearance. As the strongest level 5 mutant, the white-haired devil who is enough to wipe out a city in a short time has always been a cruel and cold man in the news, and it is impossible to be the funny guy in front of him who always has a smirk. At this time, under their gaze, Thor defeated one agent after another and came to the front of Thor's hammer. Then he confidently held the hammer handle with one hand and wanted to pick up Thor's hammer. However, one attempt, no result. Two attempts, still no result. After continuous attempts, Thor finally gave up and knelt on the ground and roared in despair after using all his strength to pick up Thor's hammer. Seeing this scene, Jane Foster immediately turned around and walked towards the car parked in the distance. It seemed that she wanted to find a rescuer, but she was suddenly stopped by a tall white-haired figure. Even at this time, the white-haired figure still had an unreliable smile on his mouth. "Didn't I say that there is still me?" Jane Foster had no time to communicate with Sumu at this time. She immediately said, "Sumu, we have to leave quickly and find Dr. Eric to bail Thor out. Otherwise he will be in danger." But Sumu's smile on his face did not change, and he still stopped her. Just when she was getting impatient, she suddenly found that Sumu in front of her had become strange. It was obviously the same smile, but suddenly it changed from unreliable to chilling coldness, making her feel extremely strange and cold all over. Unreliable Sumu. No, it was the white-haired devil who said to her with a cold face, "I told you, there is also me." Under Jane Foster's shocked gaze, Sumu stood up, put his hands in his pockets, and strolled towards the base ahead. He was unhurried, as if the front was not a heavily guarded military base, but a leisurely resort. Because Soul had just trespassed into the base, many agents at this time were even more vigilant. When Sumu just approached, he immediately discovered his traces. So some agents immediately went to stop him, but when they got close to Sumu and saw his appearance clearly, they subconsciously stopped. White hair, blue eyes, he is the white devil. An agent immediately screamed after discovering it. Compared to civilians, they SHIELD agents know the white devil better and understand the terror of the white devil better. Unlike the X-Men, who long for mutants to coexist peacefully with humans, and the Brotherhood of Mutants, who want to eliminate humans and let mutants rule the world, the white devil is a powerful mutant who has no purpose and does whatever he wants. Because there is no idea and no clear goal, there is no concern, and it is impossible to predict its actions. It is the most unstable factor. At this time, another agent asked doubtfully, "Shouldn't the white devil be in New York at this time? Could he be some other copycat?" Hearing this sentence, all the agents had this doubt, but when the white-haired figure in front approached again, they no longer had the previous thoughts. Sumu took a step, and the powerful pressure from the reversal of the spell, he suddenly burst out, knocking away the intercepting agents around him. The alarm immediately sounded, and the radio calls from the agents kept echoing emergency notifications. "The white devil is coming. The white devil is coming." Different from the fun of facing Thor, all the agents acted quickly like precision parts, holding firearms in an instant and preparing to meet the enemy. Among them, Hawkeye, who was at a high place when Soul attacked, even lost his previous relaxation when he heard the message in the headset and looked solemnly towards the front of the base. There was a figure there with his hands in his pockets, moving forward calmly. As he advanced, a huge repulsive force enveloped the surrounding area for tens of meters. Whether it was a temporary building or a well-trained agent, they were all knocked out of the area. Hawkeye stared at the white demon, holding the bow string with his right hand, wondering whether he should fire it or not. At this moment, perhaps sensing his gaze, the white devil suddenly looked towards him. There was no emotion in his eyes. It was complete indifference. It was precisely because of this look that Hawkeye completely gave up shooting special explosive arrows, because he knew that his arrow would not be able to cause any harm to the white devil, but would instead cost him his life. Any random attack from the white devil is extremely fatal to him. As a well-trained and powerful agent, he is not afraid of death, but he will never make any sacrifice without any value. In a room covered with surveillance screens, repeated alarms continued to be heard from loudspeakers. Alarm, the white devil is coming. Alarm, the white devil is coming. After one of the bald men wearing glasses heard the content of the alarm, a glimmer of light flashed in his eyes. He moved to a hidden corner to send a message to the unknown IP address, and then continued to command. Don't anger the white devil. We are no match for him. Don't make meaningless sacrifices. Agent Coulson, you have had close contact with the white demon, and now we can only rely on you. Coulson, who was in an interrogation room and was questioning Saul, suddenly heard an alarm from his headset, and then heard a message from another agent. The white devil is coming. Why did he come here? Coulson immediately thought of the hammer located here. If there is something here that can attract the white devil, it must be it. Without much hesitation, Coulson left the interrogation room and rushed outside the base. Saul, who was left in the interrogation room, also heard the alarms constantly coming from around him. White devil, isn't that the person Sumu has been cosplaying with? Why does he appear here? Suddenly, he thought of something. Thinking of his conversation with Sumu during this period and how he didn't care about breaking into the military base, he immediately realized something. No, he's not really a white devil, is he? So everything he said before was true. As soon as Coulson came outside, he found that a large number of buildings in front of him had been destroyed by the terrifying repulsion. It was still raining at this time, and there were swamps everywhere. Most of the agents were lying on the ground in a haphazard manner, soaked to the skin and looking miserable. As a result, the figure standing in the void seemed even more abrupt. When the rain came close to him for tens of meters, it was bounced away by invisible repulsion, unable to get close to him. He was walking around in the air, his body not stained by any dust. He was aloof and independent, as if he didn't belong to this world. Coulson saw that the terrifying invisible force field had begun to destroy the temporary main building, and he immediately shouted, Mr. Sumu, I am Coulson. We have communicated in Stark Tower before. Please stop. We welcome you. Sumu, who was standing in the void, heard Coulson's voice, withdrew his repulsion, and stepped forward to Coulson's side. Seeing Sumu appear and stop the attack, Coulson breathed a sigh of relief and then said, Mr. Sumu, you don't have to make such a fuss. If you want to come, we welcome you. Sumu grinned and chuckled. If you didn't have the power at this time, you would probably have a different attitude, right? He smiled and said, I just said hello just now, and I didn't mean any harm. Looking at the large number of agents falling to the ground in the distance and the temporary base that was half destroyed, Coulson couldn't help but keep complaining in his heart. Is this what you call a greeting? But he also understood that for the white devil, this level of attack was indeed merciful. Coulson continued to ask, I don't know why you came. Sumu walked towards the inside of the base and responded, You captured my friend. I came to save him. Coulson immediately thought of the man who just called himself Thor, and cold sweat immediately flowed down his forehead. Fortunately, they did not hurt the man. Otherwise, the situation at this time might really be out of control. After entering the base, Sumu walked straight to the location of Thor's hammer. When he arrived at the meteorite crater, he suddenly found a figure trying to pick up Thor's hammer, but he was obviously not recognized. No matter how hard he tried, he still couldn't pick up the hammer. Seeing this scene, Sumu immediately knew who the person in the strange armor was, so he immediately said to Coulson in a playful way, Loki, you can't pick it up because you are not qualified. Hearing this, Loki immediately turned around and looked behind him. When he saw Sumu, he was stunned. He didn't expect that a mere person in the atrium could detect his existence when he was invisible. Then Loki immediately showed an arrogant look. Even if he was standing below Sumu, he still looked down at him as if he was condescending. Loki opened his arms and said arrogantly, Strong man of the Midgard, you are qualified to meet the king of Asgard. Sumu looked at the arrogant Loki in front of him, and then looked at the character template fusion degree that had reached 56% during this period of time, as well as many powerful skills, and the smile on the corner of his mouth suddenly became interesting. It seems that I have to teach this naughty baby a lesson. It is a very good fantasy farming novel. Readers who like it can go and have a look. Looking at Loki in front of him, Sumu walked towards him without any intention of greeting. Seeing this scene, Loki frowned. He didn't expect that the Midgard man in front of him was so rude and dared to offend the king of Asgard. So he immediately summoned the dagger, wanting to teach the rude Midgard man in front of him a lesson and let the rude Midgard man understand the etiquette of respect and inferiority. He directly ayed towards Sumu with a mocking smile. Humble Midgard man, it seems that I need to teach you how to kneel when facing the king. Seeing that the dagger was about to hit the Midgard man in front of him, Loki sneered. The Midgard man didn't even react to his attack. Even though the dagger was less than 1 meter away from him, he still had no intention of dodging, which made him feel boring. However, just when the dagger was about to approach the Midgard man in front of him, the expression on his face suddenly froze, and he looked at the dagger in front of him that could not move forward any further. What kind of power is this? Just when Loki was about to say something, a strong repulsive force came from the front. The pressure caused by this repulsive force was even stronger than being hit by Thor's hammer head-on. He was suddenly blown away by the terrifying repulsive force. His body first shattered the surrounding glass walls, destroyed the metal brackets along the way, then cut through the rain curtain, broke through the outermost metal fence of the base, and then stopped. Oh my back. Loki only felt severe pain all over his body, and felt that everything in front of him was a dream. Is this a Midgard person? When did they become so strong? Before he could breathe a sigh of relief, the strong attraction once again attracted him to the white-haired demon in the distance. The terrifying attraction ignored any of his resistance. Even if he stuck the dagger into the ground, the speed of being attracted did not decrease at all. Finally, he returned to the room wrapped in glass again, returned to the Thor's hammer that he had been thinking about, and saw the terrifying white-haired demon again. After catching Loki again, Sumu grinned and thought of something. So he held one of Loki's legs tightly, used spell power manipulation and energy enhancement to strengthen his body to the limit, swung Loki back and forth, and kept smashing him to the ground until he stopped after dozens of times. After everything was over, looking at Loki with a dull face and doubting his life, Sumu said something that he didn't understand now. No wonder Hulk likes to smash things. The feel is really good. Because Sumu suddenly took action just now, Coulson had already dodged far away. Seeing that everything was calm, he immediately came over. Seeing the strange man with horns suddenly appearing, he asked Sumu in confusion, Mr. Sumu, who is he? Sumu was still savoring the feel just now. After experimenting on Loki, he immediately liked this feeling. Hearing Coulson's words, he replied casually, Loki, son of Odin, second prince of Asgard, and also a naughty child of thousands of years old. Loki, isn't that a myth? Coulson said in disbelief. For the ancients in the past, they were indeed gods who mastered powerful technology and magic, but their essence was nothing more than aliens. Looking at Loki, who was defeated by the white-haired demon, Coulson nodded deeply. How could there be such a weak god? Seeing the agents bring Loki to the interrogation room, Sumu ignored it. He knew that Loki would definitely escape, and these agents could not imprison the god of trickery at all. But this is what Sumu thought. If Loki did not escape, the destroyer armor would not come to the earth, and the subsequent mind gem gift pack would no longer exist. Focusing on Thor's hammer, Sumu reached out and grasped the hammer handle, trying to lift it, but it was obvious that the white-haired demon was not qualified to lift Thor's hammer. And at this time, his strength was far less than Odin's, and he could not use brute force to break the magic left by Odin on it. At this time, in the interrogation room, Thor was shocked to see his brother being imprisoned. He was sure that his cunning brother would never be caught by those agents, so someone else caught him. So he asked directly, Loki, who defeated you and captured you? After being asked by Thor, Loki finally recovered from the blow. He looked at Thor, who was also imprisoned beside him, and replied with gritted teeth, a damn white-haired man from the atrium. He insulted me. I will make him pay the price. As soon as the voice fell, Loki disappeared from the spot with a flash of magic. When Thor heard his words, he immediately thought of Sumu's white hair. The previous idea could not help but emerge again. Could he really be the white-haired devil? At this moment, a figure pushed open the door and walked in. The visitor had familiar white hair and familiar round-frame sunglasses. But at this time, the exquisite blue eyes that had been hidden under the sunglasses were revealed, which contained the unruly and empty eyes that he had never been able to match before. Thor heard the familiar yet strange white-haired demon in front of him say, "What a mess, Thor." After releasing Thor, Sumu stayed in a 5-star hotel, waiting for the arrival of the destroyer. And during this process, he kept absorbing the energy from the 2 arc reactors, constantly improving the panel fusion degree. A few days later, the sound of the system upgrading continued to ring in Sumu's ears. Energy point +1. Energy point +1. Energy point +1. After a long period of absorption, the colors of the 2 arc reactors became much dimmer than before. After a while, they would need to find Tony Stark to replace the new arc reactors. After absorbing for a few minutes again, Sumu heard several slightly different system prompts. Energy point +1. Template fusion degree, 60%. You have unlocked a new skill, virtual style. The border town in the distance was in chaos, and the terrifying mechanical monsters several meters high were constantly destroying everywhere. The agents and some civilians who came to stop them were already dead. At this time, Thor was evacuating the surrounding civilians with Jane Foster and Dr. Eric, while the 4 warriors of Asgard rushed towards the destroyer armor that had descended. They knew that they were no match for the destroyer armor that Odin had spent a lot of effort to carefully build, but they were also quite confident in their own strength and believed that they could buy enough time to evacuate the crowd. So, just like Loki went to Sumu a few days ago, Fandral, who had a big brown beard, bravely rushed towards the destroyer armor with the help of his companions. But when he just approached and had no time to attack, he was hit in the face by a punch from the destroyer armor, was smashed out and finally fell on a car, unable to get up again. When the destroyer armor was about to release a laser from its head to kill Fandral, Sif, the only female of the 4 warriors of Asgard, jumped off the roof and pierced the neck of the destroyer armor with a spear in her hand. Just when they breathed a sigh of relief and thought everything was over, they found that the destroyer armor had lit up again. It was unscathed and released energy rays again to force them back. In just a moment, the 4 warriors of Asgard were defeated by the destroyer armor. Only then did they realize the gap between themselves and the destroyer armor. When Thor saw the 4 injured warriors of Asgard and looked at the destroyer armor that was still being destroyed, he suddenly realized his responsibility. So he stood up and walked towards the destroyer armor in the distance. He wanted to use his life to save the lives of the weak, which is what a king should do. Just as Thor was preparing to welcome his own death, clear footsteps suddenly came from a distance, and the uninhabited border town at this time was extremely conspicuous. Everyone looked in the direction of the footsteps and saw a young man with white hair and sunglasses, walking over unhurriedly with his hands in his pockets. He seemed not to notice the tragic situation in front of him, and the terrifying destroyer armor standing in the firelight, chewing gum bought from nowhere, while walking slowly like shopping. First, he passed by Jane Foster and others and said to them, "Hello, Jane, Professor Eric, we meet again." When Jane Foster saw Sumu, a light of hope flashed in her eyes, and she immediately said to Sumu, "Sumu, help Thor, he is dying now." But before Sumu could answer, the goddess of land and harvest Sif shook her head and said, "People of the atrium, give up, let Thor die gloriously. You can't stop the destroyer armor." Sumu completely ignored Sif, nodded to Jane, and said in his usual unremarkable tone, "Then you have to agree to one condition of mine in the future, and you must first ask me to help you treat you after you're sick." Although Sumu came for the destroyer armor, it is also very good to let Jane Foster owe him a favor at this time. When she is possessed by the reality gem in the future, I believe that the reversal technique will be upgraded to a sufficient level by then, and it is very likely that the reality gem in her body can be taken out. Isn't this another express delivery? Although she didn't know what Sumu meant, in order to save Thor, Jane Foster immediately nodded in agreement. "Okay, I promise you, I will find you as soon as I get sick." Sumu smiled with satisfaction, and then walked towards the destroyer armor. Suddenly, a figure stopped him. It was Sif, the only female among the 4 warriors of Asgard. She said to Sumu with a serious face, "Go back, you can't be the opponent of the destroyer armor. Don't destroy the glory that belongs to Thor." Hearing her words, Sumu couldn't help but sneered. Glory is being slaughtered. Faced with Sumu's ridicule, Sif immediately gave a warning. For Asgard warriors, dying on the battlefield and being remembered by future generations is the highest honor. Please leave immediately. Facing earthlings other than Thor, the 4 warriors of Asgard would not be so good-tempered. They looked down on the backward atrium. At this time, they did not immediately attack Sumu because he knew Thor. Looking at Sif, the legendary goddess of land and harvest, who was still blocking him, Sumu had no patience anymore. He smiled brightly at Sif. Just when Sif thought he would return, Sumu swung his right hand hard, and Sif was blown away by the powerful repulsive force. Her body smashed through houses, and finally embedded in the ground without any movement. The remaining 3 warriors of the Asgard palace who were watching the show on the side, and Jane Foster and others, suddenly stagnated their breath and looked at what had just happened in shock. The 3 warriors of the Asgard palace looked at Sumu in disbelief. When did the people of the Midgard become so powerful? They actually defeated Sif in an instant. When they reacted, instead of being afraid, they rushed towards Sumu. The people of the Midgard dared to attack the goddess of land and harvest, which was a heinous crime. Then, in the eyes of Jane Foster and others, the remaining 3 Asgard warriors were also blown away in an instant, and fainted on the ground after smashing houses. Even though she knew that Sumu was really the white-haired devil, Jane Foster was still incredible. Is the white-haired devil really so powerful? Even more terrifying than the gods in legends. As for Dr. Eric and Darcy, who still don't know Sumu's identity, they have subconsciously held their breath and stared at Sumu in a daze. So he is really a white-haired demon, not a cosplay? So is the white-haired demon really that powerful? After dealing with the 4 fools in Asgard, Sumu took a step forward and appeared in front of Thor as if teleporting, confronting the destroyer armor. When Thor saw Sumu coming, he first showed joy on his face, but immediately dimmed again and said to him, "Sumu, don't be impulsive. This is the destroyer armor made by my father to fight against the Celestials. It is made entirely of URU alloy and is extremely powerful. You can't be its opponent. You should leave quickly. Loki's target is me. At least if he kills me, he will leave." Before Thor continued to advise, the body of the destroyer armor showed a scorching light, and an energy ray that was much more powerful than before suddenly shot towards Sumu. Loki, who was controlling the destroyer armor in Asgard, saw the white-haired man in front of him through the vision of the destroyer armor, and his face was overjoyed. Isn't this the damn bastard who insulted him a few days ago? This is the perfect opportunity for revenge. Even if that bastard is really strong, he is definitely no match for the destroyer armor. Loki immediately ordered the destroyer armor to attack with all his strength. For some reason, Loki only used a small part of the power of the Destroyer armor when attacking Thor and others before. Now facing the white-haired demon who once humiliated him, he immediately ordered the Destroyer armor to exert its full strength. The hot energy beam flew towards Su-Mu at a high speed, and Thor on the side couldn't bear to see what happened next. Even if Su-Mu is very powerful, he can never be the opponent of the Destroyer armor. He will be killed by the energy beam and turned into nothingness, and even his body will not be left behind. But the next moment, Thor's face turned into absolute astonishment. Loki, who was controlling the Destroyer armor in the Asgard, changed his face greatly. In the field of vision observed through the Destroyer armor, a fist forced to meet the laser beam and hit the chest of the Destroyer armor directly. The next moment, the terrifying black and red lightning suddenly broke out between the two. Black lightning exploded between Su-Mu and the Destroyer armor. The aftermath of the collision between the two destroyed the surrounding area of dozens of meters, and then a huge steel figure was knocked out from the smoke and dust. After punching the Destroyer armor away, Su-Mu was not intact. The energy rays released by the Destroyer armor are more powerful than the energy rays of the Cyclops, and even the level 3 unlimited technique cannot completely resist it. Su-Mu's chest showed a large area of laser burn marks, which recovered quickly under the effect of the reversal technique. He looked forward excitedly, and the Destroyer armor slowly rose from hundreds of meters away, without any damage to the whole body. Su-Mu fell into a disadvantage at the first contact, which was a situation he had never encountered since he crossed over. However, he was not discouraged, but became more and more excited. In the world of Jujutsu Kaisen, in addition to increasing the power of the attack to the original 2.5 power, the Black Flash will also put the user into the zone state. In this state, the user can increase his strength, speed, spell power, reaction, etc. to 120% of the normal level, showing amazing abilities. After using Black Flash, Su-Mu immediately entered this state. At this time, he felt unprecedented comfort, unprecedented swiftness of energy and flesh. The Destroyer armor in the distance once again released a laser from its head and rushed straight towards Su-Mu. After using the technique to turn Song to move quickly and avoid the attack, Su-Mu came to the front of the Destroyer armor again. This time there was no interference from the laser, and he hit the Destroyer armor again in an uninjured state. The energy fine control of the LV3 Six Eyes and the energy mastery ability of LV3 energy absorption greatly increased the success rate of Su-Mu's release of Black Flash. The black and red thunder exploded again, and the Destroyer armor was knocked away again. But this time he was not far away, and was attracted by the terrifying Azure Black Hole. The strong pressure from the technique to turn Song pulled the Destroyer armor into the Azure Black Hole, but unlike before, the Azure Black Hole could not cause damage to the Destroyer armor. After being suddenly attacked by gravity, the Destroyer armor immediately adapted to the huge attraction and regained stability. However, Su-Mu did not feel sorry. He was not surprised that the Destroyer armor could ignore the attack of its Song spell. If Odin could not be immune to the attack of its Song spell, how could he wear the Destroyer armor to fight against the Celestials? The smile on his face became more and more joyful, and the energy in his body was extremely active. His whole body was surrounded by the energy conversion mana, and the Azure mana on the surface of his body seemed to be boiling. Extending his index finger, pointing to the Destroyer armor in front of him that was resisting the attraction of its Song spell, Su-Mu's mouth cracked into a happy smile from the heart. Spell reversal, huh? The spell power quickly flowed to the tip of the index finger, and a black and red singularity the size of a ping-pong ball formed quickly. As soon as Su-Mu finished speaking, the black and red singularity cut through the air, piercing the air to form a terrifying sonic boom, disappearing in front of Su-Mu's index finger, and instantly hitting the head of the Destroyer armor. Boom. A terrifying explosion occurred, and the Destroyer heavy armor was knocked away again. The powerful repulsive force from the reversal of the technique, was far more powerful than the attack of the Black Flash. While knocking the Destroyer armor away, it continued to destroy the ground along the way, and finally knocked the Destroyer armor away for thousands of meters, leaving a huge gully before it stopped. The aftermath of the explosion spread to the town in the distance, and the entire ground continued to shake, as if a high-intensity earthquake had occurred. At this time, Jane Foster and the 4 warriors of Asgard came to Thor's side, and watched the battle in the distance with Thor in shock. Even Thor, who has not lost his power, can't do this. Sif muttered to herself. The scene in front of her broke her previous cognition. It turned out that the people of the Midgard were so powerful. After releasing the reversal of the spell, Su-Mu did not relax, because through the observation of the Six Eyes, the Destroyer armor in the dust was still intact, but the armor on the chest was slightly damaged and recovered at a speed visible to the naked eye. This made Su-Mu slightly complain. Why didn't he show such amazing fighting power when fighting Thor in the movie? Sure enough, Loki loves Thor deeply, and the usual quarrels are just a manifestation of Sundra. While Su-Mu was complaining, the Destroyer armor in the distance rushed over again. Seeing this scene, Su-Mu was even more excited. This was a brand new experience that he didn't get from fighting with Hulk. The two fought again. Black lightning burst out from time to time, and the terrifying energy beams left dense scratches on the ground. During the battle, Su-Mu's experience in each skill was increasing rapidly, and the system's prompts continued. Energy point +1. Six Eyes experience +1. Energy absorption experience +1. Unlimited spell experience +1. Spell forward Song experience +1. Spell reverse he experience +1. After being hit by the energy ray again, Su-Mu's arm was immediately pierced, and a large amount of blood was evaporated by the hot ray. But the next moment, the arm was visibly repaired, and the terrifying energy beam was suddenly blocked by the flesh, and it could no longer cause any damage to him. Finally, in the high-intensity battle, the energy absorption that was about to be upgraded was improved again. Energy absorption experience +1. Congratulations, your skill energy absorption has been upgraded. Energy absorption LV4, January 5000 can absorb almost all types of energy, with extremely high absorption speed and energy storage limit. After the energy absorption was upgraded, Su-Mu's body immediately transformed. His bones and muscle fibers were transformed into a state more suitable for storing energy, and the limit of his body's energy storage was increased several times, and even his spirit was greatly strengthened, and his energy control was faster and more accurate. The energy beam that was almost unstoppable was like a spring breeze in front of him at this time, and the speed of energy absorption was far beyond the output speed of the Destroyer armor. However, the Destroyer armor, which was remotely controlled by Loki, could only exert such strength. Facing Su-Mu with LV4 energy absorption, he could no longer hurt him. Although other skills were also strengthened to varying degrees after the energy absorption was upgraded, Su-Mu was not going to use those skills. He couldn't wait to fight the Destroyer armor. Ignoring the hot energy beam, he tore off the torn shirt on his upper body, revealing his beautiful muscles. Energy absorption LV4 full power strengthens the body. Combined with the powerful physical skills given by the mana manipulation and the panel, as well as the refined control of energy and body by the Six Eyes, Su-Mu punched in the splashing energy beams. Boom. The more terrifying fist force was amplified to the original 2.5 th power by the terrifying red and black lightning, and the Destroyer armor was immediately knocked to the ground. When it came into contact with the ground, the residual power spread to the ground. Huge cracks continued to appear, the ground quickly sank, and finally formed a huge circular pit with a diameter of hundreds of meters. Crossing Marvel, I only had a numerical panel in the chat group of the heavens. I thought the chat group of the heavens was my golden finger, but I was banned by the omniscient and omnipotent immortal at the beginning. On the contrary, the numerical panel without hope is even more heavyweight. Talent 1, endless. There is no upper limit, no bottleneck, no weakness, and you can become stronger with hard work. Talent 2, rest of the strong. For every 1 point of attribute improvement, an additional 0.1 attribute points to be used or added. As long as you exercise, you can increase your physique infinitely like Saitama. But isn't the power of each attribute increase a bit wrong? 1 point of strength can't catch a chicken, but 5 points can move at supersonic speed and chase the Hulk all over the street. 20 points can drip blood to regenerate and crush the planet. 50 points can directly blow up the universe with one punch. When the physical fitness shown by each attribute increase is not linear, but increases by percentage, exponential, or even factorial, Bai Yi knows that he is going to make it. Bai Yi. This panel is probably designed by the physical education teacher. Good. Deep Blue, give me a lot of points. In the New York Battle of Avengers 1, Bai Yi punched the Chitauri fleet and grabbed the purple potato spirit scalp and said, "You are called Thanos." After the energy beam, the main means of attack, lost its effect, the destroyer armor was no longer Su Mu's opponent. Every time Su Mu attacked, he would absorb the energy from the destroyer's attack and strengthen himself. During the battle, his physical strength was completely consumed, and he was always in peak condition. After the energy absorption reached level 4, it was undoubtedly a qualitative improvement. At this time, Su Mu could absorb almost all energy, and even absorb all absorbable energy that was not in direct contact with him within a certain range. Now, except for bioenergy, chemical energy, and very few other energies, he can easily absorb and manipulate them. For example now, looking at the energy beam coming towards him, Su Mu clenched his right hand slightly. When the energy beam approached him, it twisted and quickly formed a long spear with flashing light, and then he pierced it into the body of the destroyer and exploded violently. However, this attack is only the most superficial use of energy, and it cannot be compared with the use of skills. The same energy can exert more powerful power by using skills. Another black flash hit the destroyer and sent him flying. The destroyer could no longer easily resist Su Mu's attack. The armor on his face was damaged, but it was recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. After a few minutes, Su Mu finally adapted to the energy absorption of level 4. His body instantly disappeared from the spot and came to the destroyer armor, with his palm gently covering his chest. The next moment, the terrifying black and red singularity was released at close range, and the powerful repulsive force broke out in the chest of the destroyer armor. This attack finally penetrated its chest armor, causing great damage to it. Looking at the destroyer armor that was still recovering, Su Mu couldn't help but sigh at the power of this armor made by Odin. The destroyer armor controlled by Loki was completely unable to exert all its power. I really don't know what kind of style the destroyer armor worn by Odin would be, but at this time, Su Mu was tired of playing, and the destroyer armor in front of him could no longer pose the slightest threat to him. Looking at the destroyer armor in front of him, Su Mu took off his sunglasses and threw them aside. He stretched out the fingers of his left hand, held his right hand and left hand together, and looked at the destroyer armor in front of him, with the excitement in his eyes reaching the extreme. Spell forward, song. A half-human-sized azure black hole first formed on the left side behind him. Spell reverse he. Another half-human-sized black-red singularity formed on the right side behind him, but it was slightly unstable because of the forced activation. Black lightning kept escaping and destroyed everything around. But these black lightnings were absorbed by energy when they approached Su Mu, and could not hurt him at all. Finally, Su Mu made a finger-snapping motion forward and said the name of this powerful ability that required the fusion of two powerful spells to be used. Virtual Style Z. The azure black hole and the black-red singularity overlapped. Under the absolute control of energy absorption level 4 and the guidance of the experience of using the Virtual Style Z in his mind, the dark purple false mass sphere was completely formed, and then accompanied by purple lightning, it crashed into the destroyer armor. The dazzling purple light obscured everything around, making it all eclipsed. The whole world could only see a huge purple sphere moving forward at a high speed, destroying everything around it. In an instant, the terrifying illusion sphere passed through the destroyer armor and continued to move forward, destroying the Gobi along the way, passing through a mountain, until it disappeared at the end of the sight. After everything calmed down, Thor and others were stunned and saw a huge gully with a diameter of tens of meters starting from the white-haired demon and spreading to the end of the site. Even the towering mountains in the distance could not stop it at all, and were completely penetrated. And the indestructible destroyer armor, after facing this attack that was enough to penetrate the space head-on, disappeared completely, and not even a piece of URU metal was left. In the Asgard god realm, after seeing the last picture sent back by the destroyer armor, Loki's body completely softened. What kind of monster is this? In a luxurious room, under a layer of transparent glass, Odin, who was in a deep sleep, suddenly opened his single eye, with deep horror in his eyes. Is it another ancient one? In a mysterious hall somewhere, a kind-looking bald woman put down the tea in her hand, turned her head to look in a certain direction, and whispered, "Has he grown to this extent? It is worthy of being a mysterious existence in the multiverse that only exists by itself and has no isotopes." In a hidden military base, the scene in the Gobi Desert was photographed by a surveillance satellite and projected on a huge screen hanging on the wall. Colonel Stryker pointed to the huge gully that seemed to divide the entire Gobi Desert in two and shouted angrily, "The white-haired demon has grown to this point. If we don't launch the annihilation plan, then when his strength increases again, there will be no chance to kill him, and the entire United States will be ruled by him in the future." Hearing Stryker's words, a general immediately expressed his position. "I agree." Then other senior military generals nodded one after another. Agree. After a while, everyone agreed to carry out the white-haired demon annihilation plan. Seeing this, Colonel Stryker finally smiled on his face. He smiled and said to many generals, "Generals, the white-haired demon suppression device and the sentinels with space-slashing capability are fully ready and can attack at any time." A few minutes later, the supersonic helicopter that had been prepared took off from the military base closest to Su Mu and flew towards him at a high speed. At the end of the huge gully, Su Mu smiled brightly and looked at the traces left by the virtual style. The LV1 virtual style, Thu, should not have such great power at all. He used the LV4 energy absorption at this time to forcibly release the more powerful virtual style, Thu, which exerted such great power. But this level of attack is also a huge burden for him at this time, so that even he is panting violently, and the energy in his body is almost exhausted. However, under the effect of LV4 energy absorption, whether it is the light energy of the sun or the surrounding temperature, and the energy in the arc reactor are all being absorbed by him quickly, so the energy in his body is recovering at a very fast speed. After a while, the energy in his body was close to saturation. At the same time, the two arc reactors floating beside Su Mu completely dimmed, and the energy in them had been completely absorbed by him. Looking at the two completely exhausted arc reactors, Su Mu thought, "It seems that I have to ask Stark for a new arc reactor, and I should also prepare to obtain the space gem. The LV4 energy absorption should be enough to bear the space gem." After a while, after the energy in his body was fully restored, Su Mu checked the gains of this battle. First of all, 2 of his skills were upgraded again. Reversal spell experience, +1. Congratulations, your skill reversal technique has been upgraded. Reversal spell LV2, 107/300 turn the negative energy of the spell itself into positive energy, which has a strong healing effect. Spell reversal he experience, +1. Congratulations, your skill spell reversal he has been upgraded. Spell reversal he LV3, 19/1000 repulsive force is generated with he as the center. The minimum power is twice that of Song, and the maximum output is positive infinity, similar to a small supernova. After the high-intensity battle just now, both the reversal technique and the technique reversal H have been upgraded by 1 level. Among them, because the technique has no lower limit and the previous enemies can hardly cause damage to Su Mu's body, the reversal technique has not been upgraded for a long time. In this battle with the destroyer armor, he needed to use the reversal technique to continuously treat the injuries caused by the energy beam, so the reversal technique that he had already accumulated a certain amount of experience was finally upgraded, and he was a big step away from level 3. The healing effect of the LV2 reversal technique on the body has been greatly enhanced, and the recovery speed of injuries has been greatly improved. Now the healing speed of the reversal technique, coupled with the recovery speed of energy absorption, has reached the level of Wolverine. However, the reversal technique at this time still cannot be used on other people. It should be possible when it reaches level 3. Thinking of this, Sumu decided to practice the reversal spell more. After all, when Jane Foster came to deliver the food, she would still need to reverse the spell to take out the reality gem. And Sumu is also looking forward to the effects of high-level reversal spells. The highest achievement of reversal spells in the spell battle is to become a master and be able to use reversal spells to heal others. So what kind of abilities will you have when the level of the reversal technique exceeds that of Yeri Glass and reaches a higher realm? Immortality? Return from the dead? Restore matter to its original state? Or is it another more magical effect? As for the reversal of the spell, H, the power was increased again. Turning his palm upward, the spell power surged, and a black and red singularity the size of a basketball appeared above Sumu's palm, floating steadily. Throwing out the black-red singularity, accompanied by violent winds and strong vibrations on the ground, there was once again a gully more than 10 meters wide in the center of a huge gully tens of meters wide in front. The power of the spell reversal He is once again increased several times. Looking at the ravine left by the reversal of He in front of him, Sumu smiled with satisfaction. In addition to the upgrade of the 2 skills, there are other gains. The laser emitted by the destroyer armor has extremely high energy. After absorbing this energy, Sumu gained a large number of energy points. At this time, all energy points are invested into the character template, and the fusion degree of the character template has been increased from 60% to 67%. If it weren't for the fact that the destroyer armor couldn't be carried around and was difficult to control, and there was a risk of being troubled by Odin, Sumu would have wanted to use the destroyer armor to continuously absorb energy. However, even if the energy absorption reaches level 4, the arc reactor has not been eliminated. Sumu calculated the current energy absorption speed and found that it would take about 5 arc reactors to supply energy together to meet his daily needs. Sure enough, getting infinite gems should be put on the agenda as soon as possible. Just when Sumu was about to return, a harsh roar suddenly came from the distance. After hearing this strange sound, Sumu felt that his body suddenly stopped, but he recovered instantly under the control of Lu Yen. His face, which had just regained its composure, became happy again, and the fruits he had planted before finally sprouted. A giant missile fell from the sky, and Sumu stood still without moving. It was just a nuclear bomb, nothing more. Good Samaritans are sending energy again. The next moment, a dazzling light burst out suddenly, like the sun falling, and endless light and heat enveloped everything around it. In a small town in the distance, Thor and everyone suddenly saw a mushroom cloud rising from the distance, and a huge shockwave was about to spread to the small town. At this critical moment, Thor finally regained his power, summoned Thor's hammer, and brought several Jane Foster mortals further away, escaping the attack. The 4 warriors of Asgard followed closely behind, and after reaching the safe area, all of them looked at the scene in the distance. The explosion from humanity's most powerful weapon surprised even Thor. Why was Sumu suddenly attacked by such a powerful weapon? Jane Foster explains for him. Sumu's external identity is the White Devil. He is wanted by the authorities. Some time ago, I heard that the authorities have formulated a plan against him. I think this nuclear bomb must be the official handiwork. Being hit head-on by a nuclear bomb, even Sumu wouldn't be able to survive. Soul stood up and said, I want to save him. Even if Sumu dies, I will get his body back. But just as Thor took a step, he suddenly stopped, looked at the shrinking hot flames in front of him, and said slowly, Oh, it seems I don't need to take action anymore. In the distant military base, many generals can clearly see the conditions in the Gobi through surveillance satellites. After seeing the White Devil being directly hit by a nuclear bomb, everyone immediately cheered. Located in the center of the nuclear bomb explosion, even the White Devil cannot survive. The world's greatest threat has finally been erased, and the White Devil will become history. Contact various media outlets. We need to report the news that the White Devil is dead. Let the world know that the White Devil has been killed by the military. When others were cheering for the successful killing of the White Devil, only Colonel Stryker was still staring at the mushroom cloud in the picture. Having been dealing with mutants for a long time, and even his own son is a mutant, he has a very good understanding of mutants and knows that mutants may not necessarily have any mutant abilities, especially a mutant as powerful as the White Devil. He is not surprised at all even if he walks out of the center of the nuclear bomb explosion intact. Suddenly, the mushroom cloud in the picture changed. The flames and impact that were originally expanding outwards at a rapid speed suddenly shrank visibly. A large amount of light and heat seemed to be absorbed by the black hole and could not escape at all. Other generals also saw this picture, and the smiles on their faces suddenly stopped, looking at the scene in front of them in disbelief. What happened? The energy generated by the nuclear bomb explosion is being quickly absorbed by something in the center area. Isn't his mutant ability suppressed by the mutant suppression device? Why can he still use it? Oh God, is he really a human? In a moment, all the energy of the nuclear bomb explosion was completely absorbed. There was nothing else in the explosion area except a large area of smoke and dust. Even the melted ground cooled down again. Then a vague figure slowly walked out of the center area of the explosion, came to the area without smoke and dust that the monitoring satellite could see, raised his head, and raised a middle finger to the sky. Seeing this scene, all the generals were silent. The thing they least wanted to see happened. The white-haired devil actually grew up enough to withstand a nuclear bomb in a short period of time. In this case, what other means on Earth can be used to harm him? One of the generals suddenly thought of something and asked Colonel Stryker, Colonel Stryker, why doesn't the mutant suppression device work on the white-haired demon? Other generals also discovered the problem. That's right, if the mutant suppression device is really effective, then even the white-haired demon will be just an ordinary person after losing his mutant ability, and there is no way he can survive a nuclear explosion. At this time, the white-haired demon's mutant ability can still be used, so it must be that the mutant suppression device cannot have the desired effect. All the generals cast questioning glances at Colonel Stryker. Being questioned by many generals, Colonel Stryker was silent for a moment before explaining. The medium used by the mutant suppression device this time is sound waves. If the sound is deliberately isolated, the effectiveness of the suppression device will be greatly reduced. It is thought that the white-haired devil used this method to become immune to the effect of the suppression device. But don't worry, generals, we have a backup method, which is a white-haired devil suppression device that is made using the white-haired devil's detailed information and is only aimed at the white-haired devil. The effect of this suppression device is dozens of times more powerful than that of ordinary mutant suppression devices, and the medium of action of the new device is electromagnetic waves, which is almost impossible to block. However, because the scope of this device is limited, it was not used immediately. But I have installed it on every sentry robot. These sentry robots not only carry devices to suppress the white-haired demon, but also replicate the space attack capabilities against the white-haired demon. They will definitely kill the white-haired demon. After hearing Colonel Stryker's follow-up arrangements, many generals looked at him with admiration. They finally relaxed and regained confidence in the plan to kill the white-haired demon. Walking out of the center of the nuclear explosion, Sumu burped and absorbed all the energy of a nuclear bomb explosion. Even he was almost filled to the brim, and the energy in his body was about to overflow. If it were not possible to continuously convert energy into energy points and put them into character templates, Sumu would not be able to carry all the energy of a large-yield nuclear bomb explosion. Even so, he had the urge to explode at this moment and couldn't help but release all the energy in his body. At this time, through the long-sightedness of his 6 eyes, Sumu discovered dozens of strange-looking robots that were approaching, and the boiling power in his body suddenly had a place to display. When those robots first appeared, Sumu recognized them as sentinel robots designed to annihilate mutants. The sentry robot can detect any form of mutant abilities and instantly transform itself based on these abilities to obtain different types of mutant abilities to achieve targeted effects. However, at this point in time, the sentry robots in front of them should be far from reaching the final stage, and they should not be able to transform the X gene as they wish and obtain different mutant abilities. Sumu guessed that they should only be able to load 2 or 3 mutant abilities at the same time, which would definitely include the space attack ability against him. However, I used to be able to break through a space attack. I wonder if I can still break through after the unlimited spell is upgraded to LV3. Surveillance satellites in the sky transmitted images of the Gobi to the military base. Many generals and Colonel Stryker looked nervously at the images in front of them. If this encirclement and suppression failed again, it would mean that they would no longer be able to restrain the white-haired devil. There's a way. Suddenly, they noticed that the white-haired demon in the picture took action. Instead of running away, he rushed straight towards dozens of machines. This made many generals and Colonel Stryker extremely excited. What they were most afraid of was that the white-haired demon would escape directly or attack the sentry robot remotely. The range of action of the suppression device and space attack on the white-haired demon is very close, and there is nothing that can be done against distant enemies. If the white-haired demon really escapes directly or hides and attacks from a distance, then the sentry robot will be unable to do anything. After the white-haired demon completely entered the range of the suppression device, Colonel Stryker immediately ordered, "Activate the white-haired demon suppression device." At the same time, Sumu heard the sound of electric current coming from the sentry robot in front, and then felt that the energy in his body stagnated for a moment, and then recovered instantly. He immediately realized that this was the effect of the mutant suppression device, but unfortunately, the mutant suppression device had no effect on him at all. Using a spell to reverse song, the huge gravitational force connected him to the distant space, and he stepped across 100 meters in one step to arrive in front of a sentry robot. Putting his palm on the head of the sentry robot, a black and red singularity erupted in his palm, and the terrifying repulsion continued to spread forward. The sentry robot whose head was held down by Sumu was destroyed first, and the black singularity continued to move forward until it was destroyed. Only then did a dozen sentry robots stop. The command room in the distance fell into silence again. Stryker looked at the white-haired demon who ignored the suppression device in disbelief. The white-haired demon actually destroyed more than a dozen sentry robots with just one strike, which made him doubt for the first time whether he could successfully hunt the white-haired demon. Why did the white-haired demon completely ignore the suppression device? You know, it was a special suppression device designed for him according to his ability data. The experimenters even confirmed that this suppression device can suppress the white-haired demon for at least several hours. But what about this time? Not even a second. It has no effect at all. A strong sense of uneasiness enveloped Colonel Stryker, and he could only constantly comfort himself. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We still have space attacks. The white-haired demon can't resist space attacks and will definitely be killed by the Sentinel robot. Under his command, the Sentinel robot immediately released space attacks on the white-haired demon. The numerous space attacks were like a dense fishing net, trying to trap the white-haired demon in it, leaving him no chance to escape. Facing the many space blades flying towards him at high speed, Sumu did not show any nervousness. This attack that could threaten him in the past can no longer have any effect on him. The flying speed of the space blade was extremely fast for him in the past, but after the 6 eyes were upgraded to level 3, it could be easily captured. If Sumu wanted, he could easily avoid it. However, Sumu did not do so. After dodging most of the space blades, he came to the front of the space blade and tried to use the unlimited spell to resist the attack of the space blade. The space blade that can easily break through the LV1 unlimited spell will immediately slow down and move forward at a snail's pace after entering the range of the LV3 unlimited spell. Facing the LV3 unlimited spell, the space blade can no longer break through easily. Looking at the space blade moving at a snail's pace in the unlimited spell, Sumu came to the conclusion that it seems that the LV4 unlimited spell can be completely immune to space attacks. After the experiment, Sumu stretched out his index finger and pointed it at the space blade in front. The azure black hole the size of a ping pong ball and the black and red singularity of the same size merged in front of him, forming an illusion sphere emitting purple thunder, and then rushed forward. The purple illusion sphere instantly annihilated the space blade and continued to fly forward, annihilating all the Sentinel robots on the path ahead until it disappeared at the end of the sight. In just a moment, most of the Sentinel robots were easily destroyed by the White Devil. The Sentinel robots could not cause any damage to the White Devil. Even the space attack that Colonel Stryker had high hopes for had no effect, not to mention the other weapons loaded on it. In the projected picture, the White Devil's slaughter of the Sentinel robots continued. The White Devil was like a white ghost, traveling through the rain of bullets. Neither the space blade nor the other weapons carried by the Sentinel robots could touch him at all. The White Devil was too fast, and even the most advanced locking technology could not lock him. So most of the ammunition could not play a single role and could only be wasted. In addition, the generals present observed more details. The White Devil did not deliberately avoid the attack, nor did he use that weird space defense ability. He could now withstand the rain of bullets and be unscathed by himself. At most, he just used the purple mysterious sphere to destroy the space blade. His physique has grown to such a level, and he has mastered another new powerful mutant ability, which can penetrate space. If he can continue to use the purple sphere attack, he may be able to flatten a city in a few minutes. Don't forget that the White Devil has the mutant ability of energy absorption. If there is enough energy for him to absorb, he can definitely do it. No, the plan against the White Devil is cancelled. Even nuclear bombs can't hurt him. He has grown to the point where we can't confront him head on. Agree. Many generals expressed their opinions. Suddenly one of the generals thought of something. Quick, stop contacting the media. If the media knows that our plan has failed, it will definitely be announced. At that time, the military's credibility will drop significantly. But a signalman said to him with a bitter face, "General, we have notified all the media." Looking at the signalman in front of him, the general's face turned pale immediately. For the first time, he wanted the soldier's execution to be not too strong. The other generals also heard the signalman's words and realized what was about to happen. Those omnipresent media will definitely find out what happened in New Mexico and know that our plan against the White Devil has failed. Put pressure on the media and prohibit them from publishing any news about the White Devil. We can't block all the news. Those journalists are crazy. As soon as one general proposed, another general immediately refuted. The conference room fell into silence again. The incident still developed to the worst situation. The generals present began to regret attacking the White Devil. Colonel Stryker on the side remained silent, but clenched his fists, and his nails even pierced the skin and oozed blood. He kept screaming in his heart, repeating a name. White Devil. Obviously, he would never give up his plan against the White Devil. And if he is willing to take all the risks, then these generals will definitely support him secretly. Now that the Sentinel robot has collected more information about the White Devil, he doesn't believe that the White Devil can still deal with it when the Sentinel robot becomes more and more perfect. When all the ammunition approached Sumu, all the energy was absorbed, and they could not cause any injury to him, but instead allowed him to obtain a steady stream of energy points. Most of the attacks of the Sentinel robots had no effect on him, and only the space blades needed to be avoided. However, the 6 eyes could capture perfectly, and the virtual style could destroy the space blades, so the Sentinel robots that were enough to make most mutants were despair, just stake woodens with no resistance in Sumu's eyes. Finally, the black flash was swung, accompanied by the blooming of black and red thunder, and the last intact Sentinel robot was smashed to pieces by the terrifying force. So far, all the Sentinel robots have been destroyed. All the excess energy in the body was put into the system, and the fusion degree of the character template was increased again, and it had reached 72% at this time. The energy points for increasing the template fusion degree by 1% will be greatly increased for every 10%. After reaching 70%, the energy points required for each 1% increase in fusion degree are an astronomical number. If Sumu only relied on absorbing nearby electricity as he did at the beginning, Even if he continued to absorb it for several months, it would be difficult to increase the template fusion degree by 1%. At this time, almost all the energy of a nuclear bomb explosion was absorbed, and it only increased by 6%. In this way, even if all the energy in an arc reactor was absorbed, it would not be able to increase the system fusion degree much. However, Sumu's goal was no longer the arc reactor. His goal was the 6 infinity stones, especially the power stone as the source of energy. He must get it. In addition, there are other energies that can be plundered. Whether it is absorbing the energy of a planet like the Celestial Group, or artifacts like the Eternal Fire, they contain great power for Sumu to absorb. So he is not afraid of not having enough energy to unlock the template fusion degree. In addition, Sumu has other considerations. Since his own ability can be upgraded, if he masters the portal, can he continue to improve it? You should know that if you just master the portal, you can be teleported to any place you have been to. Among them, Ned, a good friend of Spider-Man in the movie world, can even open a portal next to a designated target. So what realm will the portal reach if it is upgraded again? Travel through time and space? Travel through latitudes it will. Even open portals to other worlds? Sumu is very much looking forward to this. Since the Marvel world exists, other worlds also have the possibility of existence. If he upgrades the portal to a certain level, he can open portals to other worlds and finally lead to the world of Jujutsu Kaisen. Then using a stronger move than Gojo Satoru to defeat Gojo Satoru is undoubtedly an extremely pleasant thing. Especially saying that classic line in front of Gojo Satoru. I am the only one in the world. It really makes my brain tremble just thinking about it. After everything was over, Thor and others in the distance began to approach. When they came to the edge of the battlefield, they saw the next scene. The smoke and dust covered the whole world, and countless huge depressions like those caused by falling meteorites were spread all over the land. A large amount of ammunition and missile debris were displayed on the sand. In the most central area, at the end of the scar on the earth caused by the purple horror sphere, in the center of the circular pit left by the nuclear explosion, the familiar yet unfamiliar white demon floated in the air 1 meter away from the bottom of the pit. He seemed to be recalling the battle just now, or thinking of something that made him happy. At this time, he was covering his forehead with his right hand, facing the sky, and slowly pulling a smile from the corner of his mouth, which then gradually expanded into a big laugh until it was unbridled. Thor and others immediately stopped and did not dare to move forward. Among them, Sif, one of the 4 warriors of Asgard, whispered, "What a dangerous guy." Everyone else nodded, fully agreeing with her words. Seeing Sol and others approaching, Sumu fell back to the ground, and then heard Sol say, "I plan to leave. There are still things in God's domain that I need to deal with." Sumu nodded, smiled, and said to Sol, "Help me thank Loki and urge him to come to Earth as soon as possible to deliver the express." Of course, Sumu knew what Thor would face when he returned this time, the invasion of the Frost Giants, and that in order to prevent Loki from destroying the country of the Frost Giants, he would personally destroy the Rainbow Bridge, making it impossible to return to Earth immediately. However, this also means that Loki is about to fall into the abyss of the universe and will meet Thanos next. He will be given the spiritual scepter by him, and he will be teleported back to Earth, where he plans to use the space cube to open the portal and prepare for the invasion of the Karitas. And the spiritual scepter is also the takeaway that Sumu has been waiting for. Although he didn't know what Sumu meant by this sentence, Sol still said, "I will." Then he said goodbye to Jane Foster and promised to come back, and then left with the 4 warriors of Asgard and the colorful light beam lowered from the Bifrost Bridge. After the light of the Rainbow Bridge completely disappeared, Sumu said to Jane Foster, "Don't forget to seek treatment from me." As soon as he finished speaking, he took a step forward and disappeared from the sight of Jane Foster and others. He will find Tony, obtain a new arc reactor, and then return a big gift to the military. The military gave them a mushroom, so it's not too much for him to give them a piece of peace, right? Leaving New Mexico, Sumu flew towards Tony Stark's beach house at high speed. After the energy upgrade reaches LV4, he can already use teleportation to transfer himself continuously without fear of injury. In addition, after the reversal technique reaches level 2, in addition to greatly speeding up the treatment speed, the brain damage caused by long-term brain use can also be continuously treated, so that Sumu can maintain the unlimited technique for a long time. Moreover, LV3's no lower limit spell can already initially identify dangers. Objects that are not a threat to him will not be affected by the no lower limit spell, while threatening objects will be excluded. It's late afternoon, and the seaside villas are brightly lit at night. The party hosted by Tony Stark, the richest man in the world, was gorgeous and extravagant. A large number of hot-figured ladies only wore sporadic fabrics to cover their vital parts. They constantly showed themselves at the party, hoping to attract the attention of the protagonist. The interweaving of lights, beauties, and drinks makes the entire seaside villa filled with a strong hormonal atmosphere. At this time, the seaside villa is undoubtedly a paradise for any man. Tony Stark was obviously drunk in the center of the dance. He had just peed in his steel armor and had an argument with Pepper Potts. Later, he used weapons on the steel armor and threw them into the sky at the invited ladies. Drinks shot as entertainment. Just then, a voice broke the lively atmosphere of the party. Colonel Rhodes came out wearing another steel suit and yelled at everyone in the team, "I only say this once, get out." The banquet immediately fell silent. The lively atmosphere disappeared immediately, and everyone looked at Rhodes. Just when Rhodes thought everyone was about to leave, he suddenly realized something was wrong. Did the people in front react a little too fiercely, as if they might die at any time? But he won't kill them. Suddenly, Rhodes realized that those people were not looking at him, but behind him. The unconscious trembling and fear in his body were also caused by someone behind him. Rhodes realized something immediately, but before he could turn around, a palm with slender fingers and clear bones pressed on his shoulder. This palm contained terrifying power. Even though he was wearing steel armor at this time, he was still overwhelmed by the huge force and could only kneel on one knee to resist the huge pressure. And the hard ground under his knees was also unable to withstand the huge pressure, and cracks slowly appeared. Until then, he finally heard a demonic whisper from behind. "Colonel Rhodes, how can the party stop? You don't want to make me angry, right?" Rhodes suddenly felt his body stiffen and turned his head one by one. Then he saw the handsome man with white hair and blue eyes put his hand on his shoulder and smiled at him, but the bright smile contained the ultimate malice. Colonel Rhodes immediately said from his heart, "I don't think the party should end either." The white-haired demon smiled with satisfaction, then walked forward, came to Tony Stark's side, and shouted to the many hot beauties in front of him, "Don't stop, keep playing music and keep dancing." The hot beauties, whose spirits had been eroded by alcohol, immediately put aside their fear of the white-haired devil and cheered loudly. The lights continued to flash, and the screams grew louder. In addition to the energy attacks from the steel armor, there were also azure black holes and terrifying black-red singularities. Of course, the skills are all under Sumu's control and will not cause any damage to the surroundings. Tonight is undoubtedly a wonderful night. When Sumu woke up, it was already the next morning. He got up, dressed, stepped over a dozen naked bodies lying on the bed or on the floor, and walked out of the room to the lobby of the beach villa. Even though Sumu had the reversal technique, he felt a little overwhelmed when dealing with a dozen hungry girls at once. When he walked into the living room, he found Tony was already waiting there, and some images were projected in front of him, which were the nuclear explosion in New Mexico and the white-haired man who walked out of the nuclear explosion. Hearing footsteps from the side, Tony turned his head and saw the white-haired man yawning, and his eyes were full of horror. Seeing this, Sumu teased, "What's wrong? Don't look at me like that. My sexual orientation is normal." However, compared to Sumu, Tony didn't have the leisure time. He looked at Sumu in disbelief and asked a question that shocked him. "Were you really hit by a nuclear bomb head-on and walked out of it intact?" Sumu looked at the projection in front of Tony and grinned. "Of course, it's very simple." "Simple? How did you do it?" "Tony, don't be surprised. In addition to me, there are many people who can do it, such as the Supreme Sorcerer of Kamartaj." "Supreme Sorcerer, who is that?" Just as Tony was about to continue asking, a spark suddenly flashed in front of the two of them, and a circular portal that kept sputtering sparks slowly formed. Finally, a bald woman with a kind face walked out of the portal. When the bald woman walked out of the portal, even though her appearance was different from that in the movie universe, Sumu still recognized her identity. Supreme Sorcerer. The moment he saw the Supreme Sorcerer, Sumu's muscles tightened, and he used all his strength to strengthen his whole body with his mantra and energy. He was highly focused, and his 6 eyes were running at the limit, reaching his peak state. Facing a fodder-level strongman, even the current Sumu dared not relax at all. Tony looked at the bald woman in front of him, and then carefully observed the portal behind her. He suddenly felt that since he openly admitted that he was Iron Man, the whole world had gradually become unfamiliar. First, there was the white-haired demon, then the Thor who descended on New Mexico, and the legendary Asgard. At this time, a bald woman in yellow opened the portal and broke into his home. Pretending to take the wine, Tony hid behind Sumu, then picked up the bottle and poured it into 2 cups, handed 1 cup to Sumu and kept the other for himself, and said to the bald woman in front of him, "Well, who are you? How did you achieve the light circle behind you? Mutant ability, some kind of technology, or other superpowers?" The Ancient One, who had set his sights on Sumu as soon as he appeared, finally moved his sight away from him and set his sights on Tony. Hearing Tony's question, the Ancient One smiled mysteriously and said calmly and gently, "This is magic." Okay, magic. Tony immediately believed the Ancient One's words. Since he knew that even the mythical Asgard really existed, it was normal for magic to exist. So, this wizard, why are you here? The correct term should be mystic wizard. Gu-E first pointed out the mistake in Tony's words, then turned his eyes back to Sumu, and then said, "I'm looking for this gentleman." Tony drank the precious red wine in the glass and spread his hands and said, "I knew it." Seeing the Supreme Mage mentioning himself, Sumu couldn't remain indifferent. He showed a bright and genuine kind smile and said to the Supreme Mage, "Respected Supreme Mage, what do you want to talk to me about?" Seeing Sumu's performance, Tony on the side was extremely incredible, especially seeing that the smile that always carried thick malice could be so bright, which made him feel a little uncomfortable. The next moment Tony immediately caught the name mentioned by Sumu, the Supreme Mage. Could it be that the bald woman in front of him was the Supreme Mage who could also withstand nuclear bombs? Faced with 2 monsters who could withstand nuclear bombs, Tony felt uneasy. It seems that in addition to the white-haired demon armor, the Supreme Mage armor should also be put on the agenda. The Supreme Mage standing opposite Sumu heard Sumu's words and smiled at him. "I want you to be the new Supreme Mage, and I can teach you everything I know, as long as you are willing to help me protect the Earth before the next Supreme Mage appears." Sumu was stunned. He didn't expect that the Supreme Mage actually wanted him to become the Supreme Mage. Did he want to retire early? This thought came to his mind, and Sumu refused immediately without thinking. "Sorry, I don't plan to become the Supreme Mage." He didn't plan to become the Supreme Mage and protect the Earth. With this time, he constantly absorbed energy and unlocked more character templates. He had already surpassed the Supreme Mage and became a powerful existence that he couldn't compare to. The Supreme Mage was not surprised. She already knew the result. She just wanted to try it. Her main purpose was not these. The Supreme Mage took out a strange ring with 2 holes and controlled it to float towards Sumu. "You seem to have the ability to increase your ability limit. If you can master the portal, you may be able to travel through latitudes at will in the future." Looking at the ring in his hand, Sumu was a little surprised. He didn't expect to get the ring so easily. He asked the Supreme Mage, "What price do you need to pay for it?" The Supreme Mage shook his head. "You don't have to pay any price, but I suggest that you can travel to the parallel universe as soon as possible in the future. After all, the world is so big, you should go and see it." Sumu's mouth twitched. Although his tone was euphemistic, he certainly heard the Supreme Mage's subtext. I don't ask you too much. Just spare this universe and do more harm to other parallel universes." But this just fits his idea. He has too many things he wants to witness, such as the extermination of the Zerg, the crazy attack event, the loss of the universe, the Infinity War, etc. The greatest charm of the Marvel world is the infinite possibilities in the infinite parallel universes. He can't be bound by a parallel universe. Seeing that Sumu accepted the ring and completed the purpose of this trip, the Supreme Sorcerer wanted to leave, but was stopped by Sumu. "Supreme Sorcerer, what do you think of Tony as the Supreme Sorcerer? With his brain, he can easily do it." Tony Stark didn't expect Sumu to suddenly mention him and actually wanted him to become the Supreme Sorcerer. Now even Tony was a little at a loss, pointing at himself and said, "Me?" Sumu pushed Tony in front of the Supreme Sorcerer and then said to him, "Don't you think that the collision of technology and magic can bloom more brilliant sparks?" Tony thought seriously and nodded. It is almost difficult to deal with a terrifying existence like Sumu with the power of technology alone, and it takes time to climb the technology tree, so it is difficult to get more powerful power immediately. So at this time, learning from magic and combining it with technology may be a new way out. At the same time, the Supreme Sorcerer looked at Tony Stark, the genius and playboy in the eyes of the world, but her eyes were empty, as if she was not looking at Tony in front of her, but at the future under the long river of time. After a while, the Supreme Sorcerer smiled. "This gentleman will be an excellent Supreme Sorcerer." Sumu smiled, and he knew that the Supreme Sorcerer agreed. After Sumu's proposal, Tony left with the Supreme Sorcerer and went to Kamartaj to learn magic. Sumu was very confident that Tony could learn magic. After all, he was the Supreme Sorcerer in a certain universe, and the Supreme Sorcerer did not reject this proposal, which also meant that Tony should be very talented. Carrying a backpack, Sumu paced in the air and flew straight to Washington. There are 10 arc reactors in the bag, enough for Sumu to use temporarily. When the energy of these arc reactors is exhausted, he must have obtained the Infinity Stones. With level 4 energy absorption, Sumu's speed has exceeded Mach 10. It only takes more than 10 minutes to fly from Black Coast, San Diego, California to Washington, and his destination is the White House, the political center of the United States. In order to thank the military for the gift, he returned the gift. But when he approached the White House, he found that the White House had already fallen into chaos. In the square in front of the White House, 2 groups of people were confronting each other. They were holding banners to convey their ideas. Some of them shouted, "Incompetent officials, you are wasting taxpayers' money. The plan to kill the White Devil must be re-implemented. The White Devil is the greatest threat to mankind." Against the Mutant Liberation Treaty. Contrary to this group of people, another group of people retorted, "Free the mutants. Mutants are no different from humans. They are also part of the human race. No need to make boring sacrifices. We can't be the opponent of the White Devil. The White Devil is now able to withstand nuclear bombs and will be even stronger in the future. He is an angel who has descended to Earth and a living god. If we continue to target the White Devil, it will be the real path to destruction." To Sumu's surprise, most of the people who supported the treaty for the liberation of mutants had white hair on their heads and wore the same white coat he was wearing when he was first reported. Several of the people who played him looked exactly like him, with almost identical hairstyles, heights, and body shapes, and even the pupils wore bright blue contact lenses. If 6 Eyes hadn't been able to detect the slight difference, Sumu would have thought that an unknown force had created a copy of him. Moreover, through the perception of the 6 Eyes, many mutants who supported the treaty for the liberation of mutants were mixed in. According to the energy vision, Sumu even found Mystique among several people who looked like him and other people in the periphery. Member of the X-Men. What's going on? Isn't Mystique a member of the Brotherhood of Mutants? Why did you join the X-Men again at this time? Could it be that she was tricked by Professor X again? The more Sumu thought about it, the more likely it seemed that Mystique did not hate humans like Magneto. She was just disappointed in humans and believed that humans' promises were not trustworthy, so she joined the Brotherhood of Mutants. It seems that at this time, the government was afraid of his revenge and wanted to promulgate a treaty to liberate mutants, so it rejoined the X-Men. But what are these imitators? Sumu didn't think her image outside was very good, but she had so many supporters at this time. So he directly asked a lady in front who also cosplayed as a White Devil, "Why do you cosplay the White Devil and support the treaty of the liberation of mutants?" The girl turned around and her eyes lit up. The gentleman in front of her was the cosplayer closest to the White Devil she had ever seen. Even his temperament was almost exactly the same. As for the gentleman in front of her being the White Devil, she had never considered this aspect at all, because of Su Mu's handsome appearance. Although his question was a bit strange, the lady still answered. Of course it's because the White Devil is handsome. The young lady's other companions also noticed what was going on here. Their faces lit up when they saw Su Mu, and they immediately surrounded him. They also heard Su Mu's question just now, and they answered his question while rubbing their fair skin against his body. The White Devil is handsome. He is very charming. That's right, that's right. Su Mu had black lines all over her head, which fit the idea of a nymphomaniac. He calmly used unlimited techniques to push aside the nymphomaniacs around him who wanted to take advantage of him, and continued to ask, is there no other reason? At this time, a young man with acne was enviously watching Su Mu being surrounded by many hot girls. When he heard Su Mu's question, he interrupted and analyzed. Of course there are other reasons. Now that the White Devil can survive the explosion of a nuclear bomb, humans have no way to eliminate him. If nothing else happens, the future world will be ruled by white demons. And when the White Devil rules the world, his character will definitely clean up those previous opponents and those who once attacked him. We support the White Devil in advance so that we can survive the liquidation. Hearing the young man's words, Su Mu was speechless. Why didn't he know that he wanted to rule the world? He has no such leisure. But he didn't explain. He just nodded and smiled and walked forward. Ignoring the requests of several girls behind him to add their contact information, he walked straight through the crowd and headed towards the entrance of the White House. As he moved forward, the girls behind him stopped talking for some time, and the noisy arguments around him gradually disappeared. It only took a few seconds for the surroundings to go from noisy to silent. The unlimited technique slowly opened, and the dense crowd around him was pushed away, unable to get close to him. Some of the people who were pushed away wanted to turn around and yell, but before they could start, they were knocked away by the terrifying repulsion and knocked down a group of innocent marchers. More and more people around him noticed this unusual white-haired man. His location immediately changed from a remote corner to the center of the line of sight, attracting countless eyes. The bodies of the girls who communicated with Su Mu at the beginning were trembling continuously, looking at the scene in front of them. They didn't know whether they were excited or scared. Among them, the girl who was questioned by Su Mu had a dull look on her face. She could only mutter to herself because she was too excited. He's really the White Devil. He's really the White Devil. At the junction of the two groups, several leaders of the organization saw this scene and immediately stopped communicating. Whether they support the White Devil and want to get a glimmer of hope in the subsequent purge, or oppose the Treaty of Liberation of Mutants and want to kill the demon immediately and eliminate the threat, they dare not speak again. Just like Yi Gonghailong, when the White Devil had not appeared in front of them, they communicated freely. Whether they supported or opposed, they were fearless. But when the White Devil appeared in front of them, they no longer had any courage, for fear of attracting the White Devil's attention. There was even a dark color under the crotch of the leader of the opponents that continued to expand until an unknown liquid dripped onto the ground. But fortunately, the White Devil did not pay attention to any of them, but walked to the front of the White House, facing the fully armed soldiers who had assembled at an unknown time, and dozens of Sentinel robots. He slowly floated up, stood in the void, and laughed sarcastically, looking down at everything in front of him, looking down at the political center of this country, looking down at the supporters behind him, whether they supported or opposed. He was about to say something, but suddenly nodded his forehead, then smiled apologetically. Sorry, wait a minute, I forgot something. The next moment, he suddenly disappeared and appeared in front of the leader of the opposition. Then, under the gaze of all the other marchers, under the loud stop of the X-Men who kept rushing over, he stretched out his hand in front of the leader of the opposition, in front of the trembling body of the leader of the opposition. So, the terrifying repulsive force burst out with black lightning, destroying everything in front. First, the body of the leader of the opposition was shattered in vain and turned into powder, followed by everything behind him. All the voices of opposition, all the different words, slowly dissipated with the red mist. Just as Su Mu said to Professor X at the beginning, the existence of different voices is only because the strength is not strong enough. After solving everything, Su Mu used repulsion to splash the blood floating around, dyeing the surrounding large area red, as well as the faces of the supporters and the X-Men who came. Su Mu ignored the screams of fear and the loud questions of the X-Men behind him, and did not care about the lingering blood behind him. Instead, he returned to his original position again, still floating in the air, and grinned towards the front against the background like hell. Sorry to have kept you waiting, My Excellency the President. Under the terrifying repulsion, not even a piece of flesh and blood was left on the mortal body. A large area of blood lingered in front of the White House like mist, emitting a pungent smell of blood that could not be dissipated for a long time. The original supporters screamed when they saw the scene in front of them, and some even fainted to the ground out of fear. Against this background, the White Devil stood in the air, ignoring the soldiers in front, and declared to the president inside the White House. The White Devil is here. Many soldiers were waiting in formation, looking seriously at the godlike White Devil standing in the void in front of them. Although they were fully armed, they had no sense of security at all, and had never thought of defeating the White Devil. Whether it was the terrifying repulsion that wiped out everything with just one casual blow, or any of the previous glorious achievements, it showed that the White Devil was not an existence they could fight against. The bodies of some soldiers also trembled slightly. Even though they had been on the battlefield and had seen hell on earth, they had never seen the scene in front of them. The white demon in the vast blood mist stood in the air. The breeze mixed with the thick smell of blood swept towards them with the purest malice, trying to drown them all. If it continues, I believe that these well-trained soldiers will most likely escape. They are also human beings and are also afraid of death, especially when facing the invincible enemy in front of them in the next battle that is impossible to win. The president in the White House also noticed the arrival of the White Devil, and he immediately realized something. The White Devil is coming. He is definitely seeking revenge for the military's attack on him some time ago. Damn it, what should I do? The president did not escape, because according to intelligence, the White Devil has a flying speed of more than Mach 10, extremely long-range attack capabilities, and a wide range of perception capabilities. When the White Devil appeared, it had already locked onto him. As long as he dared to escape, the only thing that would greet him was death. Suddenly, the president thought of something, and immediately said to the bewildered assistant, "Notify the X-Men and ask them to stop the White Devil. Otherwise, once I am killed by the White Devil, the Treaty of Liberation of Mutants will never be promulgated." Even if they didn't receive a warning from the president, there was absolutely no way the X-Men would let the White Devil do whatever he wanted. But when they wanted to stop it, it was already too late. Black thunder erupted, blood filled the surrounding area, and the surrounding area instantly became a hell on earth. Professor X looked at the scene in the distance, and his heart immediately sank. This time the White Devil killed hundreds of civilians. Even if it is handled properly afterwards, it may be difficult for the Mutant Liberation Treaty to be promulgated. Looking at the White Devil provoking the White House, the president, the entire US government, and officials, Professor, the White Devil must not be allowed to kill the president. Otherwise the gap between mutants and humans will never be eliminated, and they will only be in constant confrontation. Hearing Professor X's words, many X-Men rushed towards the White Devil. Among them, Storm flew directly in the air and asked the White Devil, "Why are you doing this? Do you know that this will make the relationship between mutants and humans even more tense?" The White Devil ignored. Then Cyclops arrived, and he also asked the White Demon, "Why? You are also a mutant, but you want to obstruct the promulgation of the treaty to liberate mutants." the white devil ignored him. Mystique walked out of the crowd and changed into her original appearance. She shouted hatefully at the white demon in the sky. You have ruined our decades of hard work. You have ruined the future of countless mutants. You are unpardonable. But the white devil still didn't answer, just looked ahead indifferently, ignoring her anger, not caring about the future of mutants, just standing high in the sky. Cyclops could no longer bear the white devil's aloof attitude. He took off his glasses, and the hot beams from different latitudes used his eyes as a gateway to vent infinitely outward. At the same time, Storm also activated her ability. Strong winds blew around her. The sky immediately became gloomy. Violent thunder fell from the sky and attacked the white demon. However, even in the face of these attacks, the white devil still did not react at all and allowed these attacks to fall on him. Seeing this scene, Cyclops' face showed excitement. Unexpectedly, the white devil was so confident that he completely ignored their attacks. Now the originally slim chance of winning would be greatly improved. Facing the almost impossible white devil to defeat, they finally have a good chance of winning. He immediately increased the output of a laser beam, trying to seriously injure the white demon at once, and Storm did the same. But completely opposite to them, when Professor X in the distance saw this scene, Fifin did not relax, but became more solemn, because he thought of the white devil's ability to grow infinitely, and its mutant abilities that were almost exactly the same as the previous terrifying enemy. Could it be? The next moment, the laser beam and the violent lightning hit the white devil. Then under the shocked eyes of some people, the white devil who was hit did not suffer any damage. Whether it was a violent thunder or a scorching laser, after approaching the white demon for a few meters, it dimmed visibly to the naked eye, and finally submerged into the white demon's body. All this energy was absorbed by the white devil. Professor X in the distance finally confirmed his guess. The mutant ability absorbed by the energy of the white demon has also been transformed. At this time, it has evolved to a level comparable to the Black Emperor, or even more powerful than the Black Emperor. Sumu ignored the attack behind him. After all, although the energy of the two power banks is small, it cannot be wasted. He took a step forward, and the violent repulsion spread rapidly from his body to the front, first to the lawn, then the fountain, the floor, the soil, and finally to the fully armed soldiers. The next moment, accompanied by a huge roar, the dust and grass fragments intertwined, accompanied by the vast blood color, dissipated in the wind stirred by the terrifying repulsion. No. Seeing this scene, Cyclops was emotional. Because of his out-of-control emotions, his mutant ability was several times stronger, but the laser beam, which was several times thicker, could only replenish the energy of the white demon, and still could not hurt him at all. The X-Men faced the white demon, just like ordinary people face them, weak and powerless. This is the essential difference. At this moment, Sumu suddenly felt a strong energy rising from behind him. That energy was both destructive and vital. It was clearly broken, but still majestic. He felt that the power ignored the energy absorption and directly decomposed his body. Although the decomposition speed was too slow and could not pose any threat to him, it still attracted the interest of the devil. He finally turned around slowly and looked at the Phoenix girl in the distance whose eyes were gradually turning red, and smiled brightly. I give you face. Professor X looked at the scene in front of him with a serious face. Even the attacks of Cyclops and Storm had no effect on the white devil. Instead, they continuously provided him with energy. Now only one of them could stop the white devil. Entering the consciousness of Phoenix Girl through telepathy, Professor X said to Phoenix Girl, Jean, release your power. Don't be afraid of it. Use your power to defeat the white devil. Phoenix Girl's eyes gradually turned red, and her body slowly floated up. The Phoenix Force from the original universe gradually revived in her body, which could decompose everything. The flame representing life and emotion burned from her body. The surrounding matter was affected by the Phoenix Force and immediately dissipated quickly. The powerful force from the Phoenix Force could decompose any matter. Even the powerful white devil was no exception, and his body was also decomposing. This time, the white devil who ignored everything finally couldn't ignore it, and looked at Phoenix Girl. Seeing this scene, the X-Men and others gained confidence. Just like Apocalypse in the past, the white devil would also turn into ashes in front of Jean. Sumu turned around and saw Jean Grey, whose Phoenix power was gradually awakening. It was obvious that the energy absorption of level 4 was not enough to resist the ability of the Phoenix power to decompose matter. His body was slowly dissipating, and as time passed, the speed of dissipation was still accelerating. However, Sumu was not worried. He smiled brightly at Jean Grey, then pointed his index finger at Jean Grey. The terrifying black and red singularity formed in an instant and flew towards Jean Grey in an instant. The black and red singularity tore through everything along the way and rushed towards Jean Grey with an unstoppable momentum. Faced with such a powerful attack, Phoenix Girl could no longer care about Sumu, but hit all her strength on the black and red singularity in front. The black and red singularity comparable to a small supernova began to dissipate rapidly and disappeared before it approached her. Seeing this scene, the X-Men and others gained confidence, but the next moment, the smiles on their faces immediately stopped. At the moment when the black and red singularity just disappeared, the white demon disappeared from the spot without knowing when, appeared in front of Jean, and then suddenly punched out. Boom. Black and red lightning exploded between the two, and the telekinesis from the Phoenix Force collided with the black flash, and the ground immediately shattered. The huge aftermath caused the ground to sink rapidly, and finally formed a huge deep pit. Such a terrifying power. Even Professor X in the distance was affected, but with the figure passing quickly, everyone was transported to a distance. Quicksilver rushed over with other X-Men and placed Professor X, Storm, and Cyclops in a safe place. Then he put down his goggles and looked at the two people fighting in the distance and exclaimed, "Holy shit." Sumu was not surprised that the Black Flash was stopped once. If he couldn't stop the Black Flash, then it wouldn't be the Phoenix Force. And the reason why he used the Black Flash was just to put himself in the zone state. After entering the zone state, whether it is energy, spell power, or body coordination, it is maximized, reaching the original 120% state. Once again, the Black Flash hit the telekinetic shield of Phoenix Girl. The amplified Black Flash is no longer something that Phoenix Girl, who is not yet fully awakened, can resist. As if the harsh sound of glass breaking suddenly sounded, the telekinetic shield was cracked by the Black Flash. And then Sumu changed his fist into a palm, and the black singularity was quickly generated in his palm. The black-red singularity comparable to a small supernova instantly shattered the telekinetic shield and rushed towards Phoenix Girl. Facing such a close-range attack from the black-red singularity, Phoenix Girl could not completely decompose the black-red singularity at all, and was about to be hit by the black-red singularity. At this moment, Wolverine used the laser of Cyclops and the storm of Storm Girl as a boost to accelerate himself and quickly block Phoenix Girl. He wanted to help Phoenix Girl resist the damage caused by the black-red singularity, but even with the adamantium alloy, he couldn't resist the black and red singularity that had shrunk by half. He was instantly knocked out and hit Phoenix behind him. Then, with the sound of broken bones, he broke through layers of houses and disappeared into layers of ruins. No, Cyclops roared. Why did he fall into such a state in an instant when he was on the verge of victory just now? Even with Wolverine as a shield, Phoenix, a mortal body, would find it difficult to survive such a terrifying attack. He tried his best to use a huge and thick laser beam that was far more powerful than usual, but it was also useless. After approaching the white demon, the laser beam was completely absorbed by it. Looking at the many X-Men in front of him, Sumu's face became more and more happy. Then he stretched out his palm and pointed forward, thinking of an anime move that he liked very much in his previous life. Shinra Tensei. The technique was reversed, and he was overloaded again. Accompanied by the black and red lightning that was surging everywhere due to instability, the unprecedented terrifying repulsive force spread rapidly from Sumu to the distance. All matter was annihilated by the terrifying repulsive force. In the blink of an eye, there was only a ruin thousands of meters away. Even Sumu felt a little pressure from this attack. The energy in his body was consumed by half. 5 arc reactors flew out of his backpack and flew slowly around him. A large amount of energy was absorbed by him, and the energy in his body was quickly restored. Ignoring the X-Men who didn't know whether to live or die in the distance, Sumu slowly walked towards his goal. He casually dealt with dozens of first-generation Sentinel robots, put his hands in his pockets, and walked towards the interior of the White House without panic. During the process of moving forward, he felt different spying sights more than once, smiled brightly in the familiar spying direction from the surveillance satellite, and then continued to move forward. The White House was damaged by the battle, and even the poor president was crushed by the rocks. Seeing Sumu coming, the poor president immediately showed a look of horror and begged for mercy. "No, don't kill me. The plan to attack you is not something I can stop." Sumu did not answer, but came to the president who was crushed by the rocks, looked at him, and said, "Tell me the location of other senior military officials." Hearing Sumu's words, the president immediately knew his purpose and explained immediately, "I don't know. After you walked out of the nuclear bomb explosion, they concealed their whereabouts. Even I don't know their location." Fisk, it's really disappointing. Sumu continued to ask. "Then you should know their appearance and other information besides their location?" I know. The president, who wanted to get a glimmer of hope, immediately told Sumu the location of all the generals' information, and Sumu got the information of those generals in a moment. Seeing the smile on the White Devil's face, the president mustered up the courage and said carefully, "Can you let me go?" The White Devil did not reply to him, just gave him a smile, and then stepped out and disappeared in the almost ruined White House. Seeing the White Devil disappear, the president breathed a sigh of relief and said slowly, "Finally I survived." But before he finished speaking, a terrifying purple imaginary sphere fell from the sky with dazzling thunder. In an instant, the White House completely disappeared, leaving only a huge circular pit with no bottom. The falling purple illusion sphere penetrated the space and annihilated the entire White House. The political center of the United States, one of the national symbols, and the iconic building with hundreds of years of history disappeared in an instant, leaving no trace except for the bottomless pit. After the incident just happened, all the senior military officials got the news. They were in a hidden military base, watching the footage taken by the surveillance satellite. From the moment the White Devil appeared, to the terrifying blood color that lingered in the entire White House for a long time, to the fight between the White Devil and the X-Men, the terrifying aftermath of the battle, and the terrifying repulsion that destroyed thousands of meters of area. Until the end, the White Devil raised his middle finger to the sky with a sneer, and casually solved dozens of Sentinel robots, entered the White House, killed the president, and used the terrifying purple illusion sphere to destroy the White House with hundreds of years of history. They are undoubtedly angry. This is a provocation to the entire United States. But they are more afraid. Now the White Devil can survive intact under the nuclear bomb, and they no longer have the means to kill the White Devil. Especially now that the White Devil has launched a revenge and obtained their information from the incompetent president, coupled with the White Devil's extraordinary reconnaissance ability, as long as they are willing to spend time, they will definitely be able to find them one by one and kill them. No, the plan against the White Devil must be started again. We have been fighting him to the death, and he will not let us go. In the internal meeting of these generals again, a general said with fear. Another general looked equally terrified. He recalled the unprecedented tragedy that happened in the White House, and recalled the surveillance satellite standing on the ground looking up at the sky, but it seemed that the White Devil was looking down at them, and even his soul was constantly trembling. We must fully support Colonel Stryker's research. He has a deep research on mutants, especially the Sentinel robots that can have multiple mutant abilities. There is definitely a huge room for development. It is not impossible to compete with the White Devil in the future, but in the previous battle, it has been proved that the Sentinel robots are not the opponents of the White Devil. Another general said with a sad look and no confidence. The general who wanted to support Stryker immediately retorted, "No, today's Sentinel robots are only the initial stage, and the final stage of the Sentinel plan is that the Sentinel robots can copy the abilities of mutants, store these abilities, and pass them to all other Sentinel robots. And they can use different mutant abilities to target mutants according to their abilities." But other generals are still not optimistic. But the White Devil's strength is no longer something that can be defeated by numbers. His mutant abilities are almost not rigid. Whether it is long range or close combat, whether it is attacking or saving lives, they have reached the peak of mutants. Even if the Sentinel robots collect all the mutant abilities in the world, even if there are more Sentinel robots, they cannot pose a threat to the White Devil. Threat, just repulsion attack is enough to easily destroy them. No, the general retorted. The Sentinel project has a final idea. That is, the Sentinel robot can increase the upper limit of mutant ability. If we can increase the upper limit of space attack, we can break the unsolvable defense of the White Devil. If we can increase the upper limit of the steel body ability, we will not be afraid of the attack of the White Devil. And we found an extremely special ability person. His mutant ability is to erase all the mutant abilities around him. Even if this ability cannot affect the White Devil now, as long as its limit is increased, it will definitely work on the White Devil. But this is just an idea. It is almost impossible to achieve this level with our technology. Other generals retorted. The general who proposed to support Colonel Stryker smiled mysteriously, then clapped his hands, and two people walked into the meeting room from outside the door. One of the two people was a man with tattoos all over his body, looking like a local hooligan, and the other looked very weird, with a weird green skin and a head several times larger than that of an ordinary person. The first one was familiar to many generals. He was the terrorist who attacked Tony Stark in a car race some time ago. His name seemed to be Ivan Vanko. They didn't know the other one. Seeing the other generals looking at him with questioning eyes, the general who supported Colonel Stryker smiled confidently. "Believe me, Dr. Sten and Dr. Vanko will never let you down." Outside the door, Colonel Stryker ordered the Fantasy Master to end his control over the generals. A sinister smile appeared on his face. "White Devil, please look forward to it." In the hidden laboratory of Xavier's School for Gifted Youth, Jean Grey was using the initial Phoenix Force to repair Cyclops' body. In the battle with the White Devil, she was easily defeated by the White Devil. After being blown away by the terrifying black and red singularity, she was about to die, but she mastered part of the Phoenix Force at a critical moment and survived. Later, Quicksilver rescued all of them, but even with Quicksilver's speed, he couldn't take them out intact. Except for Wolverine, who has a self-healing factor and an adamantium skeleton and is intact, everyone else was seriously injured to varying degrees. Among them, most of Cyclops' body was destroyed by the terrifying repulsive force. If Jean Grey hadn't used the Phoenix Force to repair his body immediately, Cyclops would have died by now. Others also lost some limbs, but they recovered quickly under the Phoenix Force. Professor X's lower body was restored using the material reorganization ability, and the X-Men and others were all recovered. But even so, they still didn't feel happy. The whole laboratory was filled with a heavy atmosphere. The White Devil was like a gloomy sky, pressing on the X-Men, making them unable to breathe. Cyclops suddenly punched the wall at the side. As he collided with the wall, red blood slowly flowed down the pure white wall. Shockwave is dead, Darwin is dead, and a large number of civilians are dead. The treaty to liberate mutants will never be promulgated. All our previous efforts were in vain. Our dream is like a joke in front of the White Devil. Kill him, we must kill him. This time, even Professor X did not come out to stop them. They were full of hatred for the White Devil at this time. The White Devil was not only their enemy, but also a huge stumbling block for the peaceful coexistence of mutants and humans. But they fell silent immediately. With the power of the White Devil, how could they kill him? Everyone looked at Jean Grey. At this time, she had mastered part of the Phoenix Force, and it was absolutely possible for her to fully master the Phoenix Force in her body, and it was very likely that she would obtain more fragments of the Phoenix Force. This was their only hope. Tens of thousands of meters in the sky, inside a huge aircraft carrier, Nick Fury looked at the picture sent by the surveillance satellite in front of him, his eyes deep. Coulson was beside him, reporting to Nick Fury about the disappearance of the White House. The white-haired demon first killed hundreds of opponents, then killed dozens of soldiers, and then killed tens of thousands of civilians in the battle with the X-Men, and finally destroyed the White House. The white-haired demon is definitely not suitable to be an Avenger. All previous plans for the white-haired demon have been cancelled. There is no law in his eyes. He does whatever he wants. He is the biggest threat to the Earth now. After listening to Coulson's report, Nick Fury made the following conclusion. Coulson naturally knew this problem, but now S.H.I.E.L.D. has no way to deal with the white-haired demon. Just when Nick Fury wanted to take out the pager he carried with him and call Captain Marvel, he suddenly heard Coulson say, "Aren't there still the legendary Eternals protecting humans on Earth? If it was before, it would be fine, but now the white-haired demon is killing tens of thousands of people at a time. Those Eternals who take it as their mission to protect humans will definitely not sit idly by. We can use them to deal with the white-haired demon." The existence of the Eternals has been recorded in the database of S.H.I.E.L.D. Nick Fury is also afraid of this group of superhumans with extremely strong superpowers. Because he doesn't believe that these Eternals are simply protecting humans, they must have other secrets. However, if the Eternals and the white-haired demon clash, it will undoubtedly be 100 benefits and no harm. So Nick Fury cast an admiring look at Coulson and said to him, "Find a way to tell the Eternals what the white-haired demon did, attract their attention, and lure them to attack the white-haired demon." At the same time, in another office of the space carrier, Alexander Pierce stared at the unscrupulous and powerful demon in his sight, his eyes shining. He thought this was an opportunity. Hydra and the unscrupulous white-haired demon were a perfect match, so he secretly sent a message to try to contact the white-haired demon and win him over. Turning the White House into history and erasing it from the map, Sumu came to live in Tony Stark's luxurious seaside apartment and continued to practice his skills. Now that such a big commotion has been made, it must be that the relationship with S.H.I.E.L.D. has been broken, and it is impossible to know the specific location of the space cube, so that he can't forcibly seize the space cube for the time being. Now he can only wait for Loki to come and deliver the express. At this time, Tony went to study with the Supreme Sorcerer, and he didn't know when he would come back, so the seaside villa was empty and no one lived in it. So he occupied the Magpie's nest and lived here. During this time, he had no free time. While constantly absorbing the energy of the arc reactor, he was also practicing the unlimited spell and trying to master the portal. However, his talent in the field of magic was obviously not as good as that of Doctor Strange. Even with the blessing of 6 eyes and energy absorption, he still could not master the portal. However, at this time, he could already draw sparks, and he must be close to fully mastering the portal. As for the unlimited spell, the reason why he focused on practicing this skill was that he found that the advanced unlimited spell could control space and even create a pocket space. Sumu now needs to use a backpack to carry 10 arc reactors, so the pocket space is quite necessary for him. Not only because it would be convenient to have a pocket space, but also because he is too uncool now. As a handsome and elegant white-haired demon, carrying a backpack during battle affects his appearance too much. Not elegant at all. The unlimited technique continued to open, controlling the 5 arc reactors to slowly move around Sumu, and the system kept sending the sound of upgrading. Energy point +1, energy point +1, energy point +1, unlimited technique experience +1, unlimited technique experience +1, unlimited technique experience +1. Finally, after continuous practice, the system sent a different sound of upgrading. Unlimited technique experience +1. Congratulations, your skill unlimited technique has been upgraded. Unlimited technique LV4. March 50-100 interfere with atomic level matter, dominate space. The closer the object is to the user, the slower it will be, and it will never touch the user, and it has partial control over space. A large amount of memories came from his mind. Under the amplification of the 6 eyes, Sumu continued to absorb these memories and completely consume them. At the same time, he continued to use the reversal technique to repair the brain damaged by excessive brain use. After a moment, Sumu absorbed all the memories, and he immediately discovered the difference of the unlimited technique. The system's description of the unlimited technique has changed, with an additional explanation of partial control over space. As for the performance of the skill effect, first, the range of the unlimited technique has increased from the original 50 centimeters to the current distance of about 5 meters, which has expanded tenfold. Then the unlimited technique has a more absolute control over space. Within this 5-meter range, in addition to the original ability, Sumu can also control space to undergo a variety of changes. These include instant movement, space creation, space slashing, space folding, etc. At this time, his unlimited technique has completely surpassed Gojo Satoru and reached a new realm. After digesting the memory transmitted by the system, Sumu immediately used the unlimited technique to create a pocket space and put 10 arc reactors into it. Because this empty pocket space was created by him, he can absorb the energy of the arc reactor inside the pocket space. In addition, Sumu has new gains. Perhaps because of the upgrade of the unlimited technique, his understanding of space has become deeper. The original portal magic that was obscure to him is now extremely clear. He feels that he has mastered the portal at this time. Without hesitation, Sumu immediately put on the hanging ring and waved his fingers. With the splashing sparks, a stable portal slowly formed in front of him. At the same time, a new skill appeared on the system panel. Portal LV1, 1/100 consume magic power and open a portal to any location you have been to. Magic power can be replaced by energy. After successfully mastering the portal, the system finally included this skill, so that Sumu can upgrade this skill, thereby continuously increasing the upper limit of the portal. LV1 can go to any place you have been to. LV2 can abandon the hanging ring and open the portal with your own ability without any external objects. LV3 can go to any area of the current dimension/universe. LV4 can go to other dimensions and realize dimensional jump. When the level of the portal reaches LV5 or even higher, it will be possible to teleport the world barrier and go to other worlds sooner or later. Sumu is looking forward to it. Fight with Superman. Fight with Sun Wukong. Tell the motherland that you are a hero and open the unlimited spell in front of Gojo Satoru. Various wonderful worlds are waiting for him. At this moment, the 6 eyes caught something, and several agents in black clothes rushed to the beach villa. Sumu showed a more pleasant smile on his face, and there was fun again.